Chapter 48-33. Ling Yuanqing's gaze landed on Honest Chai. Honest Chai panicked. It took him so much effort to come back from the dead. Was he going to die just like that? He couldn't accept it at all. But very quickly, Honest Chai felt that something wasn't right. Although Ling Yuanqing's gaze was looking in his direction, it didn't land on him. Instead, he seemed to be sizing up Lin Yi with a pensive expression, as if he had seen him somewhere before. At this moment, Lin Yi finally walked out slowly, instantly attracting everyone's attention. He arrived in front of Qing Danzi and said, "Who can erase the divine sense mark? Is it you? Or is it someone else?" What? Just like Honest Chai, Qing Danzi was forced to take 2 steps back, causing everyone to be shocked. Who was this kid? The ones who reacted the most were those in room 3. Lin Yi's guess was right, the one in there was the divine nun of the Eastern Sea, and even Wang Xinyan and Huang Xiaotao were here. It's him. It's really him. Sister Xinyan, you're right. Huang Xiaotao's face was full of joy. If it weren't for the fact that there were too many people below, she would have jumped out of the box. Yes, he's actually here in the Eastern continent. Wang Xinyan was also so happy that tears welled up in her eyes. Ever since they parted in the Southern continent, she thought that she would have to wait for many years before she could see Lin Yi again. She didn't expect to see him so soon. Lin Yi had actually come to the Eastern continent. Since Lin Yi was sitting right below the stage, they'd seen him from room 3 a long time ago. It was just that Lin Yi had his back to them the whole time, and his aura had changed quite a bit after his recent increase in strength. Xinyan and Huang Xiaotao couldn't confirm their suspicions, even though he looked familiar at first. But now they finally saw his face. That's right, this was the lover of their dreams. It's him. I remember that he was only at the Golden Core stage. How did he become a nascent soul late stage? The divine nun of the East Sea could not help but become rather stunned when she heard what the 2 women said. Due to Huang Xiaotao, she still had some impression of Lin Yi. How long had it been? Even with Huang Xiaotao's powerful aptitude, she still hadn't been able to condense her nascent soul. Her senior brother was already at the late nascent soul stage. Even if he was heaven-defying, it shouldn't be this heaven-defying, right? Could it be that he, Ling Yuanqing, and the others had all misjudged him, and this kid was the real super genius? Let's not talk about the shocked reactions in booth number 3. At this moment, the atmosphere below the stage was already very tense. Qing Danzi looked coldly at Lin Yi and said, "What do you mean by that?" "Nothing. According to what I know, existences at the level of a 7th-tier alchemist already have very powerful senses. If you want to erase their senses, you need to be a supermaster at the magnate realm at least. In other words, you need to be at the mountain opening stage at the very least. And it's quite difficult to erase even one. Where do you think the Hong Chamber of Commerce can find so many mountain opening stage masters to do this?" Lin Yi said calmly. The magnate realm. This was also a brand new realm that Lin Yi learned from the ghost. It was a general classification of the great realms of strength. Simply put, from the mountain opening stage including the earth opening stage, the sea splitting stage and even the legendary heaven breaking stage, they all belong to the magnate realm. As for the realms below the mountain opening stage, from the foundation establishment stage to the profound ascension stage, they all belong to the heavenly path stage. According to the ghost's words, the heavenly path stage and the 5 heaven stage islands could only be regarded as entering a higher level. Only when one's strength completely stepped into the magnate realm would he be considered to have truly entered the ranks of the masters. Only the magnate realm masters could become the pillars of the various forces and compete with the heroes of the world. As soon as Lin Yi's words came out, everyone immediately quieted down. They didn't know much about the divine sense marking. Just now when Qing Danzi said that, they felt that it was very reasonable, but now after listening to Lin Yi's words, they couldn't help but feel that it was indeed the case. Qing Danzi's face changed. He didn't think that at this time, someone who knew about the divine sense marking would jump out. Originally, these people present, including Ling Yuanqing, didn't know much about the divine sense marking of medicinal pills, so they could only agree with what he said. But now that Lin Yi had done this, their intentions were immediately exposed. "Who are you? What qualifications does a nobody have to say this?" Qing Danzi directly pointed his spear at Lin Yi. Although using his body to suppress the other party was the worst plan, there was no other choice at this time. "A nobody? You can say that, but no matter what, I'm still the honorary vice president of the Hong Clan Merchant Association. Don't tell me I don't even have the qualifications to speak on behalf of our merchant association?" Lin Yi glanced sideways at him. Such a young fellow was actually the honorary vice president of the Hong Clan Merchant Association? Hearing this, everyone was instantly shocked. Not only did Qing Danzi's face change, even Ling Yuanqing couldn't help but be slightly moved. However, he suddenly thought of a person. Back in the South Continent Sea, Huang Xiaotao seemed to have a senior brother who was also the honorary vice president of the Hong Clan Merchant Association. Moreover, this person looked somewhat familiar. Could it be that they were the same person? Everyone else looked at each other in dismay. For a top-tier merchant association like the Hong Clan Merchant Association, in terms of overall strength, it was not inferior to any of the Eastern Continent's Golden Step Academies. This young man was actually an honorary vice president. Then wouldn't that mean he was in existence on the same level as the Academy's vice dean? Seeing the disbelief on everyone's faces, Honest Chai hurriedly stood up to testify. That's right, this is our Hong Clan Merchant Association's vice president Lin. If anyone doesn't believe me, feel free to go to the Middle Island and ask around. Everyone once again looked at each other in dismay. Although they still found it hard to believe, since even the branch manager Honest Chai had testified in front of them, it naturally couldn't be false. Since you're the honorary vice president, does that mean that you're in charge of the Hong Clan Merchant Association here? Alright, there's no need to talk nonsense. If you want to prove that your supply is stable, it's very simple. As long as you can take out another 5 Thunder Shen pills, I'll admit that you have the ability. Qing Danzi said with a cold face. 5 Thunder Shen pills? Lin Yi looked at him as if he was looking at an idiot and said coldly, you're going to provide the materials? It's easy for you to say that. Qing Danzi was immediately speechless. Under everyone's gaze he couldn't help but blush. He must have lost his head from anger. How could he say such words in a moment of hot-headedness? That's right, how can the materials for the Thunder Shen pill be so easy to find? The Thunder Shen vine is a very rare treasure. Someone in the crowd said indignantly. Chapter 48-34. He did not believe Lin Yi's nonsense at all. If a brat like Lin Yi could be a 7th-grade alchemist, then what was he, who had studied for hundreds of years, worth of effort? Moreover, even if he was a 7th-grade alchemist, it was impossible to refine 10 recover pills in a day. It was impossible. We'll know who gave me the guts in a day. Lin Yi looked at him with a faint smile. What are you waiting for? Hurry up and take out the materials. Prepare a room for alchemy for me. We'll see the results in a day. Alright, you said it yourself. Qing Danzi immediately sent people to prepare. Manager Hao was overjoyed. The partnership with the Academy was destined to fall into the hands of his Grand Union. Other than the auction venue, the first floor of the Morningstar Union had all sorts of facilities. Not only were there VIP rooms, but there were also many special rooms like the alchemy room. After the materials were prepared, Lin Yi immediately went into seclusion to refine pills. As for the others, they did not disperse. After all, it was only the first day of the Morningstar Union's auction. There would be a series of activities after that, especially the highly anticipated individual auction in a few days. Therefore they would all stay in Morningstar City for a while. Other than the disciples of the Morningstar Union, most of the others stayed in the first floor of the Morningstar Union. It would be a waste not to watch the show. The onlookers did not disperse. Wang Xinyan and Huang Xiaotao wanted to rush down and reunite with Lin Yi immediately, but there were too many people. In the end, they were persuaded by the divine nun of the East Sea. Since they knew that Lin Yi was in the Hong Merchant Association, it did not matter if they waited a little longer. They might as well wait for him to settle his matters first. As everyone waited, a day passed in the blink of an eye. Qing Danzi, Honest Chai, and the others waited at the door of the alchemy room, waiting for the moment the door opened. You're all here. Lin Yi opened the door and greeted everyone. How was it? Honest Chai quickly went forward. This concerned the life and death of the Morningstar branch, and he was even more nervous than Lin Yi. He was afraid that an accident would happen. After all, failure in pill refinement was a very common thing, and no matter how amazing a pill refiner was, there was no exception. Is there even a need to say it? Just look at his empty hands. Qing Danzi, shopkeeper Hao, and the others sneered. Empty-handed? Is your eyesight that bad? Find a doctor to take a good look at him. If he's sick, he has to be treated. Lin Yi smiled indifferently. With a wave of his hand, a medium-sized box suddenly appeared in his hand. After he opened it, a wave of gasps could be heard from the surroundings. Qing Danzi and the others' eyes almost popped out of their sockets. Not one more, not one less, exactly 10 grade 7 great recover pills. Looking at everyone's expressions of disbelief, Lin Yi laughed silently. He had still hidden one of his cards. One had to know that his luck was pretty good this time. 10 sets of ingredients had been used to refine 18 great recover pills. In order to not cause too much of a commotion, he had hidden the other 8. But even so, Qing Danzi was completely dumbfounded. If these 10 great recover pills had been prepared in advance by the other party, it would have been fine. But now they were clearly still warm and fragrant. Without a doubt, these 10 pills were of superior quality. Furthermore, they were concocted within a day. This was practically a freaking miracle. Is this the legendary Absolute Dan? Qing Danzi swallowed his saliva as he looked at Lin Yi from head to toe in disbelief. Absolute pill formation was 100% success rate. This was the realm that almost all alchemists pursued. Regardless of the grade, this was an eternal dream. Absolute pill formation? This was the first time Lin Yi had heard of this term. But after thinking about it, he understood. With a casual expression, he said, "Oh, this is very easy. What's so strange about it?" Easy? Qing Danzi almost bit his tongue off. Looking at Lin Yi as if he was looking at a monster, he said, "I'm talking about absolute pill formation. How could this be easy? I've never seen any alchemist who could do this. Aren't you afraid that the wind will cut your tongue?" Speaking up to this point, Qing Danzi suddenly froze. This person was not boasting, he had truly achieved absolute pill formation. To him, this was as difficult as ascending to the heavens. Perhaps, in the eyes of this person, it really was child's play? Seeing that Qing Danzi was suddenly dumbfounded and silent, everyone thought that this guy was thinking about how to put pressure on the Hong Chamber of Commerce again. Even Lin Yi thought so. But when they saw what Qing Danzi did next, they were all dumbfounded. Plop. Qing Danzi suddenly knelt in front of Lin Yi. His expression became incomparably solemn and sincere as he said, "Master, please accept me as your disciple." What the hell? What kind of play is this? Not only Lin Yi was stunned, Honest Chai was stunned, Shopkeeper Hao was stunned, and everyone else was stunned. Even Ling Yuanqing's expression was a little strange. His own academy's chief alchemist suddenly kneeling in front of someone and begging to be his disciple. This was the first time he had seen something so bizarre. He was clearly scheming against the other party. Why did he suddenly change his mind? Another person who changed his face faster than flipping a book. Looking at Qing Danzi's expression, Lin Yi's mouth couldn't help but twitch. Subconsciously he thought of Okuda Dam. Only that guy would suddenly change his mind and throw you into the sea. But this person in front of him was a little strange. He was clearly in the middle of a fight, but he suddenly knelt down, ignoring everyone's strange gazes. Qing Danzi looked at Lin Yi with a burning gaze and said carefully, "If this disciple didn't guess wrong, you must be a mystic level first level alchemist?" According to the ranks of alchemists, above the 7th level was a whole new realm. This was the legendary mystic level alchemist. Even if it was only a mystic level first level alchemist, it was still a height that no other 7th level alchemist could reach. They could only look up to it, not be compared to it. Oh. Lin Yi looked at him with an indescribable expression. He didn't admit nor deny it on the spot. Definitely this disciple has seen many 7th level alchemists, but none of them could refine a 7th level great cyclic Dan so quickly. Not to mention 10 in a day, I haven't even heard of one in a day. Furthermore, this is an absolute success. Other than a mystic level first level alchemist, this disciple really can't think of a second possibility. Qing Danzi said with certainty. Chapter 48-35. Qing Danzi's expression immediately turned ugly after being ridiculed by the crowd. However, it was impossible for him to give up just like that. He immediately said in a forceful tone, "Fine. Since the materials for the Thunder Shen pill cannot be gathered, I will take a step back. Your Hong Chamber of Commerce only needs to bring me 10 more great recover pills within a day. I will give you the materials." "Hey, I respect you as the head alchemist of the academy, that's why I call you Grandmaster Qing Danzi, but aren't you being too shameless?" Honest Chai couldn't take it anymore and said with righteous indignation, "This is called taking a step back? Even if the great rejuvenating pill is easier to concoct than the Shen Thunder pill, it's still a level 7 pill. Furthermore, you have to bring out 10 in a day. The difficulty is much higher. If you're trying to make things difficult, just say so." The rest of the people were also pointing at him. Taking out 10 great rejuvenation pills in one day was too easy for them. Don't forget that there were only 2 great rejuvenation pills in the entire auction today, and one of them was from the Hong Chamber of Commerce. Don't say such useless things. As long as you can bring it out, I, as the head alchemist of the Morning Star Academy, guarantee that your Hong Merchant Guild will be the only supplier. Qing Danzi sneered. When he said this, his eyes involuntarily secretly glanced at Ling Yuanqing. He was also forced to say this, otherwise even if he had the guts, he would not dare to be so presumptuous in front of Ling Yuanqing. The position of the chief alchemist was transcendent, but it was not transcendent to the point where he could look down on everyone. Luckily, Ling Yuanqing didn't say anything. Instead, he calmly sat down and watched the situation unfold. Qing Danzi let out a sigh of relief. This was a tacit agreement. That's right, no matter what, I'm the Academy's most trusted head alchemist. As the Academy's dean, it's impossible for Ling Yuanqing to side with the Hong Merchant Association and not help his own people. Today, I must trample the Hong Merchant Association into the ground. Are you sure you can make the decision? Lin Yi looked at Ling Yuanqing. Of course. I can also tell you that if you can do it, I'll only sell the pills I concoct to the Hong Merchant Guild. Qing Danzi said. Are you for real? Honest Chai's eyes immediately lit up. Even though he was furious at this fella, he couldn't deny that this was a genuine 7th grade pill master. If this fella only refined pills for his Hong Merchant Association, then he would have a huge supply of high-grade pills in the future. This was something he couldn't ask for more. This was a good thing. Even though he managed to obtain a bunch of level 7 pills thanks to Lin Yi, Honest Chai knew that Lin Yi wouldn't stay here forever. What would he do after he left? If Honest Chai could think of this, so could Lin Yi. If he could really make this Qing Danzi work with the Hong Commerce, then he wouldn't have to worry about the future anymore. This was a good thing that came knocking on his door. Humph, with my status, do you think I would make empty promises in front of so many people? Qing Danzi frowned and suddenly turned his head to look at Manager Hao. Faintly he said, but I'll say the ugly words first. If you can't produce it within a day, that means your supply isn't stable enough. Although your Hong Chamber of Commerce won the auction just now, you will still have to give up your position as the sole supplier to the Hao family metropolis. Everyone finally came to a realization. After going around in a big circle, it turned out that this was Qing Danzi's true objective. He, as the head alchemist of the Academy, purposely went against the Hong Merchant Guild in order to force them to give up their position and give up their partnership to the Hao Family Association. He even skipped the all-access gathering in the middle. Ah! Wang Zhongjia's eyeballs almost popped out of their sockets. Just now he was the most enthusiastic one among them. He thought that as long as he could drag the Hong Merchant Guild down, the partnership would automatically fall into the hands of the all-access gathering. Who would have thought that Qing Danzi would suddenly say such a thing? Wang Zhongjia swallowed the words that were on the tip of his tongue when Qing Danzi shot him a cold glance. Although he was extremely unwilling, he didn't dare to go against the chief alchemist of the Academy in the territory of Morningstar City. What if he followed in the footsteps of the Hong Merchants Association and was also targeted and banned? At this time, no one was paying attention to Wang Zhongjia. There were only 2 people who were being watched, Qing Danzi and Lin Yi. This condition isn't much. You're a level 7 alchemist, right? Do you think you can refine 10 great recover pills in a day? Why don't we change it? I'll provide the materials and you can challenge me? Lin Yi suddenly said with a pout. This. Qing Danzi was at a loss for words. Outsiders might not know this, but as the chief alchemist of the Academy, he knew the difficulty of this task better than anyone else. 10 7th grade recover pills a day was an impossible task. He had only proposed it to deliberately make things difficult for the Hong Chamber of Commerce. If it was really possible, Qing Danzi wouldn't have proposed it so confidently. After all, he wasn't an idiot. Qing Danzi didn't know how to continue. Just when everyone thought that Lin Yi would use this as an excuse to get out of the situation, he spoke again. Forget it. Give me the materials and I'll reluctantly refine them for a fool like you. I'll let you know the foundation of the Hong Merchant Guild. What? What do you mean? You're not saying that you'll refine them, are you? Qing Danzi was stunned again. Oh, I forgot to tell you that I'm not only the honorary vice president of the Hong Merchant Group, but I'm also the chief alchemist of the Morningstar branch. I can't refine anything else, but it's not a problem for me to refine a few level 7 great recover pills, Lin Yi said indifferently. As soon as these words came out, not only was Qing Danzi completely dumbfounded, but everyone present was also shocked. Even Ling Yuanqing couldn't help but be moved again. The honorary vice president of the Hong Merchant Guild didn't have to be very strong. In theory, as long as one made a huge contribution to the Merchant Guild, they would have a chance to get the position. So although it was rare, it wasn't too shocking. But a level 7 alchemist? How could such a young guy do it? Lin Yi had already expected everyone's shock. Anyway, his alchemy ability had already been exposed on the warship, so there was no need to continue hiding it. Moreover, it wasn't entirely a bad thing to expose this kind of thing. At least it would make people think more highly of him, and sometimes it would be more convenient for him to do things. There were pros and cons, just a few great recover pills? Humph, how arrogant of you. Qing Danzi's face was almost the same color as his hair and eyebrows. He sneered and said, "You don't know your place, kid. Don't think that just because you have the backing of the Hong Merchant Guild, you can speak so arrogantly. How dare you belittle us, a level 7 alchemist? Who gave you such courage?" Chapter 48:37. Although this was not a rare thing, there were many alchemists who were stuck at the 7th level, let alone 100 years, even if they spent their entire lives, they would not be able to advance an inch, and even more alchemists could not even touch the threshold of the 7th level. To be able to reach the level of Qing Danzi was already very rare, but Qing Danzi was not willing to give up. Back then he was a super genius in alchemy. In just a few decades he rose all the way to the 6th level, and then successfully reached the 7th level before the age of 100. At that time he was famous and shocked the world of alchemy. However, just when everyone, including himself, thought that he would undoubtedly become the next profound stage alchemist, he suddenly stopped moving, and he was stuck for more than 200 years. Until today, very few people in the alchemy world mentioned his name, and even if they knew, they would only say that he was lost in the crowd. It had been 200 years and Qing Danzi's spirit was almost completely gone. He'd thought that this was the end of his path, and that he wouldn't be able to take another step forward. Who would have thought that he'd run into Lin Yi, a man who could make 10 high-class great recovery pills in one day, a man who had the secret to making them? Qing Danzi's heart suddenly lit up with hope. Compared with alchemy, which he regarded as his life, everything else was fleeting, even his dignity and pride could be thrown aside. In order to go further, he directly wanted to be apprenticed to Lin Yi on the spot. Although he also knew that it would not be so easy, and what he had done before had completely offended Lin Yi, unless there was a hole in Lin Yi's brain, otherwise it would be impossible for Lin Yi to accept him so easily. But he didn't mind, no matter what, he had to try hard, and what if he could succeed? After all, for him there was no such chance. It was not so easy to meet a legendary alchemist with absolute success. Moreover, he was the dignified chief alchemist of the college, and if he abandoned his dignity in public, Lin Yi would take the face of the Hong's Chamber of Commerce into account. Maybe he would agree. Listening to Qing Danzi's words, Lin Yi couldn't help but be stunned for a while. He was actually regarded as the legendary first-level mystic stage. This person's imagination was really big. "I don't have much to teach you. The path of alchemy is purely taught by the master, and it depends on the individual. You are a level 7 alchemist after all. You should know this very well," Lin Yi said after a moment of hesitation. Although it was not a bad thing to accept such a chief alchemist disciple, Lin Yi had always relied on the divine armament cauldron for alchemy. What could he teach such a disciple? He couldn't possibly lend the divine pesticide cauldron to him, right? Disciple does not ask master to impart too many esoteric secrets to me. I only ask that master can give me a few pointers and share some of your alchemy experiences. That would be enough for me. I dare not ask for more. Qing Danzi looked at Lin Yi with eager eyes. Of course he knew what Lin Yi was talking about. In fact, he didn't need Lin Yi to teach him systematically. He didn't need it because at his level he had already formed his own style. Even if he was taught from the beginning, it would be useless. However, most of the time, what stopped him wasn't a systematic problem, but a seemingly insignificant one. At this time, it often only needed a little pointers from an expert to make a big difference. Looking at the other party's extremely sincere expression, Lin Yi couldn't help but be moved. He thought for a moment and said, "Well, I can give you a few pointers, but, according to the previous bet, from now on, the alchemy refined by Qing Danzi would be handed over to the Hong Chamber of Commerce." Because of this, Lin Yi didn't mind giving him a few pointers. However, before he finished speaking, Lin Yi originally wanted to say that he would accept him as a disciple. As a result, he didn't expect that with a plop, Qing Danzi would directly kneel down again. Disciple Qing Danzi pays respect to master. Qing Danzi immediately shouted excitedly. He hurriedly prostrated himself on the ground to pay respect to his master, forcibly holding back Lin Yi's next words. The surrounding crowd immediately went into an uproar. The first time Qing Danzi knelt down they could still say that this fellow was acting strangely, but now he did it again. This could only mean one thing: this fellow was definitely serious. Lin Yi speechlessly looked at the kneeling Qing Danzi in front of him. What's done can't be undone. He was going to have a disciple for no reason, and it was the chief alchemist of the Morning Star Academy as his disciple. If this news were to spread, it would be too awesome. "All right, you can get up first." Lin Yi could only stretch out his hand to help Qing Danzi up. Although this wasn't part of his plan, it wasn't a bad thing. At least he got a big backer for honest chai, and with this disciple staying in the Morning Star Academy, He could take care of Wang Xinyan and Huang Xiaotao. It wasn't a bad thing. Shopkeeper Hao and the others sat on the ground with stiff expressions. Now that things had developed to this point, there was no longer any suspense in the auction. Qing Danzi was their greatest backer, but now their pillar of support had turned to the other side, and he had even knelt down and begged to become Lin Yi's disciple. What the hell were they supposed to do? The shopkeepers were extremely unwilling to accept this, but there was nothing they could do. The situation was against their will. What they could foresee was that with a powerful backer like Qing Danzi, no other Hong Merchant Guild in Morningstar City would be able to stand shoulder to shoulder with them. It was even more impossible for them to get an opportunity like today to kick them when they were down, because no one dared to offend the Hong Merchant Guild. That was equivalent to offending the Morningstar Academy. However, while this result was a tragedy for Shopkeeper Hao and the others, it was a joyous occasion for everyone else. It wasn't just Honest Chai and the others, even Wang Xinyan and Huang Xiaotao, who were still in the third room, were extremely excited. As the two girls cheered, the divine nun of the East Sea was shocked. Her gaze moved back and forth between Lin Yi and Qing Danzi as she shook her head speechlessly. It was not just her. The other heavyweights of the Morningstar Academy, including Ling Yuanqing and Wei Hebei, also stared at Lin Yi blankly. Although they did not know Lin Yi's identity a long time ago like the divine nun of the East Sea, he was still a founding heavyweight after all. As long as they had the slightest impression of him, even if they could not recall it in the beginning, they would be able to recall it after some time. Right now they could all remember where they had seen Lin Yi before. Wasn't this the guy they had planned on forcefully taking in as a disciple back then? Back in the sea region of the South Continent, during the first public selection in Jinduan City, Huang Xiaotao had been taken in by the divine nun of the East Sea, while Lin Yi had managed to get away by hiding the nature of his spiritual root. Afterwards they met again in Y City, and under the advice of the purchasing envoy Qin Deli, the three heavyweights personally went to the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency in order to take in Lin Yi, but they did not succeed in the end. Chapter 48:38. This was not just because his strength had increased by leaps and bounds. More importantly, this guy's identity was just too frightening. Not only was he the honorary vice president of the Hong Chamber of Commerce, but he had also become Qing Danzi's master. In terms of identity alone, Lin Yi was at least on the same level as the three heavyweights of the Morningstar Academy. He might even be a level higher than them. After all, Qing Danzi was the chief alchemist of the academy, and his status was not much lower than the three heavyweights. Yet, Lin Yi had actually become Qing Danzi's master. Just thinking about this was enough to make one faint. However, although it sounded strange, the cultivation world was still a place where strength was respected. No matter what aspect you were extraordinary in, as long as you could reach a certain level of strength, you would definitely receive the respect of the world. The path of alchemy was the same. With Lin Yi's current strength, he was naturally far from being on the same level as the three heavyweights. However, if he really was a legendary profound tier first-level alchemist like Qing Danzi had said, then it would not be as simple as being on the same level as them. He might even be a level higher than them. What an interesting young man. Ling Yuanqing glanced deeply at Lin Yi from within the crowd, then turned around and walked out of the first floor of the Morningstar Academy. There was no need for him, the dean, to stand out and say anything. Without a doubt, the Hong Chamber of Commerce would be the academy's only supplier in the future. Dean, you actually let that kid fool you back then. Don't you feel a little regretful? Wei Hebei suddenly appeared behind Ling Yuanqing. He turned around with a strange expression to look at Lin Yi in the crowd behind him. This was actually what he was thinking. In terms of thirst for a genius disciple, he, Wei Hebei, was the one with the greatest desire among the three heavyweights. In the end, he discovered that such a heaven-defying young man had slipped through his fingers. Right now he was so regretful that his intestines were turning green. It's too late for regrets now. He's on equal footing with the two of you right now. If you still want him to become your disciple, he'll become a laughingstock if this gets out. At the very least, Qing Danzi's expression will be very interesting. Before they knew it, the divine nun of the East Sea had also appeared before them. Beside her were Wang Xinyan and Huang Xiaotao, who constantly glanced back. From the moment they discovered Lin Yi, they were eager to reunite with Lin Yi. It was just a pity that there were far too many people here, so the divine nun of the East Sea finally persuaded them to stop. At this moment, there was only one thing that the two girls wanted to do the most. That was to hurry back to the academy, then sneak off to the Hong Chamber of Commerce to see Lin Yi. Hearing what the divine nun of the East Sea said, Ling Yuanqing and Wei Hebei could not help but smile wryly at one another. They could only look at Huang Xiaotao. Xiaotao, oh Xiaotao, why didn't you remind me back then? Wouldn't it have been better to let your senior brother join the academy as well? With his talent and strength, his treatment would definitely be amazing. Sigh. Once Lin Yi joined, not only would their academy gain another genius disciple, but more importantly, they would gain a supreme alchemist who was suspected to be at the first level of the profound level. The benefits of this were immeasurable, but unfortunately, it was too late to say anything now. Uncle Master, this is my senior brother's decision. I can't interfere. Huang Xiaotao stuck out her tongue and looked at Wang Xinyan with a smile. The passers-by all gave way to them and watched the three heavyweights of the academy leave. On the other side, after the commotion of the auction on the first floor of the Morningstar Pavilion came to a dramatic end, Qing Danzi immediately suggested, "Master, do you want to go to our academy to take a look? The scenery inside is quite nice. You can also give me some pointers on the alchemy room. How about that?" "That's fine." Lin Yi immediately nodded. He was still worrying about how he could sneak into the academy and meet Wang Xinyan and Huang Xiaotao. Qing Danzi's suggestion was exactly what he wanted. Honest Chai didn't say anything else. After handing over all the matters on hand to Cui Mingshan, he hurriedly accompanied Lin Yi and Qing Danzi. The following auction had nothing to do with the Chamber of Commerce anymore. The most important thing for him now was to accompany Lin Yi well. At the same time, he wanted to build a good relationship with Qing Danzi, his future alchemist. After all, after Lin Yi left, he would have to rely on Qing Danzi to provide high-grade pills. Under the gaze of the crowd, Qing Danzi personally led the way for Lin Yi to the Morningstar Academy. Having just become Lin Yi's disciple, he was overwhelmed with emotions. He wanted to perform well in front of Lin Yi and think of ways to please him. Qing Danzi took the shortcut. As a result, when they arrived at the gates of the Morningstar Academy, they bumped into Ling Yuanqing's group. Qing Danzi was surprised and hurriedly introduced them to Lin Yi. He thought that Lin Yi only knew Ling Yuanqing and didn't know that the two people beside him were the other two giants of the Morningstar Academy. As they listened to Qing Danzi's introduction, Ling Yuanqing and the others looked at each other. Speak of the devil and the devil appears. On the way here they had been talking about Lin Yi and didn't expect to bump into him again. This time they were really dumbfounded and didn't know what to say. However, Lin Yi didn't listen to him at all. His gaze landed on the two women behind the divine nun of the Eastern Sea. At the same time, Wang Xinyan and Huang Xiaotao also looked at him with joy. They were so happy that tears of joy rolled down their cheeks. Although for cultivators, Lin Yi hadn't been separated from them for a long time, longing was like an illness. The deeper the feelings, the deeper the illness. When it came to Lin Yi and his female friends, it could only be said that the illness was beyond cure. Thousands of words could only be said in this silent exchange of gazes. Young hero Lin, we meet again. Ling Yuanqing finally opened his mouth after a moment of silence. As the number one person in the Morningstar Academy, it was rare for him to greet someone with such a tone, especially someone as young as Lin Yi. However, with Lin Yi's qualifications, it was completely worth it for him to treat him differently. Senior Ling, Senior Wei, Senior Eastern Sea, long time no see. Lin Yi nodded with a smile. At this time Huang Xiaotao's eyes moved. She couldn't help but want to go over and hug Lin Yi, but because Wang Xinyan was standing next to her, she couldn't help but feel embarrassed. After all, Wang Xinyan was ranked before her, and as the younger sister, she couldn't always be ahead of her older sister. In this regard, Huang Xiaotao was a woman with a very traditional concept of seniority. Wang Xinyan couldn't help but laugh and pinch her hand. The two of them had been together for so long, and they already understood each other very well. She could tell what Huang Xiaotao was thinking with just a glance. There was still a tacit understanding between sisters. Huang Xiaotao blushed a little. Under everyone's gaze, she didn't dare to be too bold. She could only suppress the surging emotions in her heart and walk up to Lin Yi. Her voice trembled as she said, "Senior Lin." Chapter 48-39. Qing Danzi looked back and forth between Lin Yi and Huang Xiaotao in disbelief. He asked in surprise, "What? What did you call my master? He's your senior brother? You didn't expect this, did you? Lin Yi is my disciple's senior brother." They were all disciples of the three great pavilions in the north. The divine nun of the Eastern Sea couldn't help but laugh. "Qing Danzi, you always want to suppress me, but now you don't have to think about it. You've already become my grand disciple." Ling Yuanqing and Wei Hebei couldn't help but smile. No matter which academy in the Eastern continent, the chief alchemist position was always at the top, especially in Soaring Cloud Academy, where there was a relatively strong chief alchemist. It was normal for one to become the second-ranked big shot of the academy. In Morningstar Academy, the position of the three giants of the academy was unshakable because of their strength. However, Qing Danzi was not the kind of person who was willing to submit to others. It was impossible for him to surpass the Dean Ling Yuanqing, and it was also impossible for him to surpass the Vice Dean Wei Hebei, who had many disciples. The only target left was the solitary divine nun of the Eastern Sea. Although she was the Vice Dean, she rarely asked about the Academy's affairs. Moreover, she only had two direct disciples, Wang Xinyan and Huang Xiaotao. In addition to her strength, the divine nun of the Eastern Sea was the easiest to surpass. In fact, Qing Danzi always had the opportunity to surpass her, and public opinion had already vaguely positioned him as the third most powerful person in the Academy. But now, with such a thing happening, it was unlikely. Qing Danzi smiled bitterly and shook his head. Ah? How could this be? This is what it means to be unpredictable. Qing Danzi, you should just accept your fate. Ah. Wei Hebei laughed. Alright, but this kind of thing doesn't matter. For me, alchemy is the most important thing. Qing Danzi laughed. Compared to the Academy's status and fame, he only cared about alchemy. As long as he could make progress in alchemy, he was willing to give up everything. Ling Yuanqing and the others smiled at each other. A chief alchemist completely immersed in alchemy was a good thing for the Academy. Let me reintroduce you. Lin Yi nodded to the two girls with a smile and introduced, "This is my junior sister Huang Xiaotao from the North Island, and this is my desk mate Wang Xinyan." What do you mean by desk mate? Qing Danzi was stunned once again. It wasn't just him, even Ling Yuanqing and the others had blank expressions on their faces. In particular, the divine nun of the East Sea was even more shocked. She had always believed that only Huang Xiaotao was connected to Lin Yi among her disciples. She had never thought that even Wang Xinyan was connected to Lin Yi like that. However, what did deskmate mean? Master Qing Danzi, don't listen to him? Xinyan said, blushing as she gave Lin Yi a reproachful look. Lin Yi's heart warmed up at that point. It didn't matter how many times he looked at that cute face of hers, he'd never get tired of it. It was just like when they first met on the train. No, I'm not a master. Qing Danzi hurriedly waved his hands and corrected himself. Since you're my master's deskmate, then you're my senior. Your disciple greets deskmate? Ift? Xinyan didn't know what to say to that, and the others all had strange expressions on their faces as well. This Qing Danzi guy really knew how to lower himself. It was one thing for him to be Lin Yi's disciple, but now he was calling Xinyan master? What was he going to call Ling Yuanqing and the others? Lin Yi was smiling as well. He hadn't expected this Qing Danzi to be such a clown. After all, he was a 7th-rank alchemist and it was rare to see someone as open as him. Originally, everyone was still a little stiff because of their status. After all, Ling Yuanqing and the others were the big shots of the Academy, and they couldn't possibly put down their pride in front of the juniors. However, after this incident, the atmosphere became much livelier, and a rare burst of laughter could be heard, attracting the attention of the students passing by. However, among the crowd, only Honest Chai couldn't put down his pride. With his cautious personality, it was difficult for him to relax in front of Ling Yuanqing and the others. Shopkeeper Chai, why don't you return to the Hong Merchant Guild first? I'll look for you later. Lin Yi instructed. Okay, then I'll take my leave first. Honest Chai heaved a sigh of relief. Being in the same place as so many big shots was really stressful. Not to mention talking and laughing, it was so stressful that he couldn't breathe. However, after leaving the Morning Star Academy and returning to the business district, Honest Chai raised his head high again. After all, he was now representing the Hong Merchant Guild, the future #1 merchant guild in Morning Star City. After watching Honest Chai leave, Lin Yi and the others entered the Morning Star Academy. Thinking back to the time when he first came to Morning Star City, Lin Yi was still having a headache about how to enter the Morning Star Academy. Now that he had a disciple like Qing Danzi, everything became much easier. Ling Yuanqing and the other big shots of the Academy all treated Lin Yi differently. As for the other students, they only dared to watch from afar. They didn't even dare to go near in case they made the big shots unhappy. Along the way, everyone finally put aside the issue of seniority caused by Qing Danzi and decided to talk about their own matters. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to differentiate clearly. Lin Yi was Huang Xiaotao's senior brother and Qing Danzi's master, while Huang Xiaotao was the direct disciple of the divine nun of the Eastern Sea. It was a complete mess. They wouldn't be able to sort out the seniority issue in their next lives. They could only go according to the seniority they were used to. After walking together for a while, they parted ways very quickly. Lin Yi was dragged by Qing Danzi to his alchemy room. Wang Xinyan and Huang Xiaotao originally wanted to follow, but Lin Yi persuaded them to go back with the divine nun of the Eastern Sea first. After all, Lin Yi would still go find them after he left Qing Danzi's place. As the chief alchemist of the academy, Qing Danzi's residence was naturally in the best part of the academy. Not only was the scenery beautiful, but the spiritual qi was also overwhelming. Following Qing Danzi into his alchemy room, Lin Yi's eyes lit up. It was an extremely intricately designed seclusion room. It was a place specially used for alchemy. Next to it was a huge storeroom which stored all sorts of rare materials. As expected of the chief alchemist of the academy, the size of this storeroom seems to be even more exaggerated than my own. Lin Yi couldn't help but sigh. Chapter 48-40. After all, this kind of thing needed to be accumulated bit by bit, and it was not something that could be made up for with just a few fortuitous encounters. Master, what do you think of this disciple's spirit medicine storehouse? Qing Danzi showed Lin Yi around, his face full of pride. Very good, it is the best I have ever seen. Lin Yi nodded. Is that so? Qing Danzi was pleasantly surprised. He thought that with Lin Yi's alchemy realm, he must have seen countless super alchemists. Little did he know that apart from his own, Lin Yi had never seen anyone else's spirit medicine storehouse. It was not a lie to say that his was the best. Lin Yi smiled faintly and didn't expose him. In truth, Qing Danzi was proud to have such a huge storage of elixirs. He had all the essentials and rare elixirs he could think of, and it had almost everything he could think of. If one had to nitpick, it would be the lack of a few heaven and earth treasures similar to the Thundershin Rattan. However, these rare treasures could only be found by chance. They could not be obtained just because one wanted to and one needed great luck. Did it take a long time? Lin Yi asked with a smile. 300 years. Qing Danzi looked at his painstakingly accumulated painstakingly, and then turned to Lin Yi and said, The spirit medicines here have been systematically collected since I was 10 years old. I have persisted until today without a break. 10 years old? Lin Yi was surprised. Most people at this age were still playing with mud. He did not expect that this guy had already begun to do such advanced things. Yes, master, you don't need to be surprised. I come from an alchemy family. Any family member with a little bit of aptitude will be taught alchemy from the age of 10. Distinguishing and accumulating spirit medicines is the first lesson, Qing Danzi explained. I see. Lin Yi nodded. This was what it meant to win at the starting line. If that's the case, your family shouldn't be lacking in skilled refiners, right? Is there a need to ask me to be your master? Lin Yi asked curiously. Master, you misunderstand. Although my family is an alchemy aristocratic family, it had already declined long before I was born. Not only was it no longer glorious, but it was also constantly bullied and humiliated. Being able to maintain the title of an alchemy aristocratic family was purely a fluke. Previously, it had always been a precarious situation. It was only after I became a 7th-tier alchemist that things changed slightly. Every family has its own difficulties. Lin Yi looked at Qing Danzi sympathetically. After this disciple became a 7th-grade alchemist, although the situation was temporarily stabilized, the situation is still not optimistic, because in order to stabilize the name of an alchemy family, the family must have at least 2 7th-grade alchemists. But our Qing family only has 1 disciple, the other disciples don't even have a 6th-grade alchemist, let alone a 7th-grade alchemist. Qing Danzi said bitterly. There's such a thing? What about you? Lin Yi asked. Because when I was promoted to a 7th-level alchemist, I was still somewhat famous in the alchemy world. The other families were afraid of me and didn't dare to make things too difficult for me. Otherwise, when I advanced to the 1st level of the mystic level, they won't be able to bear the consequences. So they made an exception and gave us a deadline of 200 years. As long as I advance to the 1st level of the mystic level within 200 years, I can continue to keep the title of an alchemy family. Otherwise, I will be removed from the list and lose all the resources that belong to an alchemy family. Qing Danzi paused here and smiled bitterly. From the time I became a 7th-grade alchemist until now, 200 years have passed. It won't be long before the deadline arrives. This was the real reason why he didn't hesitate to give up his dignity and beg to become Lin Yi's disciple. For a 7th-level alchemist, not making any progress in 200 years wasn't a particularly bad thing. If it wasn't for this, Qing Danzi could have continued to explore on his own. But seeing that the deadline was approaching, if he didn't work hard to do something, the Qing family would be removed from the list. Once they lost the various resources that belonged to an alchemy family, it would be impossible for them to return to the ranks. So you became my disciple in order to break through to the 1st level of the mystic level? Lin Yi looked at Qing Danzi strangely. This guy was really desperate. Not to mention that he wasn't a legendary mystic level alchemist. Even if he was, it was impossible for him to advance to the mystic level in such a short period of time. No, disciple is far from the top of the 7th level alchemist. How could I dare to think about the first level of the mystic level? Qing Danzi shook his head repeatedly. Then why are you doing this? Lin Yi asked strangely. The only thing disciple can do now is to go one step further. 7th level alchemists are also divided into different levels. Disciple only wants to be the first level so that when those people come to remove my name, I can at least have some leeway. Otherwise, I'm afraid I won't even have the chance to bargain. Qing Danzi smiled bitterly. In fact, there was one more thing he didn't dare to say. That was, if he could win over a first-level mystic level honorary elder, he could still retain the name of an alchemy family. But he had just forced Lin Yi to become his family's elder. How could he force Lin Yi to become his family's elder? Oh? Then what level do you think you are now among the 7th level alchemists? Lin Yi asked with great interest. Barely 2nd level. Qing Danzi thought for a moment and explained, with disciple's current ability, I can almost refine all 7th level dawn, and I can often refine high-quality dawn. But there is a very terrible problem, and that is I can't guarantee success every time. As for absolute success like master, I can't even think about it. What he meant by success every time was not 100% success rate, but a successful core formation every time. For the vast majority of alchemists, even if they could only refine 1 pill out of 10 sets of ingredients, it would still be considered a success. Is that so? Then have you thought of any solution? Lin Yi asked while rubbing his chin. Because of the existence of the god's armament cauldron, his alchemy has always been overproduced. No matter how bad it was, he could still achieve a near 100% success rate. Unless the level of the dawn was far beyond his ability, then the alchemy would fail. But as Qing Danzi said, Lin Yi had never encountered a situation like this before. He obviously had this ability, so why did he often fail? Chapter 48-41. Lin Yi's eyes lit up and quickly asked, and the result? I stayed in Middle Island for 3 years, and I didn't even get to see Master Zhang once. I couldn't take it anymore, so I had to go back to the school first. Otherwise, I might not be able to keep my position as the head refiner. Qing Danzi sighed, depressed. The actions of an expert are naturally secretive. Lin Yi smiled sympathetically. Back then, he purposely stayed in Nakajima just to see Zhang Liju, but it was to no avail. The only difference was that he didn't have to wait 3 years like Qing Danzi. It's my regret that I didn't get to see Master Zhang Liju, but now that you're here, it's the same for me to ask for your advice, Qing Danzi said excitedly. Lin Yi smiled awkwardly. How could he compare himself to a cheap master like Zhang Liju? Zhang Liju could see the problem with one look, but he might not be able to see the crux of the problem. After all, in terms of elixir-making experience, even Qing Danzi was more experienced than him, let alone Zhang Liju, a Dan god. How about this? Tell me the problems you've encountered in detail, I'll help you think about it when I get back. Lin Yi said. Yes, thank you, master. Qing Danzi was overjoyed and immediately told Lin Yi about his problem from beginning to end. He was afraid that Lin Yi wouldn't remember it, so he wrote it down on a piece of paper and gave it to Lin Yi. Only then did he feel relieved. Okay, then I'll go back first. I'll let you know when I come up with a solution. Alchemy can't be rushed, take it slow. Lin Yi nodded. Yes, I'll remember your words, master. In front of Lin Yi, Qing Danzi didn't have the arrogance of a head refiner at all. In fact, he was even more respectful than a new disciple. After all, Lin Yi was the legendary first-level mystic in his heart. Alchemy didn't care about seniority, and age was often not an advantage, but a disadvantage that couldn't be made up for. This was because when a refiner reached a certain age, their thoughts would become rigid, and it would be hard for them to make any huge breakthroughs. Those who could truly become a mystic refiner were all super geniuses just like Zhang Liju. As for the so-called late bloomers, although it wasn't that there weren't any of them, there weren't many of them. After saying a few words of encouragement, Lin Yi left his residence under Qing Danzi's grateful and respectful farewell. The sky had already darkened, but the lights in Morning Star Academy were still brightly lit. All sorts of expensive fluorescent stones could be found everywhere, scattered on both sides of the road. This was practically the sky-class island version of the street lamps. Qing Danzi lived in the Qingdan Pavilion, and the godly nun of East Sea lived in the Donghai Pavilion. Since they were both elders of the school, the distance between them wasn't too far. After passing through a small path in the forest, it took less than half an hour for Lin Yi to reach the entrance of the Donghai Pavilion. Under normal circumstances, teachers and students didn't live together, and each had their own residences. Even direct disciples didn't have the privilege of entering the Donghai Pavilion. However, the divine nun of the Eastern Sea only had 2 direct disciples, Huang Xinyan and Huang Xiaotao. She was always afraid of dropping them and she was afraid of melting them. Plus, they were easily coveted girls. Of course, she couldn't bear to let them live alone outside, so the 3 of them always lived together. Before Lin Yi could activate the protection circle, the door suddenly opened and a serious-looking old woman walked out. "Are you Master Lin? The 2 ladies have been waiting for you for a long time, please follow me." Lin Yi paused for a moment, then quickly nodded, "All right, thank you." He didn't know where this old woman came from, but although she looked like an ordinary servant, her aura was hidden, and the pressure she gave Lin Yi was even stronger than that of the West Mountain powerhouses he'd met on the way here. How could such an expert be just a servant? The old woman didn't say anything and brought Lin Yi to a courtyard after a few turns. The ground was covered with all sorts of fluorescent stones, and it made the already quiet night even more beautiful. In the middle was a simple pavilion, where Huang Xinyan and Huang Xiaotao were chatting. "Lin Yi, you're finally here." The 2 girls' eyes lit up when they saw Lin Yi. There weren't as many people as there were during the day, and they couldn't care less about their modesty anymore as they rushed into Lin Yi's arms like pigeons. With one hand holding Huang Xinyan and the other around Huang Xiaotao, Lin Yi would be the envy of every man in the world. This was what it meant to be a dreamlike winner in life. "Haha, why do I get the feeling that you 2 are getting fatter?" Lin Yi was in a good mood as he teased. The 2 girls didn't look any different from before, still slim and slender, but he could feel the difference when he hugged them in his arms. They were much more voluptuous now. "What?" Huang Xinyan and Huang Xiaotao blushed at the same time as they slapped Lin Yi's palms. No matter what kind of girl they were, their weight was always one of their biggest concerns. Lin Yi laughed heartily. He didn't think that getting fatter was a bad thing at all. On the contrary, if the 2 girls were as skinny as they were the first time he met Huang Xinyan, then he'd be worried that something was wrong with them. Being a bit fatter was actually a good thing. It was still pleasing to the eye and it was more comfortable to hold. "All right. Are you and Donghai's seniors the only ones living here?" Lin Yi asked. He hadn't seen anyone else on the way here other than the old grandma. "Yeah. Other than us and Master, there's only the deaf grandma who brought you here." Huang Xinyan nodded. "Grandma Rong?" Lin Yi jumped in shock. "What's going on? Am I in the wrong place? Since when did you 2 become Princess Rong?" Huang Xiaotao didn't get the joke, but Huang Xinyan couldn't help but laugh. "It's not an easy Rong, it's long deafness. Didn't you notice that the deaf grandma can't hear people talking?" "Ugh, that's true." Lin Yi rubbed his nose, speechless. The other person hadn't paid any attention to him other than the first sentence. He'd thought that she was just being serious, but it turned out that she was a deaf grandma. Chapter 48-42. Tagging along? Is there someone here looking for trouble? Lin Yi's expression changed. That's rare. With Xiaotao and my status as well as Master's reputation, normal students would only dare to watch from afar. No one would dare to bully us, but the East Continent has always been full of weirdos, and there are always some toads among them. It's not convenient for Master to scare them off himself, so the deaf nanny took over. Every time she shows up, she scares away a bunch of people, Huang Xinyan said with a smile. Hee, so you're saying that the deaf nanny stole my task? Lin Yi couldn't help but smile. He was the school beauty's bodyguard, and Huang Xinyan and Huang Xiaotao were undoubtedly the school's beauties. They needed someone to protect them and he wasn't here. Fortunately, the deaf nanny was here. So you have to thank her properly. Huang Xiaotao giggled. After spending so much time with Huang Xinyan in the East Continent, she had become a lot more cheerful. She couldn't wait to ask, let's not talk about us. How have you been since we parted ways in the South Continent? Yeah, how did you suddenly become a late-stage nascent soul realm cultivator? Did you have another adventure? Huang Xinyan asked curiously. When it came to talent, especially when it came to improving one's strength, her spongy body was second to none. Even Huang Xiaotao couldn't compete with her in this aspect. However, even she was only a mid-stage nascent soul realm cultivator. One had to know that she was already an early-stage nascent soul realm cultivator back in the South Continent. On the other hand, Lin Yi wasn't even a mid-stage gold core realm cultivator back then, but now he was a late-stage nascent soul realm cultivator. How long had it been? I did have an adventure, but it was a life-threatening one. I might not be able to survive another one. Lin Yi shook his head and smiled. Hurry up and tell us. The two girls urged. All right. Lin Yi had no choice but to tell his experiences to the two women in full detail. From the South Continent's escort agency gathering to being hunted down by the West Mountain sect master, he told them everything in detail from beginning to end. He didn't even hide anything about the 5 poison swamp. After all, the 2 women were on his side. If he didn't even trust them, there would be no one else in the world who could make Lin Yi truly open his heart to. In that case, even if he became invincible, it would still be a tragedy. Xinyan and Huang Xiaotao clicked their tongues in wonderment. Compared to their peaceful school life, Lin Yi's experiences were simply thrilling. Just listening to it was enough to excite them. The 2 women couldn't help but look at each other tacitly. Sure enough, Lin Yi was a magical person. No matter where he went, something magical would happen. Lin Yi reunited with the 2 women after a long time, but the 3 of them didn't have too much of an ambiguous relationship. After all, this was the divine nun of the Eastern Seas territory. Even if the 2 women didn't mind, Lin Yi wouldn't dare to do anything inappropriate in a place like this. It felt like he was secretly dating while he was still a student. It was quite interesting when he thought about it. The 3 of them just sat in the pavilion and chatted. Even after chatting for an entire night, they still weren't satisfied. Instead, they became even more spirited. It seemed like they could talk for 3 whole days and 3 nights without any problems. Yener Xiaotao. The divine nun of the Eastern Sea suddenly appeared in the courtyard and smiled at Lin Yi and the 2 women. Greetings, Senior of the Eastern Sea. Lin Yi stood up in a hurry and greeted her. Although he was Qing Danzi's master, he was obviously a junior before the divine nun of the Eastern Sea since they had agreed to discuss their own matters. There's no need to be so polite. This is the breakfast porridge I made myself. Have a taste, young hero Lin. The divine nun of the Eastern Sea came to the table next to them and served everyone a bowl. However, she didn't address Lin Yi arrogantly just because she was Wang Xiaotao and Huang Xiaotao's master. Good porridge. Senior East Sea has great skills. Lin Yi drank a mouthful and was full of praise. Although it was just an ordinary rice porridge without any spiritual medicine in it, for some reason, he could not help but become immersed in it as soon as he drank it. All the distracting thoughts in his mind disappeared, and it had the effect of clearing his mind. To think that an ordinary rice porridge could have such an effect. The divine nun of the Eastern Sea really was an extraordinary person. Master's breakfast porridge is the best in the Morning Star realm. You can't buy it no matter how much spiritual jade you have. Master Ling and Master Wei often rack their brains just to get a bowl of porridge. You have to drink some more. Wang Xinyan and Huang Xiaotao looked at each other and smiled. Of course. Lin Yi nodded. After finishing the bowl in 2 or 3 mouthfuls, he helped himself to another bowl without holding back at all. He was the living embodiment of a hungry ghost reincarnated. The divine nun of the Eastern Sea smiled. Lin Yi had always taken a liking to her, and because of the 2 girls she loved Lin Yi even more. Although she had only met Lin Yi a few times, Lin Yi was basically a nephew in her eyes. Oh right, these are the Thunder Quintessence pills I bought from the auction yesterday. Give them to Yener first. The divine nun of the Eastern Sea took out a pill and passed it to Wang Xinyan, before passing another to Huang Xiaotao. These are supreme grade golden nascent pills I asked for from your senior Uncle Wei. Xiaotao, you can use them right now. As for the Thunder Quintessence pills, I'll think of something else after you condense your soul. The supreme grade golden nascent pills from yesterday ended up in the hands of the second box. The owner of the second box was Wei Hebei, and with how many years of friendship the divine nun of the Eastern Sea had with him, it was obviously nothing difficult for her to obtain just one of them. Although Huang Xiaotao had no use for the Thunder Quintessence pills for now, the divine nun of the Eastern Sea still had a headache, as Thunder Quintessence pills were very rare. Even if she did find one, she might not be able to obtain 5 of them all at once like yesterday. If there were only 1 or 2, the competition would definitely be even more intense. With her wealth, it would be very difficult for her to obtain any of them. Senior, you don't need to worry about the Thunder Quintessence pills. I've already prepared them for the 2 of them. Lin Yi immediately took out 2 Thunder Quintessence pills from his bosom. Originally, he wanted to give them to Wang Xinyan and Huang Xiaotao as soon as he saw them, but in his excitement he had forgotten about it. If it were not for the divine nun of the Eastern Sea's reminder, he probably would not have remembered. He had refined a total of 8 last time. He had given 1 to Yang Chenxue and sold the other 5 in the auction. He had purposefully kept these 2 for the 2 girls. He did not care about them as he could refine more at any time. What? You have this too? Did you refine the Thunder Quintessence pills as well? The divine nun of the Eastern Sea was immediately surprised. Although discovering that Lin Yi was a 7th grade alchemist was unbelievable, she had thought that Lin Yi only knew how to refine 7th grade Great Recovery pills. She had never thought that Lin Yi had refined all the pills in the Hong Merchant Guild. After all, it was rather shocking. She never thought it would actually be true. Chapter 48-43. Hee, I've had some fortuitous encounters on the path of alchemy. Xinyan and Xiaotao have already troubled you a lot, senior. If you need any pills in the future, just leave it to me, Lin Yi said seriously. Young hero Lin, you're too kind. They're both my disciples. How could I just stand by and watch when it comes to their matters? The divine nun of the East Sea shook her head, but her expression showed that she was still slightly relieved. As one of the 3 pillars of the Morning Star Academy, her strength was obviously unquestionable. However, when it came to cultivation resources, she was a little strained. Regular cultivation resources were not a problem, but when it came to pills that required an astronomical price like the Thunder Shen pill, she could not help but feel a little powerless. After all, she had always cultivated alone, so she was not strong in terms of wealth. Lin Yi smiled and said nothing, but the divine nun of the East Sea said, Young hero Lin, you should keep one for yourself. One each for Yener and Xiaotao is enough. There's no point in having too many Thunder Shen pills. As time goes on, the medicinal effects will gradually fade away, and it'll even make people feel like they have a backup plan. It's not good for breakthroughs. Senior is right. Lin Yi nodded. Breakthroughs required an indomitable resolve. It was either succeed or die trying. If he had an extra Thunder Shen pill in his hands, he could not help but think that there would be a next time if he failed this time, which was not a good thing. After they finished their breakfast, Wang Xinyan and Huang Xiaotao followed the divine nun of the East Sea to cultivate. This was a morning lesson they had to do every day. Although the divine nun of the East Sea did not mind them staying with Lin Yi, the path of cultivation had to be persistent. If the 2 girls even gave up on their morning lessons because of Lin Yi's arrival, she would not allow it. The divine nun of the East Sea was not the only one who requested that. Lin Yi thought the same. After all, he was someone who cultivated without rest. He would cultivate diligently whenever he had the slightest bit of free time. Otherwise, no matter how many fortuitous encounters he had, it would just be a castle in the air. It was impossible for him to reach his current level. If they wanted to be together, they would have plenty of time after the morning class. As the 2 of them attended morning lessons with the divine nun of the East Sea, the divine nun of the East Sea even got the deaf nanny to prepare a cultivation room for Lin Yi. She treated him like a nephew already, which made Lin Yi feel rather flattered. Senior Ghost, how do you think we should resolve the matter of Qing Danzi? Lin Yi took some time to ask the ghost for advice. Since he had already accepted Qing Danzi as his apprentice, he couldn't turn a blind eye to Qing Danzi's problems. Unfortunately, with his meager alchemy experience, he simply couldn't find any clues, so he could only ask the ghost for advice. You're asking me? The thing was surprised. Do you think I'm that old thing Zhang Liju? I'm not an alchemist, how would I know? Look. Lin Yi was speechless. He was just trying to find a doctor in a desperate situation, forgetting that different professions were worlds apart. No matter how knowledgeable this thing was, there was no way it would know something like this. Alchemy was a very profound profession after all. Idiot, if you don't know, why don't you go ask someone else? The ghost curled its lips. Ask who? Zhang Liju? I haven't even met him yet. Do you want me to ask Kai Zhongyang or Ho Guanqi? Lin Yi said after some thought. Out of all the people he knew, these 2 were the best alchemists, and they were both Zhang Liju's apprentices. However, he didn't think that their skills were better than Qing Danzi's, so they probably wouldn't be able to help. Isn't that little girlfriend of yours pretty good? The one who gave you the pesticide cauldron? The ghost said. You mean Jing Jing? Lin Yi was taken aback, he shook his head. Although Jing Jing is an alchemist, she's not a traditional one. She's an expert in high-technology alchemy. I don't think Qing Danzi would be able to help with this. Are you stupid? Your apprentice is already a level 7 alchemist unless you can really find Zhang Liju, which normal alchemist would be able to solve his problem. Why don't you try asking that little girlfriend of yours? She might be able to help. It's just asking anyway, it's not a big deal, the ghost said disapprovingly. You're right. Lin Yi made up his mind and immediately left Donghai Pavilion to return to Hong's Merchant Association. He wrote a letter about Qing Danzi and asked Honest Chai to send it to the northern island. Han Jingjing had also arrived at the northern island with Shanghai Laner. However, sending a letter was a difficult task. Every branch of Hong's Merchant Association and the headquarters had their own communication birds, except for East Continent, which was too far away. Normal birds couldn't cover the area, so they had to use conventional methods. From East Continent to the northern island, it would take at least 2 months if they took the usual route on a treasure ship. However, this was only the conventional route. If they used a special long-distance communication channel and didn't take the treasure ship, they could directly use a special flying spirit beast to help them deliver the message. The time could be shortened a lot. However, flying spirit beasts that could travel between two heavenly islands were rare. It was a big problem to domesticate them on a large scale, and it was even more difficult to unify them and cover the 5 heavenly islands including East Continent. This wasn't something that a single merchant association could support on its own. Only a specialized transportation company had the ability to do this. In fact, even a transportation company could only do this by borrowing a lot of resources from the various merchant associations. That was why all the merchant associations, including Hong's Merchant Association, could cooperate with them to deliver messages. However, they needed to spend a lot of spirit jades. After Cui Mingshan personally delivered the letter, Honest Chai asked Lin Yi, "The second auction will be held in 3 days. It's an individual auction. Do you want to go and take a look?" Lin Yi was stunned. He seemed to have heard Honest Chai mention this before, but after meeting Wang Xinyan and Huang Xiaotao, he had long forgotten about it. "If you have nothing else to do, why don't you take Miss Huang and the others to have a look? I heard that an individual auction is much more interesting than a merchant association's auction. There are all kinds of rare items. Not only will it be more lively, but there will also be more buyers and sellers. Should be very interesting." Honest Chai suggested. "Is that so? Is there a need to enter the auction?" Lin Yi asked. "According to the rules of the auction, it's not just about having enough spirit jades to participate in an individual auction. You must also take out something that can pass the auction's evaluation. Only then can you obtain the qualification to enter the auction. Otherwise, you won't even be able to enter." Honest Chai explained. Chapter 48-44. No wonder individual auctions were more popular than merchant auctions. After all, this rule eliminated the possibility of people trying to pick up scraps. Otherwise, there would only be buyers with hidden items, and the number of sellers who would be willing to take out good items would be uncertain. That's right, the Morning Star auction ceremony is a rare occasion. The Academy has put in a lot of effort to make it a good event. I heard that this rule was personally suggested by Dean Ling. Honest Chai laughed as he revealed the truth. "Is that so?" Lin Yi thought to himself that he was indeed a wily old fox with a wealth of experience. A simple sentence from him was enough to liven up the entire auction. He then asked, "But if that's the case, doesn't that mean I have to take something out to auction?" "That's not necessary. The auction has an additional rule that every merchant who participates in the first auction will have 2 spots. Since I'm busy with the Merchant Association, I'll leave the 2 spots to you." Honest Chai smiled. "All right then." Lin Yi nodded. 2 spots wasn't enough. After all, even if it was only him, Wang Xinyan and Huang Xiaotao, there would still be 3 people. But this was a small problem and he just had to take out something. Lin Yi didn't stay at the Merchant Association for long. After calculating the time, he estimated that the 2 girls would return to East Sea Pavilion before their morning classes ended. For the next few days, Lin Yi's group of 3 could be seen everywhere in the academy. It was rare for them to come to Morning Star Academy, so of course they had to have some fun. This scene broke the hearts of the male students. They looked at Lin Yi with envy, jealousy, and hatred. If looks could kill, Lin Yi would have died 10,000 times. One had to know that both Wang Xinyan and Huang Xiaotao were goddesses in the hearts of the male students. Especially Wang Xinyan, the 3rd fairy of the East Continent's Gaolin Sea. She was an existence that the male students could only see in their dreams. This wasn't some random name. The Gaolin Sea was part of the Golden Class region of the Eastern Continent, and it was a very large one at that. The number of Golden Class academies in the sea alone was in the double digits, and it wasn't hard to imagine how important this 3rd fairy was. In comparison, Huang Xiaotao's popularity was slightly inferior, but that was purely because she was used to wearing a veil. Until now, the number of students in the Morning Star Academy who had seen her face could be counted on one's fingers. If not, she would have changed her name to one of the 4 fairies. But even so, Huang Xiaotao's popularity was still very high, almost catching up to Wang Xinyan's because of her graceful figure and refined temperament. But now, the 2 goddesses in everyone's hearts were actually together with a young man. Moreover, they were laughing and chatting happily, and from time to time they would have some intimate body movements. It had been like this for a few days, and the male disciples of the Morning Star Academy were simply going crazy. If it wasn't for Lin Yi's reputation in the previous auction, especially the fact that the Academy's chief alchemist, Qing Danzi, had become his disciple, and his background was frighteningly powerful, he would have been challenged by a large number of male students. But now no one dared to provoke Lin Yi. Even the dean, Ling Yuanqing, was very courteous to him. If they dared to be the slightest bit disrespectful, Lin Yi wouldn't even need to do anything himself, and the academy would be the first to come after them. Hence, they dared not say anything and could only watch from afar. At the same time, they secretly cursed in their hearts, but on the surface, they still had to pretend to be respectful. However, there were still hidden dragons and crouching tigers in the academy, and not everyone only dared to hold back. There was no lack of people who wanted to make a move against Lin Yi, such as Bao Zhuoyang. Others might be frightened by Lin Yi's background, but Bao Zhuoyang was definitely not one of them. This was because his own background was not small, especially in the Morning Star City. His father, Bafala, only had one son, and everyone in the Morning Star City knew of Bafala. After all, he was the one and only city lord. Looking at all the academy cities in the Eastern continent, other than the well-known academies, there was another mainstream power, and that was the city lord's mansion. The Eastern Continent Academy was naturally the core power of these academy cities, but the city lord's mansion and the academy did not have a subordinate relationship, but a parallel relationship. Taking Morning Star City as an example, in theory the city lord Bafala and the dean Ling Yuanqing were existences with the same status. In reality, both of them were core members of the academy's elder council, and held great authority. They were both the top figures in Morning Star City. However, according to the rules, both sides did not interfere with each other. Ling Yuanqing would not participate in the governance of Morning Star City, and Bafala would not participate in the management of the academy. Unless something big happened, both sides would sit together to discuss. Normally the king would not meet the king. For example, the auction held by the academy this time had Ling Yuanqing overseeing it, and Bafala would not take the initiative to attend. This was a very delicate balance. Both were in the academy city, but the academy and the city lord's mansion governed separately. This was the unique structure of the Eastern continent. After all, the bigger the city, the more things would happen. There had to be an important figure to personally take charge, or else it would be a mess like the southern continent. A dean like Ling Yuanqing did not have the time, and the appearance of the city lord's mansion was inevitable. With a big backer like Bafala, Bao Zhuoyang was definitely the most powerful second generation in Morning Star City. Even in the Morning Star Academy, he was an extremely arrogant person. All these years, Bao Zhuoyang had always been infatuated with one woman, one of the three fairies, Wang Xinyan. If it was just an ordinary female disciple with an ordinary background, Bao Zhuoyang would have no reason not to get his hands on her. However, Wang Xinyan was different. Not only was she the personal disciple of the divine nun of the Eastern Sea, but because of her extraordinary talent, even Ling Yuanqing and Wei Hebei regarded her as the hope of the academy. They had always valued her highly. No matter how bold Bao Zhuoyang was, he would not dare to force himself on Wang Xinyan. Of course, not daring to force himself on her didn't mean that he would give up. In fact, Bao Zhuoyang had always been thinking of ways to hit on Wang Xinyan. Basically, wherever Wang Xinyan appeared, Bao Zhuoyang would be there. It was a pity that Wang Xinyan had no interest in him. Whenever they met, she would not even bother to say a word. Whenever she was slightly annoyed, she would ask the deaf nanny to chase him away. That old woman did not care about background. No matter who it was that dared to harass Wang Xinyan and Huang Xiaotao, even if it was a powerful second generation like Bao Zhuoyang, she would still beat them mercilessly. Even Bao Zhuoyang was afraid of her. Chapter 48-45. Unfortunately, things didn't go as planned. Bao Zhuoyang begged several times and prepared tens of millions of spiritual jades as a betrothal gift to marry Wang Xinyan, but he was rejected by the divine nun of the East Sea on the spot. This old woman was as stubborn as the deaf nanny. Facing the divine nun of the East Sea, Bao Zhuoyang couldn't do anything even if he brought out his father Bao Farah. Even though he was the city lord of the same rank as Ling Yuanqing in name, he couldn't control the divine nun of the East Sea. At most, he could restrain the deputy city lord. The divine nun of the East Sea, who was the deputy dean of the academy, didn't need to pay attention to him. If that was all, Bao Zhuoyang had plenty of time to slowly grind. As the saying goes, dripping water can wear away a stone. As long as Wang Xinyan was in the Morning Star Academy, she would never be able to escape from his hands. But now it was different. Suddenly there was a shocking Lin Yi. Seeing how intimate this guy was with Wang Xinyan, Bao Zhuoyang was furious. In his eyes, Wang Xinyan was already his woman. How could he let an outsider touch her? Fortunately, his follower Su Kexing was beside him, and he tried his best to calm him down. Otherwise, Bao Zhuoyang would really attack Lin Yi in a rage. The consequences would be unimaginable. Master Bao, please don't be impulsive. As long as this Lin guy leaves, Wang Xinyan will still be in your hands. Don't get yourself into trouble. Su Kexing used all his strength to pull Bao Zhuoyang to an empty corner and whispered, This Lin guy is a disciple of the North Island, and he doesn't look like he'll join our academy. He won't stay here for long. Master Bao, please bear with him for a while. You know nothing. Wang Xinyan has always had this brat in her heart. That's why she wouldn't agree to me before. No matter what, I have to get rid of this brat. Otherwise, I'll never get Wang Xinyan in this life. Bao Zhuoyang said angrily. So that's how it is. Then how do we get rid of him? Even Qing Danzi is his disciple. If we aren't careful, we'll end up inviting disaster upon ourselves. When that time comes, even City Lord Bao might not be able to resolve it. Su Kexing frowned. I'll have to ask you this question. You're my most trusted advisor. You have to help me think of a way to get the best of both worlds. Not only will it be able to deal with this Lin, but it won't cause any repercussions. Bao Zhuoyang looked at him and said, in the past, this kind of sinister matter was always handed over to Su Kexing to handle, and every time it was done properly, so Bao Zhuoyang trusted him even more. I'll have to think about it. Su Kexing rolled his eyes as he muttered, the main thing is that this Lin guy's status is a little high. It's difficult to use the methods we used to deal with the other academy disciples on him. This guy is not only Qing Danzi's master, but also the honorary vice president of the Hong Chamber of Commerce. His relationship with the outside world is very solid. Yes. Bao Zhuoyang was also a little apprehensive about this. He was not a brainless fool, but he knew how to weigh the strength of the enemy and himself. If he could bully them, he would bully them to death. If they were too strong, he could only retreat. And Lin Yi obviously belonged to the latter. But then again, although this Lin guy has a very powerful background and is also a rare super alchemist, his strength is really not that great. He's just a nascent soul late stage. If you can fight him fair and square, you can kill him in one move, young Master Bao. TSK. Su Kexing analyzed. Yes, this is the only thing we can use, but I can't just go and challenge him like this, can I? A dignified nascent soul peak expert like me challenging a nascent soul late stage. Wouldn't that be a joke? I might even be looked down by Wang Xinyan. Bao Zhuoyang frowned. A direct challenge definitely won't work. Let's not talk about whether this Lin guy dares to agree. Even if he dares, the academy's higher-ups will probably come out to stop it. We definitely won't be able to take advantage of it. Su Kexing shook his head. Then hurry up and think of some other way. Bao Zhuoyang urged. Su Kexing pondered for a long while before clapping his hands. I've got it. If we can't deal with this Lin guy ourselves, then we'll have to find a way to kill him with a borrowed knife. It's the auction right now, so let's see if we can do it through the auction. We need to think of a way to make him offend someone powerful. Yes, that makes sense. Hurry up and plan, the next auction is almost here. Bao Zhuoyang nodded. Master Bao, how do we plan this? We'll have to act according to the situation at the auction. Su Kexing shook his head with a bitter smile and scratched his head. But we can do some preparatory work first. Maybe it'll come in handy. All right, we'll do as you say. Bao Zhuoyang nodded. Lin Yi and the two girls didn't know that someone had their eyes on them. The only thing they did for the past few days was play around. It was worth mentioning that Lin Yi remembered Jianghu Hai's request and asked Wang Xinyan to help him ask about the female practitioner called Qinyu. However, the reply he got was that she was in seclusion, so he put it aside for now. It wouldn't be too late to hand the golden soul-gathering pill to her when he came out. The auction was like a storm, and it became the topic of conversation for everyone in the city. As for Lin Yi, who was the main character, he became the hottest topic in Morningstar City. After 3 days, the main event of the Morningstar auction was finally here. The individual auction that everyone had been waiting for had officially begun. Lin Yi brought Wang Xinyan and Huang Xiaotao to the first floor of Morningstar City. As one of the 3 heavyweights of the academy, the divine nun of the Eastern Sea didn't need any qualifications or spots to participate in this auction. However, she had no intention of coming. In fact, it wasn't just her. Almost all the higher-ups of the academy, including Ling Yuanqing, Wei Hebei, Qing Danzi, and the others, didn't show up. This was an unspoken rule. After all, no one was a match for them in terms of financial resources. If they participated, the individual auction would be reduced to a battle limited to the VIP boxes, just like the Chamber of Commerce's auction. Then the auction would be a complete failure. I'm sorry, young hero Lin. The 3 of you still owe an entry spot. The staff suddenly blocked the path of Lin Yi and the others, attracting a large crowd to watch. After all, whether it was Lin Yi, Wang Xinyan, or Huang Xiaotao, they were all the focus of attention. Especially Lin Yi, who had been in the limelight 3 days ago. Now, everyone in Morningstar City knew about him. Is that so? Lin Yi and the others looked at each other. Chapter 48-46. He wanted to let Lin Yi and the other two in, but he didn't dare to make an exception in front of so many people, or it would be a mess. Hey, now you're acting dumb, aren't you? I'll let you make a fool out of yourself in front of my Wang Xinyan. Bao Zuoyang and Su Kexing laughed coldly in the crowd. Before they could finish laughing, Lin Yi threw out a rank 7 recover pill and smiled. Is this okay? Yes, of course. The staff nodded. Other treasures had to be appraised by a professional appraiser, but this rank 7 recover pill didn't even have to go through the process. Not to mention whether it was qualified to be auctioned, it could even be used as the finale of the auction. Damn, this bastard really doesn't lack spiritual jade. Bao Zuoyang was speechless. Even he, the only son of the mayor, wasn't as generous as Lin Yi. They arrived at the familiar auction venue. This time, because the big shots were not participating, there were no VIP boxes set up. However, with the three of them's status, even if there were no boxes, they would still be able to get a good seat. Ordinary people only dared to watch from afar and did not dare to approach, for fear of causing trouble for themselves. The auction hadn't started yet, and Lin Yi chatted with the two girls and drank tea while listening to the people around him. Most of their discussions were about the auction, but Lin Yi noticed that many people were talking about the same thing. It seemed like there would be an unparalleled trial here soon. What a coincidence. Last time he was in the West Island, and now he was in the East Continent for another unparalleled trial. It sounded like it was going to be a great one. Unparalleled trial? What do you mean? Lin Yi couldn't help but ask the two girls. Oh, you're talking about the trial that's going to start in 3 months? It's the legendary road to becoming a golden Class C magnate in the East Continent, Wang Xinyan explained with a smile. Road to becoming a magnate? Lin Yi was stunned. He subconsciously recalled the giant realm that the ghost had explained to him. Could it be that this trial could produce a supermaster of the giant realm? Yes, it is said that this is a very special and important trial ground. If you want to advance to the profound ascension stage, you must enter the path of the tyrant, because only there can you trigger the thunder tribulation. Wang Xiaotao said. That's right, everyone knows that if you want to break through to the profound ascension realm, you must go through the thunder tribulation. Only during the tempering of the thunder tribulation, when the two types of spirit roots are harmonized, can you have a chance to break through to the profound ascension realm, and it is very difficult to attract the thunder tribulation outside. Without the thunder tribulation, naturally, it is impossible to break through to the profound ascension realm. Wang Xinyan nodded. In other words, only by entering the path of a giant can one attract the lightning tribulation and have a chance to break through to the profound ascension realm? Lin Yi said thoughtfully. This was slightly different from the giant realm he had imagined. At least the opening mountain stage could be considered as the giant realm. But to be honest, the profound ascension stage was the preschool of the giant realm. It was not an exaggeration to say that it was the path of the giant realm. Yes, so this auction can be said to be at the right time. Everyone wants to take this opportunity to buy some good things in preparation so that they won't be caught unprepared during the trial. Especially the 5 thunder profound pills that were put up in the last auction. It was simply timely. Wang Xiaotao said with a smile. Last time the 5 pills were divided up by the higher-ups of your school. I'm afraid it's very difficult for ordinary disciples to get them. Don't tell me they already have them? Lin Yi couldn't help but feel strange. That's impossible. The Thunder Shen pill is too rare. I heard that most of the participants don't have it. They can't get it, so in the end they can only force the Thunder Tribulation. But it's very risky. If they fail, it's very likely that they will die. Wang Xiaotao shook her head. It's that dangerous? Lin Yi was shocked. To be able to reach the great perfection of the nascent soul stage was said to be 1 in 10,000. No matter who it was very difficult to reach this step. In the end, they had to face such a dangerous thing. The cruelty of the cultivation world was not something ordinary people could understand. If you don't move forward, you will fall back. No one will be willing to stop here. However, even without the protection of the Thunder Shen pill, as long as you take proper precautions, you can still avoid the danger of your life. It's just that failure is inevitable. They can only think of a way to start again next time. I'm afraid that only they can understand the difficulty. Wang Xinyan sighed. Without the Thunder Shen pill, it meant that they could only rely on their own strength to resist the Thunder Tribulation. In the face of the power of the Thunder Tribulation, no matter how strong an individual's strength was, it was still insignificant. To be able to rely on various methods to survive was already a fluke. At this time, they still wanted to take the opportunity to break through to the profound ascension stage? Not to say that it was absolutely impossible, it was basically no different from courting death. Under the thunder tribulation, even a slight distraction would lead to death, not to mention breaking through uncontrollably. Therefore, it was already common knowledge in the cultivation world that one must have the protection of the Thunder Xian pill to break through to the profound ascension stage. The number of profound ascension stage experts had always been extremely rare. The ratio of the number of nascent soul stage experts to the great perfection of the nascent soul stage was almost 1/10. The reason for this was that in addition to the difficulty of breaking through to the profound ascension stage, the scarcity of the Thunder Xian pill was the most important part. Yes, after all, there are still more grassroots cultivators in this world. They do not have a deep background, and it is difficult for them to have powerful and unparalleled strength. They can only rely on their own efforts to break through step by step. However, when they finally reach the great perfection of the nascent soul stage, they are blocked by the Thunder Xian pill, unable to go further. This is the tragedy of a grassroots cultivator. Lin Yi shook his head and sighed. He himself was an out-and-out grassroots cultivator. If he hadn't had so many miraculous encounters, he would have had to face this almost unsolvable predicament. As the old saying goes, a single coin stumps a hero. Now, in the cultivation world, it was the same as a single thunder profound pill stumping countless grassroots experts. It really made people sigh. However, this was understandable. There was no such thing as fairness in the cultivation world, especially in the Heaven Stage Island where the strong preyed on the weak. This was even more vividly reflected. In the face of a group of cultivators who kept shouting that they were going to defy the heavens, it was already very benevolent for the heavens to only send down the thunder tribulation on the path of the tyrant, but they still wanted fairness? Fair my ass. A bolt of heavenly lightning would blast all the heaven-defying bastards into pieces. That would be fair. Wang Xinyan and Huang Xiaotao looked at each other speechlessly with the same feeling. If it were not for the fact that they were the disciples of the divine nun of the Eastern Sea, the two of them would also be grassroots cultivators. They could only rely on themselves to break through everything. How could they have the strength they had today? Right, since the path of the tyrant opens in 3 months, do you two want to try it? Lin Yi asked. Chapter 48-47. I'm not going. I haven't even reached golden core perfection yet. My priority is to condense my nascent soul. I'm still far from reaching profound ascension. Huang Xiaotao shook her head. What about you, Xinyan? Lin Yi turned to Wang Xinyan. I've discussed it with Master. Master suggested that I give it a try. Even if I don't succeed, I can gain some experience. My life shouldn't be in danger with the Thunder Xian pill. Wang Xinyan said. Although her current strength was only at the middle stage of the nascent soul realm, with the special potential of her spongy body, coupled with powerful medicinal pills, it was not impossible for her to reach the peak of the nascent soul realm in 3 months. Of course, if she could not even reach the peak of the nascent soul realm by then there was no need to go on the path of a giant. I see. Lin Yi pondered for a moment and decided, there are still 3 months left. We should be able to do it if we work hard. If we're going, then the 3 of us will go together. Wang Xinyan and Huang Xiaotao were shocked. Especially Huang Xiaotao, who wasn't prepared at all. She pointed at herself and said, I have to go too? Yes, Xiaotao, you too. Lin Yi nodded seriously. But I haven't even condensed my nascent soul yet. Huang Xiaotao looked at Lin Yi and Wang Xinyan helplessly. She thought that this would be a 2-person world for Lin Yi and Wang Xinyan. She didn't expect that she would be part of it. One had to be at least a master of the peak of Yuanying realm to have a chance to enter the path of a giant. Now there were only 3 months left. With her strength, it was impossible at all. From the peak of Jindan realm to the peak of Yuanying realm in 3 months, she could not do it even in her dreams, could she? Could it be that you're thinking of? Xinyan said thoughtfully. Huang Xiaotao didn't know too much about Lin Yi's abilities, but she'd followed him all the way from the common world. She knew exactly what Lin Yi was capable of. It was impossible for anyone else to do something like this, but Lin Yi was an exception. That's right. Lin Yi smiled mysteriously. So your ability can be used even at nascent soul perfection. That's great. Wang Xinyan was relieved. What are you guys talking about? What kind of ability is it? Huang Xiaotao, on the other hand, was confused. She really couldn't think of any ability that would allow her to enter the path of giants in 3 months. You'll know in the future. Lin Yi and Xinyan looked at each other and smiled. The others weren't too close, but there were too many people here and it was better to be careful. It'd be troublesome if this ability got out. So mysterious. Huang Xiaotao pouted helplessly, but she did not pursue the matter. Anyway, she would find out sooner or later, so there was no hurry. While the 3 of them were talking, The curtains of the individual auction finally opened in front of everyone's eyes. This time, the host was still the white-bearded old man from last time. He could be considered a familiar face. Ladies and gentlemen, the individual auction has officially begun. Without further ado, let's get straight to the point. The white-bearded old man changed his style from last time and got straight to the point. Let's take a look at the first item, a pair of Ghost Eye Eagle King wings. The starting price is 100,000 spiritual jades. As soon as the old man finished speaking, no one showed any expression of surprise. They only whispered to each other. There weren't many people who were really interested in the wings. Lin Yi's eyes lit up as he looked at the pair of majestic black wings that were being carried onto the stage. He didn't know what they were used for, but at the very least, the appearance of this thing was top-notch. 100,000 spirit jades didn't sound cheap, but it was definitely worth it. Why was everyone looking at it with such disdain? 150,000. Lin Yi thought for a moment before opening his mouth. He was rich to begin with, and 3 days ago he had earned more than 80 million spiritual jades. A mere few 100,000 was like a drop in the ocean. Of course, Lin Yi was not a fool. No matter how many spiritual jades he had, he wouldn't throw them away for no reason. The premise of spending money like this was that it caught his eye. The crowd was in an uproar not because of the 150,000 spiritual jades, but because of Lin Yi himself. Compared to the Ghost Eye Eagle King wings, this young man with a shocking background was a little more worthwhile. Do you want this pair of Ghost Eye Eagle King wings? Wang Xinyan asked softly. Not really. It looks nice, but I don't know what it's used for. I'll leave it to fate. Lin Yi shook his head noncommittally. To be honest, he really wanted it. The bid just now was just an impulsive one. If someone really wanted to bid, he might not follow. But I heard that the Ghost Eye Eagle King wings are actually quite useless. It's expensive, but it can only be taken home as a decoration. There's rarely a chance to use it. After all, it's not sharp enough to forge weapons and it has no other special uses. Can't be used for alchemy either. Huang Xiaotao shook her head. That was indeed the case. If it really had a great use, the rest of the crowd would have been interested. After all, even if they could buy it for 200,000 spiritual jades, it was still useless. Normally, 200,000 spiritual jades were enough to buy a golden nascent condensation pill, but it was not guaranteed to be of superior quality. That was the real treasure. Who would be willing to waste it on a useless exhibit like the Ghost-Eyed Eagle King wing? After waiting for a while, a young man in the distance finally opened his mouth to bid. 200,000. Lin Yi shrugged slightly and was about to give up when the ghostly thing suddenly spoke. This thing is not bad. It'll be useful if you buy it. Lin Yi was shocked. He didn't expect the Ghost-Eye Eagle King wings to be interested in the ghostly thing. He didn't have time to ask why and immediately said, 300,000. The young man glanced at Lin Yi, hesitated for a moment and soon gave up bidding. It seemed that his mentality was the same as Lin Yi's. They both had an attitude of, take it or leave it. If he could buy it for 200,000, he would buy it. If it was more than that, he would not continue to compete with others. 300,000 going once, 300,000 going twice. Is there any higher bid? The white-bearded old man encouraged. The Ghost-Eye Eagle King wings were not an ideal auction item, but it was the first one after all. It was not good to have too much silence. However, the crowd was obviously not stupid. Spending 200,000 spiritual jades for this kind of exhibit item was already the limit. Now that the price had reached 300,000, no one would jump out to compete with Lin Yi unless there was a hole in their brains. Chapter 48. Everyone's gazes fell on Lin Yi's head, each and every one of them with a look of disdain as if they were looking at a fool. What they didn't know was that Lin Yi was secretly laughing in his heart. 300,000 spirit jades for the Ghost-Eyed Eagle King's wing might seem like a fool to others, but this was something that the ghost had specifically asked him to bid for. One could imagine that this was practically picking up a bargain in public. Hey, why isn't that Sun guy bidding anymore? I thought he would fight with Lin Yi. What a disappointment. Bao Zuoyang thought to himself. The Sun guy that he mentioned was the young man who had just bid 200,000 spirit jades. He was also a second-generation cultivator from the Morning Star Academy, but he was not on good terms with Bao Zuoyang. Young Master Bao, you are thinking too much. Spending more than 300,000 spirit jades for this pair of Ghost-Eyed Eagle King's wings, you are also reluctant. That Sun guy is not a fool, right? Spending so much spirit jades to buy a decoration, his old man will definitely break his legs. Su Kexing shook his head and laughed. That's true. Lin Yi is stupid enough to spend 300,000 spirit jades for this thing. It is not easy to find someone more stupid than him. Bao Zuoyang thought for a while and laughed. Although he did not make an enemy for Lin Yi, seeing Lin Yi waste so many spirit jades was not a bad feeling. Don't be anxious, the best is yet to come. When they encounter the real good stuff, I have already prepared everything. Young Master Bao, just wait and see. Su Kexing laughed confidently. Okay, I will wait. Bao Zhuoyang patted him on the shoulder. He had a lot of trust in this little brother that he had played with since childhood. At least among the circle of second-generation heirs that he had come into contact with, Su Kexing was definitely the one with the best brains. The second item is the venomous infant dagger. It is an invincible godly weapon. What is even rarer is that it is smeared with a rare poison. Even an original infant stage expert would die upon touching it. The starting price is 500,000 spirit jades. The white-bearded old man said as he held up the dagger and showed it to the crowd. Unlike the awkward silence just now, everyone's interest was immediately piqued. Bidders were everywhere and the price was raised in an instant. This dagger seems a bit strange. Lin Yi took a closer look at it. At first glance, it looked like an ordinary dagger, but when he used his divine sense to sense it carefully, he found that there was an extremely evil aura attached to it. It didn't feel like an ordinary poison, but more like an evil curse. It really is. My intuition tells me that this thing was raised with fresh blood, and it's the blood of an original soul stage master at that. The evil energy on it is unimaginable, and I'm afraid it's already turned into poison. No wonder even an original soul stage master couldn't handle it. Sun Yan frowned. All of her mental cultivation methods and martial techniques came from the divine nun of the East Sea, so she was extremely sensitive to the evil aura. In comparison, Huang Xiaotao had not been initiated for very long, so she was unable to sense it immediately. 2 million. A ferocious-looking middle-aged man shouted as he stared at the nascent venom dagger. With such a weapon in hand, any nascent soul expert would have to take a few steps back. The killing power of this dagger was self-evident. Let alone a mere 2 million spirit jades, it would be worth it no matter how many spirit jades he spent. 2,300,000 spirit jades. Not far away, a woman with a sinister look on her face refused to budge. Her gaze was even more intense than the middle-aged man's. In her eyes, this dagger was like her life weapon, an existence that was tailor-made for her. It wasn't just these two people. There were a few others who were also raising the price with all their might. Judging from the atmosphere, it was obvious that none of them were people to be trifled with. Now that they were competing against each other for a nascent venom dagger, the atmosphere in the hall was so tense that it was hard to breathe. Bao Zhuoyang's gaze was always on Lin Yi, and he was instantly disappointed when he saw that Lin Yi was completely uninterested in the dagger. Truth be told, even a nascent soul stage master like him was interested in this nascent venom dagger. How could this guy, a mere nascent soul late stage, remain unmoved? It wasn't like he was lacking in spirit jades. With Lin Yi's wealth, if he really made a move, no one present would be able to outbid him. In that case, those who were also determined to obtain the nascent venom dagger would definitely target him. This was in line with Bao Zhuoyang's intention of using someone else to do his dirty work. However, now that Lin Yi wasn't making a move, Bao Zhuoyang's hopes were dashed. If he had heard of Lin Yi's achievements in Soaring Cloud Academy, he would know that this kind of hope was nonsense from the very beginning. How could someone who was able to fight against someone as strong as Lung Rufin be interested in a mere nascent venom dagger? No matter how sinister the dagger was, it was only effective against nascent soul experts. If Lin Yi wanted to deal with a nascent soul expert, would he even need to use poison? After a stalemate, the nascent venom dagger finally fell into the hands of the sinister-looking woman and was sold for a price of 3.8 million spirit jades. Compared to the first item, the ghost-eyed eagle king's wing, this price was already extremely high. However, the next few items were sold for a price of 3 to 4 million spirit jades. After all, in the eyes of everyone present, these items were all rare and valuable items. This price was not a loss at all. However, what made Bao Zhuoyang speechless was that in the face of so many tempting items, Lin Yi didn't even look at them. He didn't even open his mouth, let alone start a feud with anyone. Not only Bao Zhuoyang but even Su Kexing, who was originally quite calm, couldn't keep his cool. He couldn't help but say, "Isn't this guy's standards too high? Any one of these items can greatly increase a nascent soul expert's battle prowess. How can he not be interested in them? What should we do? If this guy doesn't take the bait no matter what, how are we going to kill him with a borrowed knife?" Bao Zhuoyang felt a headache coming on. "Young Master Bao, don't panic. Although this guy's stubbornness is surprising, we still have a backup plan. Young Master Bao, don't forget about that thing." Su Kexing laughed. "How could I forget? I've put in a lot of effort. Bao Zhuoyang's face was full of pain. This item was something he had taken out after listening to Su Kexing's plan. If it wasn't for the fact that he wanted to kill Lin Yi, he wouldn't have taken it out normally. After all, this item was very rare. You can't catch the wolf without risking the child. Young Master Bao, you've seen it for yourself. That Lin Yi guy doesn't care about these items. If we don't put in a lot of effort, it won't be easy to get him to take the bait. If he doesn't take the bait, there's nothing we can do. Su Kexing smiled helplessly. Chapter 48-49. That's right. No matter how high his vision is, no matter how strong his background is, at the end of the day, strength is king. Plus, he is a super alchemist himself. To him, this item is the same as increasing his strength. Unless his brain is flooded with water, there is no way he wouldn't be tempted. As long as he is tempted, everything else will be easy. Su Kexing said confidently. Brat, you have to make careful arrangements. I've invested so much. If I can't create a few powerful enemies for him in the end, I won't forgive you. Bao's was said with a guilty conscience. The only reason he took out this item was to kill someone with a borrowed knife. If he couldn't defeat Lin Yi in the end and Lin Yi won it, then no matter how high the price was, Bao Zhuoyang would be depressed to the point of vomiting blood. After all, this item was almost as rare as the Shen Thunder Dan. Usually, no matter how many spiritual jades he spent, he might not be able to buy it. Don't worry. I've already arranged everything. This enemy is definitely powerful enough. Even if Lin Yi provokes him, he won't be able to walk away unscathed. I can guarantee that he will definitely fight. That person is not a reasonable person, hee. Su Kexing smiled mysteriously. Good. Seeing his expression, Bao Zhuoyang was instantly filled with confidence. Because every time this guy revealed this expression, he had never failed. This time was no exception. Next is the 8th item, the yuan-raising demonic golden grass. The white-bearded old man hadn't even finished speaking when the entire audience was in an uproar. The response was much more enthusiastic than all the previous auction items combined. And this time, it was as Bao Zhuoyang and Su Kexing had expected. Lin Yi, who had been indifferent all this while, had his eyes lit up. Lin Yi was an alchemist himself. He was no stranger to the yuan-raising demonic golden grass. This was because this was the main ingredient for the vitality-raising Dan. Its rarity was comparable to the thunder mystic Rattan. Although the spiritual Dan was only effective for original infant stage cultivators, it was still a 7th realm Dan. Its effects were very simple. If an original infant stage cultivator were to take one, they would be able to level up by 1 level. To an original infant stage cultivator, this was undoubtedly a holy pill that they yearned for even in their dreams. Furthermore, it was an enhanced version of the condensing infant pill. One has to know that the condensing infant pill only had miraculous effects when forming the original infant stage. Once one entered the original infant stage, although it was possible to continue using it as an experience pill, the effects would be extremely limited. It could even be said to be sloppy and a waste of resources. If one wanted to rely on the golden nascent gathering pill to level up, it would be impossible to do so without at least 8 to 10 pills. However, the vitality enhancing pill was different. Regardless of whether one was an early nascent soul realm expert or a late nascent soul realm expert, as long as one pill was used, one would be able to directly level up. However, it could not replace the effect of the gathering nascent soul golden pill that could break the barrier. If the golden core perfection dared to take the yuan cultivating pill, it would basically result in an instant death. Just as Bao Zhuoyang and Su Kexing had speculated, there was no way Lin Yi wouldn't be able to do nothing about this. In reality, as long as one's capability wasn't at the original level, any original leveled cultivator, regardless of their background, wouldn't be able to remain unmoved. After the evaluation, this golden nascent soul golden grass can be divided into 5 portions. In other words, it can only be used to brew 5 vitality-enhancing pills. The starting price is 1 million spiritual jades, the bearded elder announced. 2 million. Lin Yi opened his mouth and immediately doubled the starting price. 2 million spiritual jades to buy 1 golden nascent soul golden grass was a little high. After all, this wasn't a ready-made vitality-enhancing pill. However, in Lin Yi's hands, this thing was no different from a vitality-enhancing pill. Especially at a time like this, it didn't matter how many spiritual jades he spent. After all, millions of spiritual jades were nothing more than numbers to Lin Yi. Now that he had the opportunity to buy the golden nascent soul golden grass, he was already making a profit. At this moment, Xinyan suddenly made a sound of surprise. She whispered to Lin Yi and Huang Xiaotao, "I think I've seen this golden nascent soul golden grass before?" Lin Yi paused. "Right, I remember now. Isn't this Wu Liangbao's? Huang Xiaotao slapped her forehead and remembered as well. Wu Liangbao. Lin Yi paused again. Who would come up with a name like that? Seeing Lin Yi's confused expression, Xinyan smiled and explained, Wu Liangbao is our nickname. His real name is Bao Zhuiliang, the only son of Morningstar City's city lord, Bao Farah. As she spoke, she pointed at a table in the distance. It was where Bao Zhuiliang and Su Kexing were sitting. Lin Yi glanced at them and his heart jumped. He'd noticed that these two had been staring at him since the beginning, but he didn't take it to heart. After all, he was someone who stood at the heart of the struggle. There were many people who paid attention to him, but not as much as these two. Lin Yi couldn't help but speculate that these two had ulterior motives and weren't just here to watch the show. Speaking of which, how do you know this golden nascent soul golden grass belongs to him? Lin Yi asked curiously. Not revealing one's wealth was the most basic rule in the cultivation world. No matter who obtained the golden nascent soul golden grass, they wouldn't go around announcing it to the world. Being a spoiled brat didn't mean you were stupid, unless there was something wrong with your head. That's because Bao Wuliang took it out for us to see. He even pretended to give it to Big Sister Xinyan. Even an idiot could see through his dirty thoughts. Guess what Big Sister Xinyan said in the end? Huang Xiaotao kept them in suspense. What did she say? Lin Yi's interest was immediately piqued. He looked at the blushing Wang Xinyan with a faint smile. This girl had a gentle and kind personality. He really couldn't guess how she would react to a spoiled brat like Bao Zhuiliang. Big Sister Xinyan only said 3 words at that time, but that toad Bao Wuliang was so scared that he turned around and ran away. Because she said. Huang Xiaotao kept everyone in suspense before revealing the answer, deaf nanny. Lin Yi smiled. This deaf nanny definitely couldn't hear it. He didn't expect Bao Zhuiliang to be so cowardly. However, he really had to find an opportunity to thank the deaf nanny. If it weren't for her, not only Wang Xinyan, but Huang Xiaotao would also be in trouble. The East Continent College had no lack of spoiled brats. It would be strange if they didn't come to bother the two girls. As the 3 of them spoke, there were already several people bidding. The price of the golden nascent soul golden grass quickly rose to 2,700,000 spirit jades. Chapter 4850. After all, to those cultivators who were at the peak of the advanced stage of the original level, obtaining an essence-raising dan at this time was like gaining a precious ticket to becoming a tycoon. 3 million. Lin Yi raised the price again without hesitation, and all the competitors' eyelids twitched. Compared to the others, they were all rich, but in front of Lin Yi they were all fake rich. Only he was a true tycoon. 3,050,000. An old man with snow-white hair clenched his teeth and said. Lin Yi glanced at him. This was a cultivator at the peak of the advanced stage of the original level. It seemed like he was making a last stand for himself. Though cultivators lived a long life, getting too old would make them lose their drive and it would be hard for them to make any more breakthroughs. If he couldn't break through to the Xian realm this time, he would probably never be able to do so again. Thinking about it made one sigh. However, Lin Yi would not pity an outsider who had nothing to do with him. He had to get this chi-raising golden grass today. Without blinking, he said, 3,200,000. The white-haired old man's expression froze as he looked at the calm Lin Yi. His body trembled as he tried to open his mouth, but he couldn't make a sound. He could only sit back down with a desolate look on his face. 3,500,000 was his limit. He already had to borrow money from others. He could not afford to pay more than that. Let alone the fact that there was no way he could win against the wealthy Lin Yi. Even if he managed to get his hands on the chi-raising dan, it would be useless. Finding someone to help him with the essence-raising dan would require a lot of spiritual jades. 3,300,000. Just as the white-haired old man retreated in fear, a young woman immediately took over from the other side. This was a second-generation cultivator of the academy. She was much more confident than the white-haired old man, and she was also determined to get the yuan-raising demon golden grass. Bao Zhuiliang and Su Kexing were overjoyed to see this scene. They'd released the chi-raising golden grass just for this. As long as Lin Yi and these people didn't give way to each other, they'd end up fighting each other sooner or later. They'd be enemies even if they didn't want to. But all of this was secondary. The one Su Kexing made for Lin Yi hasn't even spoken yet. Remember, that person was even more desperate for the chi-raising golden grass than Lin Yi. 3,800,000. Lin Yi looked at the woman, and the number that came out of her mouth shocked everyone. This wasn't a ready-made chi-raising pill, it was just a stalk of chi-raising golden grass. Was there a need to ask for such a high price? What could they do? Rich people were always stubborn. 3,900,000. The young woman looked at Lin Yi angrily and hesitated for a while before saying, 4,200,000. Lin Yi still had a calm expression and did not even look at her. With his wealth, he was destined to be invincible in this kind of situation where there were no big shots. Even the most powerful second-generation cultivators were like floating clouds in front of him. In the past, they were the ones smashing others to death with spirit jades. Now, it was time for them to experience what it felt like to be smashed alive with spirit jades. As expected, the young woman choked. Her face turned green and white as she glared at Lin Yi. After hesitating for a long time, she finally sat back down. Although it was not that her family could not take out so many spirit jades, with the price of the Dan of raising Dan, even if she got the Qi raising golden grass, she would definitely be scolded by the elders in her family. All of her spirit jades were provided by her family. She did not dare to squander them like Lin Yi. Looks like no one is going to compete with you now. Wang Xinyan smiled. After all, she had followed the divine nun of the Eastern Sea. Her knowledge was far greater than that of regular students. 4,200,000 spirit jades was enough to buy a ready-made Dan of raising Dan. Aside from people like Lin Yi who had too much spirit jades to spend, no one else was willing to compete with him. I don't think it will be that simple. Lin Yi shook his head. He had been paying attention to one person throughout the entire auction. It was not Bao Zuoyang who Wang Xinyan and Huang Xiaotao had mentioned, but the red-haired old man who sat boldly in the center of the hall. Lin Yi had originally thought that Qing Danzi, his cheap disciple, was strange enough. He did not think that he would run into someone even stranger today. Not only was his hair and beard fiery red, but even his face was abnormally red. This was no longer the Heaven Island version of Lord Guan Yu. He was like the Lord of the Fire God who had descended into the mortal world. Of course, Lin Yi did not pay attention to this red-haired old man purely because of his strange appearance. More importantly, this person's presence and strength were the best in the entire hall. Even if he sat there silently, he still had a strong sense of existence. This was because this was a true mountain-opening giant, and he had never held back his aura. Under normal circumstances, any mountain-opening stage tycoon should be like Ling Yuanqing and the other big shots of the academy and take the initiative to avoid arousing suspicion. After all, at their level it was very difficult for a personal auction to have anything good that could catch their eye. Moreover, as a tycoon he should have the airs of a tycoon. If he casually came out to compete with the younger generation, there would be no prestige left. But Lin Yi did not know what this red-haired old man was planning by appearing here. He had never opened his mouth before, but one thing was for sure. Since he was here, he must have an ulterior motive. Soon, the red-haired old man noticed that Lin Yi was glancing at him intentionally or unintentionally. He immediately turned his head and looked back. There was no special expression on his face, but the terrifying aura from the giant of the mountain opening period still made Lin Yi's heart jump. Lin Yi couldn't help but think to himself, was this guy really the Lord of the Fire God? Being stared at by him like that made me feel like I was about to burn up. That person is called Lu Dechang. He's not one of the higher-ups in the academy, but a guest elder that the city Lord Bofara invited with a high price. I heard that he's a mountain opening master, and his position in the city lord's manor is only slightly lower than Bofara's. He's one of the top 3 giants. Xinyan reported quietly. A mountain opening giant from the city lord's manor? Then what's he doing here? The bad feeling in Lin Yi's heart grew stronger. I don't know. Xinyan and Huang Xiaotao looked at each other and shook their heads. They had only heard of this person and only heard some rumors. They didn't know much about him. The whole place was silent. The people who coveted the yuan-raising demon golden grass were all frightened by Lin Yi. The price had already been raised to 2 million. Everyone wanted to bid, but they didn't have the strength to do so. They could only watch helplessly. At this moment, Lin Yi's bad feeling became reality. Lu Dechang suddenly spoke. 5 million. The others didn't have enough capital, but he was a mountain-opening master. This amount of spirit jade was more than enough. Chapter 48:51. 6 million. Lu Dechang seemed to be a rich man. If an opening stage giant like him couldn't compete with a junior, he would be laughed at to death. Even so, some people noticed that this guest giant's mouth twitched unnaturally. The whole place was silent. At this time no one could jump out to mess things up. The yuan-raising demon golden grass could only fall into the hands of 2 people. It was either Lin Yi or Lu Dechang. The others could only watch from afar. Not bad, not bad. Messing with Lu Dechang, this old bastard. This Lin is dead for sure. Bao Zuoyang almost laughed out loud. Although Lu Dechang was on the same side as his father, he didn't have any respect for him, the young city lord. After the quarrel with his son last time, this old bastard even wanted to teach him a lesson. Luckily Bao Farah saved him in time, or else he would have suffered greatly. Bao Zhuliang didn't like Lu Dechang, but he was an opening stage giant after all. Even his father had to bow down to him. No matter how unhappy he was, he could only pinch his nose. But now he made this old bastard deal with Lin Yi. No matter who was unlucky, he would be very happy. This was simply a stroke of genius. Since I have to borrow someone's knife to kill, I naturally have to borrow the sharpest knife. No matter how I think about it, I can't find a knife sharper than Lu Dechang in Qinxing City. Su Kexing couldn't help but be proud of himself. To deal with someone with a background like Lin Yi, ordinary opponents were not enough. Profound Ascension stage was far from enough. At the very least, they had to be opening stage giants. But opening stage giants were not so easy to use. Only a fiery giant like Lu Dechang could be used. Right? How did you determine that this old bastard would take the bait? Bao Zhuliang suddenly asked. Although the yuan-raising demon golden grass was rare and useful, to an opening stage giant like Lu Dechang, what use could it have? Young Master Bao, did you forget Lu Xiaozhong who argued with us last time? He is now at the peak of the late nascent soul stage, and has long announced that he wants to participate in the path of a magnate. As long as the news of the essence-raising devil golden grass is spread, with the old bastard's protective personality, it would be strange if he could endure it. Su Kexing said with a mischievous smile. The Lu Xiaozhong he mentioned was Lu Dechang's son. So that's how it is. No wonder you have nothing to do in front of Lu Xiaozhong 2 days ago. It turns out that you deliberately leaked information to him. It's so bad but I like it. Bao Zhuliang laughed. Young Master Bao, I didn't just leak the information to him. I also purposely emphasized Lin Yi's wealth. In short, he can't compete with Lin Yi with just the amount of spirit jades he has. Unless he gets his father to step in, and he can't do it according to the rules, hee. Su Kexing smirked as he took credit for himself. Well done, well done. Let's wait and watch the show. Bao Zhuliang was very satisfied with his right-hand man. The reason why they called Lu Dechang an old bastard was because he didn't do things according to the rules. Moreover, he was an unscrupulous person. It was impossible for him to follow the rules and admit defeat like the others. As the two were talking, Lin Yi had already completely gone against the mountain opening magnate, Lu Dechang, according to their expectations, 7 million. 5 million. Lu Dechang still didn't plan to give in, but everyone could see that he couldn't hold on any longer. For essence-raising devil golden grass to such an exaggerated price, everyone felt like they were dreaming. One had to know that even the rarest grade 7 medicinal pellet, the profound thunder pellet, was only worth this much at most. A normal essence-augmenting pellet would be sold for more than 5 million, and this was just a stock of essence-augmenting demon golden grass. At this moment, there was only one thought in everyone's mind. These two people are crazy. 8 million. Lin Yi didn't care if the opponent was a mountain opening magnate or not. Since it was an auction, whoever had more spiritual jades would be awesome. No matter how strong he was, he could only hold it in. Under everyone's gaze, Lu Dechang couldn't help but choke. It was true that he was a mountain opening magnate, but he was only a guest expert of the city lord's mansion. He wasn't a leader like the city lord. How could he have so many spiritual jades to squander? However, those who knew a little wouldn't think that he would let it go just like that. As expected, Lu Dechang's originally ferocious and powerful aura was unleashed. He stared at Lin Yi fiercely and scolded, "Motherfucker, who is so blind to oppose Grandpa Lu? Are you looking for death? I'll leave my words here today. This essence-raising devil golden grass is mine. Whoever dares to obstruct me, don't blame Grandpa Lu for turning hostile." When Lin Yi heard this, he couldn't help but curse in his heart. To be honest, competing with a mountain opening magnate was already very stressful. He didn't expect it to be such a shameless old bastard. No wonder he had a very bad premonition from the start. This time his premonition came true. Even if he was richer than the opponent didn't play by the rules and directly used force. What could he do? In front of absolute strength, all schemes were a joke. Similarly, no matter how many spiritual jades he had, it was just a joke. I heard from Master that he is as boorish as his name. He is famous for being rude and unreasonable. Also, he is only a guest of the city lord's mansion. He doesn't care about the rules. Even if he breaks the rules occasionally, City Lord Bao and Dean Ling can't do anything about it. We have to be careful. Wang Xinyan pulled on Lin Yi's sleeve and reminded him softly. Lin Yi nodded without batting an eyelid. He had a headache looking at this guest with red hair. If the other party was a mountain opening stage expert from outside, He might not dare to be so unbridled in Morningstar City's territory. However, he was a guest here and there was no way he could argue with him. But no matter what, Lin Yi wouldn't give up so easily. He immediately retorted, I can understand that you want the yuan-raising devil golden grass, but this is an auction. You have to follow the rules of the auction. If you can't afford to play, then don't play. Do you really want to destroy the fairness of the auction? When Lin Yi said this, the crowd was in an uproar. They all knew that Lin Yi's background was unfathomable, but they didn't expect him to be so daring. He dared to go against a mountain opening magnate in front of so many people? What they didn't know was that Lin Yi's courage was trained. He was able to escape from the West Mountain Old Master when he was only at the Golden Core stage. Now that he was at the late Nascent Soul stage and had all sorts of statuses protecting him, he really didn't have to be afraid of this mountain opening magnate. Chapter 48-52. Don't talk about useless stuff. I'm telling you, I don't understand a single thing you're saying. Lu Dechang didn't have the demeanor of a big shot at all. Acting shamelessly was a common occurrence, or else there wouldn't be so many people secretly calling him an old bastard. He curled his lips and said, Humph, my son needs this grass to refine pills. Just tell me if you're going to let it go or not. Everyone shook their heads, speechless. What was shamelessly? This was shamelessly right in front of you, leaving you with no way to retaliate at all. The worst part was that this old bastard was a mountain opening stage powerhouse. Other than the other mountain opening stage powerhouses, the others didn't even have the right to stand up and talk to him. His fist was the biggest here, so naturally only he had the final say. Wang Xinyan and Huang Xiaotao frowned and looked at each other. Both of them were thinking of the same thing. Should they sneak out and ask their master to come and save the day? Although the divine nun of the Eastern Sea didn't have much control over this old bastard, she was still in mountain opening stage powerhouse after all. At the very least, he wouldn't dare act shamelessly like this. His tone right now was simply infuriating. So what if I'm bullying you? Do you dare hit me, weakling? If it were anyone else, they would most likely admit defeat, but the two girls knew very well the pride in Lin Yi's bones. He definitely wouldn't lower his head so easily. It was fine if it was just a verbal fight, but if they really started fighting, he would be at a great disadvantage. Unexpectedly, under the two girls' worried gazes, Lin Yi was the one who laughed instead. He looked at Lu Dechang calmly and said, Forgive me for asking, but if you buy the yuan-raising demon golden grass, who are you going to find to refine pills with? Nonsense, of course I'm going to find Qing Danzi. Who else can I find? Lu Dechang curled his lips without hesitation. The yuan-raising pill was a 7th-rank pill after all. Regular alchemists wouldn't be able to refine it at all. The only one who could do so in Morningstar City was Qing Danzi. Well, that's my disciple. I'll go back and tell him not to accept your job. Just wait and watch. Lin Yi smiled faintly. Everyone was instantly amused. Just now, when they saw Lu Dechang making things difficult, they thought that Lin Yi was about to be unlucky. But now that they thought about it, Lin Yi's disciple was already on equal footing with Lu Dechang. It was hard to say who would have the best laugh in this conflict. Lu Dechang couldn't help but be dumbfounded. He paused for a moment before sizing up Lin Yi again. Lin Yi could be said to be a household name in Morningstar City. Even if he hadn't seen him before, he would have heard of him. He quickly asked, You're that Lin Yi? That's right. Do you still want to rob me like this? Lin Yi looked at him with a smile that didn't seem like a smile. His path to becoming a major figure was right around the corner. If he couldn't refine the yuan-raising demon golden grass into yuan-raising pills as soon as possible after buying it, its effects would definitely be greatly reduced. In particular, this visiting chamberlain had to act shamelessly in front of everyone to obtain the yuan-raising demon golden grass. He had to consider this carefully. For the first time, Lu Dechang showed an expression of hesitation and difficulty. Although he was a fool, he wasn't completely stupid. With Lin Yi's identity, even if he was a major figure in the mountain establishment stage, there was nothing he could do about it. There was a limit to acting shamelessly. It was fine if he only wanted to steal the yuan-raising demon golden grass, but if he dared to make a move against Lin Yi, not to mention the attitude of the city lord, the academy would definitely not be able to get away with it. Qing Danzi, the divine nun of the Eastern Sea, and even Ling Yuanqing would have to stand against him because of this. That would not be fun. However, he also had to get the yuan-raising demon golden grass for his son. Right now was the most critical period for Lu Xiaozhong's rise. If he missed this opportunity, it would be very difficult for him to break through to profound immortal in the future. This kind of thing could not be delayed. Lu Dechang couldn't help but be in a dilemma. He looked at the yuan-raising demon golden grass on the stage, then looked at the calm and composed Lin Yi, not knowing what to do. How about this? I don't want the yuan-raising demon golden grass anymore. I'll just give it to you. Lin Yi suddenly said. Not only was Lu Dechang dumbfounded, but everyone else was also dumbfounded. He just had the upper hand. Why did he give it away in the blink of an eye? Could it be that this Lin Yi was afraid of the old bastard's revenge? Really? Lu Dechang looked at Lin Yi suspiciously. Of course. Not only can I give you the yuan-raising demon golden grass, I can also promise to personally refine it for you. As long as you bring this yuan-raising demon golden grass to me, I'll guarantee you an energy-raising pill. Lin Yi smiled. That's great, thank you so much. Lu Dechang's expression instantly changed. If his face was too red, his change speed would be like a chameleon's. His attitude immediately changed 180 degrees. Master Lin, you really are a great person. I, little Lu, admire you so much, thank you so much. Then Master Lin, I'll come find you in a bit. He really wasn't stupid at all. Lin Yi was the legendary Absolute Dan. Finding him to refine pills was much more reliable than finding Qing Danzi. Otherwise, why would Qing Danzi be his disciple? Although this yuan-raising demon golden grass was enough for 5 sets of materials, that was only in theory. In reality, it didn't count at all. If he went to find Qing Danzi, if he was lucky, he might be able to refine 2 pills. If he was unlucky, he might not even get one. That was too risky. But Lin Yi was different. Absolute Dan meant that the yuan-raising demon golden grass was in his hands. At that time, he would definitely be able to refine 5 energy-raising pills. Although Lin Yi only gave him 1, it was enough for him. After all, his son was only 1 level away from the original soul stage. More would be useless. On one hand, he might be wasting his money, but on the other, he would definitely get one. Even an idiot would know what to choose, and Lu Dechang wasn't an idiot. Lu Dechang ran over to Lin Yi's side, trying to curry favor with him. Everyone present, including Lin Yi, was completely dumbfounded. He'd just been calling him Grandpa Lu, but the moment he said he'd refine pills for him, he turned into little Lu. Did he even have the moral integrity of a founding stage giant? Bao Zuoyang and Su Kexing hid in a corner and looked at each other, too shocked to speak for a long while. They'd meticulously planned out such a good plan, and Lin Yi had just said a few words, and he'd just ruined it all? As for Lin Yi, he couldn't help but smile at Xinyan and Huang Xiaotao. Those who could become founding stage giants really weren't easy to deal with. This Lu Dechang's IQ wasn't low at all, and his vulgarity was just an act. To put it bluntly, it was just a cover for him to take advantage of others. Chapter 48-53. Lin Yi and Lu Dechang settled the rules in front of everyone. The white-bearded elder on the stage finally heaved a sigh of relief. Even if he was the auction host invited by the academy, he was helpless against an unreasonable scoundrel like Lu Dechang. If Lu Dechang really snatched the yuan-raising demon golden grass away, it would really be a pain in the ass. Fortunately, this young man was experienced enough to settle Lu Dechang with a few simple words. The younger generation will surpass us in time. The white-bearded elder sighed in his heart as he carefully asked Lu Dechang, "Then this yuan-raising demon golden grass belongs to you?" The price just now was 8 million spirit jades. Strictly speaking, this method still put him in a difficult position. After all, if the two of them did this, then what was the point of him being the auction host? But there was no other way. This was the best solution. This was much better than Lu Dechang snatching it away. Damn it, this brat escaped this calamity. Bao Zuoyang and Su Kexing looked at each other speechlessly. The only thing that could comfort them was 8 million spirit jades. This price had already far exceeded the yuan-raising demon golden grass itself. Although they didn't manage to scam Lin Yi, they still made a huge profit, and the result was not bad. In the end, Lu Dechang's next words made their hearts tremble. This old bastard glared at them and suppressed them with the aura of a bastard. "Yes, your grandma. Master Lin backed out, so we have to bid again. What happened before doesn't count. Don't try to bluff your Grandpa Lu." This. The white-bearded elder almost spat blood on his face. He had seen many scoundrels, but this was the first time he had seen a scoundrel to this extent. How could there be such a thing in the world? What? You have an opinion? Lu Dechang glared at him with an unfriendly expression. After all, he was an opening stage giant. This aura was really not something an ordinary person could withstand. We have to first ask the seller for his opinion? The white-bearded elder hesitated for a moment before saying. Under normal circumstances, of course they couldn't do this. Otherwise, a good auction ceremony would become a big joke. But he was, after all, an auction host that was temporarily invited. He wasn't stupid enough to offend an opening stage giant for a temporary job. Grandpa Lu will kill whoever dares to refuse. Lu Dechang fearlessly threatened the entire crowd, then squinted his eyes and asked, "Stop dilly-dallying, tell me who it is." The white-bearded old man had no choice but to quickly check the list of bidders. His gaze swept across everyone's faces and finally he pointed at Bao Zhuoyang who was hiding in the corner. Holy shit. Bao Zhuoyang's face darkened when he saw the white-bearded old man throw a hot potato onto his head. After being betrayed by the white-bearded old man, he instantly became the focus of everyone present. Now, everyone knew that he was the master of the yuan-nourishing demon golden grass. Damn it, if I had known earlier, I would have posted it anonymously. At this moment, Bao Zhuoyang felt as if 10,000 alpacas were galloping through his heart. Great, not only did he fail to trick Lin Yi, but he was also going to lose his life. Oh, so it's you. The corner of Lu Dechang's mouth curled up, harboring malicious intentions. Last time, his son had suffered a setback at the hands of this brat, and he had even caused a huge ruckus because of this. Who would have thought that they would meet again today? Senior Lu. Bao Zhuoyang could only bite the bullet and squeeze out an incomparably ugly smile. Since we're acquaintances, then it's easy to talk. Brat Bao, tell me what you want. Do you want Grandpa Lu to feel your pulse? Lu Dechang stared at Bao Zhuoyang and sneered. Although Bao Zhuoyang was the son of his immediate superior, he didn't care about this kind of bullshit relationship. Bao Fala had only invited him to be a guest elder because of his strength, not because of a favor. Moreover, there was no such thing as a friendship between them. Instead, there was a slight grudge because of his son. This. Bao Zhuoyang's scalp went numb under his stare, and his smile was even uglier than a cry. If he really let this old bastard feel his pulse, then his pulse would definitely be broken by him. This old bastard definitely didn't have any demeanor of a big shot, and he was very ruthless. Say it, stop dilly-dallying. Are you willing or not? Lu Dechang urged with a displeased expression. When Lin Yi heard this, he almost burst out laughing. If this was in the secular world, he would think that this was a wedding. Unfortunately, the people in front of him were not a man and a woman who were about to enter the marriage hall, but a red-haired old man and a hedonistic young master. Bao Zhuoyang shrunk his head and didn't know how to answer for a moment. He turned to look at Su Kexing for help, but how would a small character like Su Kexing dare to stand out against Lu Dechang? If it was his old man Bao Fala, then it might be possible, but at this moment, there were only the two of them and Lu Dechang would definitely eat them up. Fine. In the end, Bao Zhuoyang could only grit his teeth and nod. Lu Dechang had just said that he would kill anyone who didn't agree, so how would he dare to say no? Did you hear that? Hurry up and start again. Lu Dechang urged the white-bearded old man and didn't forget to add in the end, I'll kill anyone who dares to fight with me. Let's see who dares to go against Grandpa Lu. The faces of everyone present all darkened, and they looked at each other. Was this still a fucking auction? This was daylight robbery. Originally, when Lin Yi took the initiative to withdraw from the competition, the others still had some thoughts of going all out, but Lu Dechang's words immediately made them shrink back. Even someone with a background like Bao Zhuoyang could only obediently take a loss, and their background was not as deep as this young Master Bao's. 1 million, this grass is mine, Lu Dechang said casually. The white-bearded old man looked around the crowd, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. After waiting for a long time, no one dared to bid and finally he could only settle this farce and say, 1 million deal. Lu Dechang laughed proudly, but Bao Zhuoyang wanted to cry, but no tears came out. What did it mean to go for wool and come home shorn? What did it mean to lose one's wife and one's soldiers? This was a fucking living portrayal of his current situation. Hee, such a good stock of yuan-raising demon golden grass was auctioned off at the base price. This time he really suffered a big loss. Lin Yi smiled and glanced at the aggrieved Bao Zhuoyang. Yuan-raising demon golden grass was a type of natural treasure, and the rarer it was, the more expensive it was. Normally there was no clear price and it could only be seen in large-scale auctions. Every time the price depended on how many people fought for it, but no matter what, 1 million spirit jade was definitely a loss. In the past, even if the price wasn't raised to 8 million spirit jade, it definitely wouldn't be lower than 2 or 3 million spirit jade. Just like Bao Zhuoyang this time, he was forced to close the deal at the base price, and it was basically half sold and half given away. Chapter 48-54. Oh. Lin Yi couldn't help but feel a little surprised. Although Bao Wuliang was a second-generation cultivator, he didn't take it to heart. After all, with Wang Xinyan's beauty, it would be strange if no one pursued her. Even if Bao Wuliang didn't exist, there would be Zhu Wuliang and Ma Wuliang. Sister Xinyan is right. This Bao Wuliang is not a good person. He often harasses the female students in the academy. I heard that one of them was forced into a corner by him and committed suicide. It's just that his father's background is too powerful, so no one dares to speak up. Huang Xiaotao was also filled with righteous indignation. There's such a thing? No wonder you guys call him Bao Wuliang. You're right. He deserves it. Lin Yi frowned. If it was just a normal spoiled brat, he wouldn't care. However, he couldn't just ignore a scumbag who had no regard for human life, especially one who had designs on Wang Xinyan. However, this was Morning Star City, and Bao Wuliang was the son of City Lord Bao Farah. Even if Lin Yi wanted to take care of him, it wouldn't be easy. He needed the right opportunity. Actually, I feel that there's something fishy about today's incident. Bao Wuliang doesn't lack spiritual jades. Even if he doesn't need such a rare treasure like the yuan-raising demon golden grass, he wouldn't just take it out to auction it, right? Wang Xinyan said thoughtfully. Yes, he even tried to use it to trick Sister Xinyan into becoming his cultivation partner. Although he was chased away on the spot, he wouldn't sell it just like that, right? Huang Xiaotao shook her head. This thing was a fatal temptation to any original soul stage cultivator. With Bao Wuliang's womanizing personality, even if he lost to Wang Xinyan, he would definitely use it on other female students. How could he be willing to auction it? Was it really for the spiritual jades? The son of the city lord of Morning Star City would actually sell such a treasure for some spiritual jades? Was that even possible? Hearing this, Lin Yi also came to a realization. When he thought about how this guy seemed to be staring at him throughout the entire auction, he suddenly felt that things weren't as simple as they seemed. It would be understandable if he was staring at Wang Xinyan, but if he was staring at him, this was a big problem. Could it be that this fellow was coming for him? The thought flashed through Lin Yi's mind. They didn't know each other, but it wasn't impossible for them to be enemies because of Wang Xinyan. Especially with the sudden appearance of Lu Dechang, a mountain opening stage powerhouse, it wouldn't make sense to say that there wasn't something going on behind the scenes. Looks like I really have to pay more attention to this guy in the future. Lin Yi gave Bao Wuliang a meaningful look. Although it was just a speculation, the more he thought about it, the more likely it seemed. Moreover, his intuition had always been very accurate. After Lu Dechang's farce, the rest of the auction was much calmer than before. Even if the other bidders didn't lose interest in the least, the absence of Lin Yi's participation and Lu Dechang's absence made it hard for the crowd to keep their spirits up. And Lin Yi didn't bid anymore. It wasn't that there weren't any good things, but they were all treasures and tools that were suitable for original soul stage cultivators. Lin Yi didn't really care about them. To him, if he really wanted to get some support tools, it had to be something that could at least deal with mysterious ascending stage cultivators. He didn't even need to look at the others. So from the beginning to the end, Lin Yi only flapped a pair of ghost-eyed eagle king wings. After that, other than the disturbance caused by the yuan-raising demon golden grass, he just stood there and watched. Wang Xinyan and Huang Xiaotao were even more straightforward than him. They just stood there and watched the show. This was actually very normal. All their cultivation resources were personally prepared by the divine nun of the Eastern Sea. They didn't need to worry about it at all. Also, the divine nun of the Eastern Sea emphasized on cultivating the mind and self-improvement. Therefore, other than the necessary support tools for breakthroughs, they rarely relied on external items. After the auction ended, Lin Yi didn't go to the Hong Chamber of Commerce. Instead, he accompanied Wang Xinyan and Huang Xiaotao back to the Morning Star Academy. He was now living in the East Sea Pavilion, and this was personally requested by the divine nun of the Eastern Sea. Of course, he couldn't ask for more. However, before they could walk out of the first floor of the Morning Star Academy, Lu Dechang had already caught up with them. He couldn't wait to hand over the yuan-raising demon golden grass to Lin Yi. After that, he complimented Lin Yi again and again. Only then did he leave with a satisfied smile. This guy is so unreasonable and shameless. He's clearly an opening stage powerhouse, but his every move has the temperament and slyness of a nobody. He's quite an interesting person. Lin Yi couldn't help but smile as he looked at Lu Dechang's back. Wang Xinyan and Huang Xiaotao covered their mouths and laughed. Only Lin Yi could deal with this kind of shameless powerhouse with a few words. If it were anyone else, it would be a headache. Bao Wuliang was a living example. The three of them returned to the East Sea Pavilion. After dinner, the two girls followed the godly nun of the East Sea to their evening classes. 2 classes in the morning and 1 in the evening were common practice. Lin Yi also returned to his room, but he didn't cultivate. Instead, he took out the ghost-eyed eagle king's wings that he'd bought during the day. "Senior, why did you ask me to buy this thing?" Lin Yi thought for a long time, but he still couldn't figure it out. He could only ask the ghost-eyed thing for advice. Hee, aren't your eyes pretty good? Even you can't figure it out? The ghost-eyed thing kept Lin Yi in suspense. I really can't figure it out. It's useless for refining pills and it's not even good for forging weapons. It looks like it can only be used as an exhibition item. Lin Yi shook his head. Exhibition item? Hee, the ghost-eyed eagle king is a super-enhanced version of the ghost-eyed golden eagle. Even the ghost-eyed golden eagle has a body full of treasures. Do you really think the wings of the ghost-eyed eagle king are useless as an exhibition item? I can only give you 4 words. You're really blind. The ghost-eyed thing didn't hold back at all. That's 4 words. Lin Yi was speechless. Kid, do you know what kind of existence the ghost-eyed eagle king is? The ghost-eyed thing asked. Could it be the king of the ghost-eyed golden eagles? Lin Yi guessed based on the name. After all, the ghost-eyed thing had just said that it was a super-enhanced version of the ghost-eyed golden eagle. Wrong. The ghost-eyed eagle king isn't just the king of the ghost-eyed golden eagles. It's the king of all eagles. Eagles have always been the king of birds, so it's not an exaggeration to call it the king of flying spiritual beasts. The ghost-eyed thing explained. So fierce? Then what's the vermilion bird? Lin Yi couldn't help but be surprised. He always thought that if there was a king of flying spiritual beasts, the vermilion bird would definitely be the winner. Chapter 48:55. There's such a thing? Lin Yi curled his lips in surprise. Throughout the history of the flying spirit beasts, only the ghost-eyed eagle king is worthy of being the royal family. However, because of the birth of the king of the spirit beasts, the ghost-eyed eagle king didn't choose to surrender immediately, so it suffered a disaster. Although it wasn't completely exterminated in the end, the stronger ghost-eyed eagle kings were all killed and injured. Only the old and the sick were left. The ghostly thing's tone was a bit sad. What about now? Lin Yi couldn't help but ask. Now, the ghost-eyed eagle king clan has completely declined. There aren't many pure-blooded ghost-eyed eagle kings left in the entire spiritual beast clan. The ghost-eyed eagle kings that can be seen now are mostly hybrids between the old, weak, sick and some ghost-eyed golden eagles. Their strength can't be mentioned in the same breath as the original ghost-eyed eagle kings that could dominate an area. The ghost creature curled its lips. If that's the case, then wouldn't the value of the ghost-eyed eagle king's wings drop a lot? Lin Yi couldn't help but feel that it was a pity. Nonsense. If it's a pure-blooded adult ghost-eyed eagle king, its strength would be at least at the earth-opening stage. It might even be stronger. It could even compete for the position of the 4 great elders. Who do you think can get their wings? The ghostly thing was immediately amused by Lin Yi's wild imagination. That strong? Lin Yi couldn't help but be stunned. If it really was an existence of that level, this pair of wings might not even be bought with 30 million spirit jades, let alone 300,000 spirit jades. But these impure ones are much weaker. No matter what, they are still one of the few royal families in the spirit beast clan. At least they used to be royal families and their numbers are extremely small. To be able to pick this up in this kind of auction, your luck is really indescribable. The ghostly thing couldn't help but sigh. That's because everyone doesn't know. Senior, quickly tell me what is the use of these wings? Lin Yi asked impatiently. The introduction just now had completely aroused his curiosity. Since the ghost-eyed eagle king had such a great background, he could really look forward to its use. According to the rules of the spirit beasts, I can't tell a human like you about this, the ghostly thing replied after a brief silence. Why? Lin Yi was stunned. The reason is very simple. There are only a few royal families in the spiritual beast clan. Although they are not like the spiritual beast king who commands all the other spiritual beasts, they still rule over a region. In the words of you humans, they are kings with different surnames. In order to protect them, any information that might harm them is top secret, especially this kind of information that involves their lives. Once the news gets out, I reckon that you human cultivators will start hunting the ghost-eyed eagle king wantonly, the ghostly thing said solemnly. That's true. Lin Yi deeply agreed with this. Currently, no one knew what the ghost-eyed eagle king's wings were used for. They thought that they could only be used as decorations, so they could not be bothered to specifically hunt and kill them. At most, they would accidentally kill a few. However, once they knew that this thing was very useful, the situation would be very different. Not to mention that the ghost-eyed eagle king had long since declined. Even when they were at their peak, they could only accept death when faced with endless human experts. Unless they escaped to their base camp in the South Continent and never came out, they would be exterminated at any time. These royal families are the backbone of the various branches of the spiritual beast clan. If something happens to them, the spiritual beast clan will definitely suffer a great loss, so this is top secret. The ghostly thing paused, then suddenly changed its tone and said, however, the ghost-eyed eagle king is at most a fake royal family. Now that all the flying spiritual beasts follow the vermilion bird, it doesn't matter if they are exterminated or not. Who knows, the vermilion bird might even be happy. Linny was speechless when he heard this. After the ghostly thing had said so much, he thought that it would be very principled to keep the secret. It turned out that in the end, it was still prepared to sell the ghost-eyed eagle king's clan. Its moral integrity was shattered to the ground. We advance and retreat together. You can't be considered an outsider, so there's no harm in telling you this as long as you don't spread it around. Otherwise it will make it seem like I sold the ghost-eyed eagle king. Who knows, I might feel guilty. The ghostly thing continued. If you really felt guilty, you wouldn't have said so much. Linny did not know whether to laugh or cry. He could only say, my mouth has always been very tight. It's not like you don't know, senior. Just say it quickly. Do you want to be a birdman? The ghostly thing did not answer and asked instead. Birdman? What do you mean? Linny was stunned again. He looked at the ghost-eyed eagle king's wings in his hand before he reacted. Senior, you can't be thinking of making me carry this thing on my back, right? That style is too flashy, but can it fly? Thinking of this, Lin Yi's heart was burning. Flying was definitely the dream of all humans, and it was a fantasy that was difficult to reach. Even with Lin Yi's powerful strength in the late nascent soul stage, it could only be a dream. At most, he could use the true energy jet to glide a certain distance. That was not called flying at all, it was simply throwing himself out, nothing more. Of course not. The ghostly thing's answer made Lin Yi's heart cold, but then his eyes lit up. But it can increase your speed by a lot. Really? Lin Yi's spirit was lifted. Ever since he developed the Super Butterfly Microstep and the Super Extreme Butterfly Microstep, he was very satisfied with his speed. But last time he was chased by the Shishan Powerhouse, which suddenly made him feel a sense of crisis. The Shishan Powerhouse was just a mysterious ascension late stage and he already couldn't get rid of him. If he encountered a powerhouse of the mountain opening stage like the Shishan Old Master, wouldn't he still be crushed to death in minutes? What was the difference from the original? Lin Yi's speed was already fast. If he could be faster, he might even be able to survive under the hands of the powerhouses of the mountain opening stage. That was really a heaven-defying speed. Lin Yi couldn't wait to put on the ghost-eyed eagle king's wings, but when he carried them on his back, there was no effect at all. Instead, his speed was slowed down a lot because of the increased resistance. Wasn't this a trap? The ghostly thing watched with interest for a long time until Lin Yi found out that something was wrong. Finally, it said faintly, "Who told you that this thing is useful to carry on your back? If it was so simple, then wouldn't it be a fart secret if everyone knew about it?" Lin Yi suddenly blushed. Chapter 4856. Ghostly Speed Wings? Isn't that a divine tool for escaping? Lin Yi's eyes lit up. That's right. I was only able to preserve my life because you ran fast. Last time, a mere West Mountain powerhouse was able to put you in such a difficult position. You're simply too weak. The ghostly thing's tone had already become that of a native of the secular world. All right. Lin Yi sweated and hurriedly asked, then how do I refine the ghostly speed wings? The ghost-eyed condor king wing is the main ingredient. The other 6 supplementary ingredients are not easy to find, but with your resources, it shouldn't be too difficult. Only the ghost-eyed cicada wing will require some luck, the ghostly thing said after some thought. Ghostly cicada wing? Lin Yi was slightly stunned. He had heard the King of Rags mention it when he was chatting with him in the past. He could not help but ask, is it the so-called lightest and thinnest invisible cicada wing in the world? That's right. This is the second most important material for the ghostly speed wings. If you can't fuse with its properties, the ghost-eyed eagle king wing will only be a burden. It'll be wishful thinking to increase your speed, the ghostly thing confirmed. Lin Yi nodded repeatedly and silently committed the 6 materials to memory. He stowed away the ghost-eyed eagle king's wings and began to cultivate. Only when the sun rose did he emerge from his room. As usual, he ate breakfast with the divine nun of the East Sea and the 2 girls before returning to the Hong Merchants Association alone. Vice Chairman, you're back. Honest Chai and Chui Mingshan came to welcome him from afar. After experiencing this revival, the 2 of them were already full of admiration for Lin Yi. They were just short of making him an immortal tablet and worshipping him every day. How is it? How's business these 2 days? Lin Yi asked with a smile. The answer was obvious. The auction was not over yet, and there were still a series of activities to follow. Under such circumstances, the Hong Merchant Association was almost bursting with people. It was even more crowded than the first pavilion of Morningstar City. After experiencing this revival, the Hong Merchant Association had undoubtedly become the #1 merchant association in the hearts of the citizens of Morningstar City. Naturally, business was booming. It's so good that it's hard to imagine. Yesterday's turnover was at least equivalent to the past 5 days. Moreover, the academy also sent in a large batch of orders. Old Shui and I will be very busy from now on. Honest Chai chuckled. That's a good thing. You two go ahead and do what you need to do. Don't worry about me. Lin Yi nodded his head and took out 2 sheets of paper and passed it to Honest Chai. Find an assistant to take a look, and try to gather as many ingredients as possible for me. Of these 2 lists, one was the supplementary materials for refining the vitality cultivating pill, and the other was the 6 materials for the ghostly speed wings that the ghostly thing had told him last night. All right. Honest Chai took the list and looked through it. He didn't let his assistant do it, but personally went to gather the ingredients for Lin Yi. He only had what he had today because of Lin Yi, so serving Lin Yi was his #1 priority. Everything else had to be pushed aside. About half an incense's time later, Honest Chai returned with 2 assistants, each carrying a box. Vice President, the other ingredients have been prepared, except for the ghost cicada wings. Should I go out and ask around? Honest Chai asked carefully. There's no rush. Go do what you need to do and help me keep an eye on it if there's a chance in the future. Lin Yi shook his head. This was within his expectations. The ghostly thing had said that the ghost cicada wings weren't easy to find, and Mo Wuji wasn't in a hurry to refine the ghostly speed wings. After all, he could only ask the king of Jianghu for help when he returned to the northern island. He didn't have much confidence in his smithing skills. Oh, that's good. Honest Chai nodded his head. He was currently extremely busy, and if he were to go around asking around for Lin Yi's matter, even if he was willing, he would definitely suffer a great loss. Lin Yi took the box from the assistant's hands and inspected the ingredients. Honest Chai had indeed put in a lot of effort. These were all high-quality ingredients. Even if they weren't the main ingredients, if the supplementary ingredients were too inferior, it would affect both alchemy and smithing and vice versa. Honest Chai had already turned around and walked out of the room, but after a while he suddenly turned back and patted his head with a sheepish smile. Vice President, look at my bad memory. I've been so busy that I almost forgot about such an important matter. What is it? Lin Yi was astonished. It's about the letter you wrote to the northern island. I received a reply today. Honest Chai said as he took out a big sealed envelope. The inside was bulging, and judging from the bulging shape, other than the letter, there should be something else stuffed inside. So fast? Lin Yi was pleasantly surprised. Even if he borrowed the transportation company's specialized flying spirit beasts, he thought it would take at least 10 days to half a month to reach the northern island. He didn't expect it to be so fast. Only a few days had passed? Actually, this is very normal. The transportation company's tamed flying spirit beasts are existences with extreme speed. They are several times faster than ordinary flying spirit beasts. Furthermore, I've specially marked it as urgent, so this speed is within my expectations. Honest Chai smiled. Another reason was that they were able to get a reply so quickly. In addition to the high efficiency of the transportation company, Han Jingjing replied on the spot after receiving the letter. Otherwise, if she had delayed the reply for a few days, it would have been useless no matter how efficient the transportation company was. After Lin Yi received the envelope, Honest Chai immediately retreated out of the room and closed the door behind him. Lin Yi excitedly opened the envelope. Inside was a small stack of paper, and there was actually something similar to a wireless camera and a probe. However, the components were much more complicated than usual. Suppressing the doubts in his heart, Lin Yi unfolded the letter and discovered that it wasn't only Han Jingjing's reply, but also Shanghai Laner's. He couldn't help but smile. Shengguan Laner was purely here to join in the fun. Although she had written a lot of nonsense, in fact, none of it was important. Moreover, this girl's train of thought was the kind that broke through the sky. She was talking bad about her grandfather in one sentence, and in the next sentence she was comparing her chest size with Han Jingjing. Fortunately, she was not born in the secular world. Otherwise, with her writing level, she would definitely get a 0. In contrast, Han Jingjing's reply was much more organized. First, she talked about her encounter after arriving at the northern island. Because of Shanghai Laner's existence, she naturally wouldn't encounter any trouble. Moreover, she moved into Hualan residence, so Lin Yi didn't have to worry about her being harassed. Chapter 48-57. After introducing the new life in the North Island, Han Jingjing began to answer Lin Yi's question, but she did not answer it directly. In fact, as Lin Yi expected, she could not answer it directly at all. It was difficult for others to answer Qing Danzi's question except for the legendary profound stage alchemist. However, Han Jingjing was indeed a genius in science. Although she couldn't give a direct answer, she came up with a unique solution. It was the set of wireless cameras and probes that had been sent over. Its full name was Alchemy Artifact Peripherals. In fact, it was a coincidence for Lin Yi. Since the last time she upgraded Lin Yi's magical pesticide cauldron, Han Jingjing had the idea of making an auxiliary peripheral, but at that time she had been with Lin Yi and had no time. After arriving at the North Island, she took the time to make it, and this time it came in handy. Although this alchemy artifact peripherals looked very delicate and complicated, it was actually very simple to use. It could be connected to the tablet computer on the magical pesticide cauldron through Bluetooth, and then a series of idiot-like operations followed. After installing its attached program, it only needed to install the probe on the corresponding alchemy furnace. This alchemy furnace could be either the magical pesticide cauldron or other alchemy furnaces. Then this group of alchemy artifact peripherals could transmit all the alchemy information it monitored to the tablet computer. Through its own program, it could conduct an all-round analysis so that it could know the defects and causes of failure in the alchemy process. The whole principle was very simple. It was to monitor and analyze so that it could better assist alchemy. Han Jingjing downplayed the design process in the letter, but Lin Yi was shocked by her again. This was a small matter for Han Jingjing, but for others, it was simply a dream. Of course, in addition to Han Jingjing's genius, being able to make this alchemy artifact peripheral was also largely due to the existence of the Central Chamber of Commerce. Otherwise, if she couldn't get these sophisticated electronic components, no matter how awesome Han Jingjing's idea was, it would be useless. After reading the letter, Lin Yi couldn't help but be overjoyed. After all, Qing Danzi had been delaying for several days without any response. If he continued to delay like this, not to mention whether or not Qing Danzi would have any objections, Lin Yi wouldn't be able to live with himself. In any case, Qing Danzi had already become his apprentice. Although the situation was special, he couldn't lead him astray. After exiting the Hong Chamber of Commerce, Lin Yi immediately went straight to the Morning Star Academy's Qingdan Pavilion. As expected, Qing Danzi had long been waiting there with his head raised in anticipation. Because he had just entered the academy, he did not dare to rush Lin Yi. Otherwise he would have rushed over to ask all sorts of questions. Seeing Lin Yi appear, Qing Danzi was suddenly overjoyed. He didn't even bother to put on his shoes and greeted him with a pair of big bare feet. His attitude was respectful as a disciple. Disciple Qing Danzi pays respect to master. To be honest, facing Qing Danzi, Lin Yi still felt a little unreal. He suddenly accepted a 7th grade alchemy master as his apprentice. Who would believe this? However, Qing Danzi was now kneeling respectfully in front of him. No matter how unreal it was still a fact. Lin Yi said directly, "Take me to the alchemy room, let me see how you do alchemy." Yes. Qing Danzi's eyes suddenly lit up, and he quickly led the way to the alchemy room. Generally speaking, when an alchemy master was refining alchemy, they would rarely allow outsiders to be present. Firstly, they were afraid of being disturbed and affected, and secondly, they needed to keep it a secret. However, Qing Danzi obviously did not have this idea in front of Lin Yi. He was eager for Lin Yi to find out what was wrong with him. Speaking of which, this was the first time that Lin Yi had observed a 7th grade alchemy master refining alchemy at such a close distance. Before he helped Qing Danzi find out the problem, the one who really benefited was his cheap master. This kind of close observation was of great benefit to him. Even if he had the divine armament cauldron, enhancing his own alchemy ability was not a bad thing. Before Qing Danzi officially began, Lin Yi stepped forward and inserted the probe into his alchemy furnace. Qing Danzi was confused. As the Academy's chief alchemist, he had never seen such a thing before. However, since Lin Yi didn't say anything, he didn't dare to say anything. After all, every high-grade alchemist had their own unique tricks. In his eyes, Lin Yi's action could be described as unfathomable. He thought that it was a special method of a mysterious great alchemist, but he didn't understand it. When everything was ready, Qing Danzi suddenly froze. After a long time, he scratched his head and said weakly, "Master, what kind of pill are we going to refine?" "Any pill is fine as long as it's a 7th grade alchemy master. It's fine as long as it's a 7th grade alchemy master." Lin Yi said indifferently. "Oh, then this disciple will refine a 7th grade Great Recover pill." Qing Danzi immediately took out the corresponding materials from the spirit medicine storage next to him and began to refine the pill in front of Lin Yi. The whole process was very calm, from beginning to end it was very smooth, giving people the feeling that he was completely at ease. It could be seen that the Academy's chief alchemist was not called for nothing. Qing Danzi really had the strength and confidence to do so. However, at the last moment, when the furnace was about to be opened, a low muffled sound suddenly came from the alchemy furnace. Qing Danzi's face changed. When he opened the alchemy furnace, it was already charred black. This time the alchemy was a complete failure. Was it always like this before? Lin Yi asked with a frown. Not really. This situation will happen 3 or 4 times out of 10, and the rest of the time is very normal. This disciple can't figure it out no matter how hard he tries. Master, what did you see? Qing Danzi said with a bitter face. If it was a failure every time, then it would be fine. After exploring for a long time, he would eventually be able to find something. But this time it just didn't work. This was because 6 or 7 out of 10 times would be successful, which meant that there was no problem with the alchemy technique he had mastered. Otherwise, it would be impossible for him to have such a success rate. But what about the remaining 3 or 4 times? If everyone had this problem, then it would be fine. At least it could be understood as a natural and unavoidable mistake in alchemy. But Lin Yi's absolute success rate was right in front of them. If they continued to think that way, then it would be purely deceiving themselves. I still need to think about this carefully. I'll tell you later. Lin Yi put away the wireless probe and was sent out by Qing Danzi respectfully. However, he didn't go to the Hong Chamber of Commerce. Instead, he went to the nearby Donghai Pavilion. At this time, Wang Xinyan and Huang Xiaotao were still doing their morning classes. Lin Yi went straight to his room and turned on the tablet on top of the pesticide cauldron. Qing Danzi's alchemy curve and various real-time parameters quickly appeared in front of him. Chapter 48-58. By the way, if there's a comparison, it should be more intuitive. Lin Yi patted his head. It just so happened that he also wanted to refine the vitality enhancement pill, and all the materials were ready, so he did not hesitate to start refining the pill. After the last upgrade, the sacred pesticide cauldron could refine a 7th grade elixir, especially this vitality enhancement pill, which was not difficult to refine among the 7th grade elixirs. 2 hours later, the vitality enhancement pill was fresh out of the cauldron. Lin Yi thought that it would be good if he could refine 5. After all, the Yuan Cultivation Demon Golden Grass was estimated to be enough for 5 portions, and this was his first time refining the vitality enhancement pill. However, the final result almost shocked Lin Yi. There were 10 more vitality enhancement pills in the sacred pesticide cauldron, a total of 10, and all of them were of high quality. This wasn't just a 100% success rate, it was a 100% success rate. Fortunately, it was only Lin Yi alone. If Qing Danzi, his disciple, had seen it, his eyes would have probably fallen to the ground, and his worldview and outlook on life would have been completely subverted. However, Lin Yi had long been accustomed to this kind of surprise. After being stunned for a moment, he quickly calmed down. Because of the existence of the sacred pesticide cauldron, plus the Yuan Cultivation Demon Golden Grass and a number of auxiliary materials of high quality plus good luck, although the overproduction was unexpected, in fact it was still reasonable. After putting away the 10 vitality enhancement pills, Lin Yi quickly returned his attention to the tablet computer. This surprise was not enough to make him forget about Qing Danzi. After getting the monitoring and analysis results of his refining of the vitality enhancement pill and comparing them with Qing Danzi, Lin Yi could not help but frown again. Although it came from the same software, the 2 curves and parameters were completely different, and there was no similarity at all. Is it because of the different elixirs? One is the recover pill, and the other is the vitality enhancement pill. The refining process of the 2 is very different. It is a little difficult to find the source of the problem through this comparison. Lin Yi pondered for a moment and immediately stopped thinking about it. If he wanted a more intuitive and reliable comparison, he could refine a recover pill himself. When the analysis results of Lin Yi's refining recover pill came out, and compared with the analysis results of Qing Danzi, it was really clear at a glance. Both were concocting the 7th rank Great Restore pill, and the curves between the 2 were almost the same. This was expected, but there were still many differences. The most obvious one was the curve of concocting the pill. One was smooth and flawless and could be called perfect, while the other was full of ups and downs. But that in and of itself didn't explain the problem. Lin Yi had the armament cauldron, and other than the qi transfer, everything else was controlled by a computer. Naturally, the process was perfect. On the other hand, Qing Danzi had to control it all by himself. No matter how experienced he was, he couldn't control it as perfectly as a computer. It wasn't something that could be forced. Qing Danzi always fails in pill concoction. Could this be the reason? Lin Yi pinched his chin but then overturned his own thoughts. It shouldn't be, although many of the 7th grade alchemists have problems with Qing Danzi, but not all of them are like this. If this is the reason, then it has become the limit that all alchemists can't overcome. Indeed, the human brain was not a computer after all. A computer could almost perfectly control the refining curve, but those alchemists who rely purely on experience could not do it, even the legendary mysterious rank alchemists. Lin Yi stared at the 2 alchemy curves and various parameters, and after half an hour he finally saw something. In addition to the difference in smoothness of the 2 curves, there was actually a subtle difference. If it was not very careful, even Lin Yi would not be able to notice it at once. The difference was that Lin Yi's refinement curve was smooth from start to finish, with no gaps in between. Qing Danzi's refinement, on the other hand, was different. It looked like a continuous curve at first glance, but if you looked at it 10 times more, you'd see that there would be a gap in between every few changes in the heat. The gap was extremely small, so small that it could be ignored, but they did exist, especially before every change in the fire temperature without exception. It wasn't hard to understand actually. Qing Danzi didn't have the cauldron like Lin Yi did, and he had to control everything with his own hands during the process. Every change in the heat involved a series of adjustments, and one wrong step would lead to a series of mistakes. That was why there was a pause in the process. Based on this speculation, Lin Yi compared their respective alchemy parameters, and sure enough, every parameter difference between himself and Qing Danzi appeared after these pauses. Sometimes floating up, sometimes floating down. The range was subtle, but it did exist. Strictly speaking, this difference in itself did not necessarily lead to the failure of alchemy, because these parameters were very likely to offset each other after fluctuating up and down, so in the end there was still a great chance of success. But if luck was bad, these subtle differences did not offset each other but continued to superimpose up or down. To a certain extent, it would really be offline. There was no doubt that this was the root of Qing Danzi's problem. He had mastered enough alchemy skills, but because of this small habit, the final result of the alchemy was left to luck. As long as his luck was not too bad, there would be no problem, but once his luck was bad, all his efforts would be in vain. Lin Yi immediately went to Qing Dan Pavilion, and directly said to Qing Danzi, "I probably know what your problem is." "Really? Master, tell me quickly." Qing Danzi was suddenly surprised and happy. "I noticed that when you were alchemy, you had a not very good little habit which you may not even have noticed yourself. That is, every time before controlling the fire temperature, you would unconsciously pause to accumulate power. If you can overcome this habit, the whole alchemy process will become more complete and coherent. I believe that whether or not the alchemy will not depend on luck," Lin Yi suggested. "Little habit? Pause to accumulate power?" When Qing Danzi heard this, he could not help but frown and fall into deep thought. Indeed, as Lin Yi said, even he himself did not notice this, because this little habit had gradually developed since he began learning alchemy at the age of 10, almost becoming a natural instinct. He himself was not aware of it at all. "Yes, you should refine the recover pill again. Pay attention to it," Lin Yi said. Chapter 48-59. His talent in alchemy was far above the average alchemist. As long as Lin Yi gave him a few pointers, he would immediately be enlightened. In Qing Danzi's heart, Lin Yi was already a mystic-level alchemist that could definitely form a complete pill. Now that he had given him a few pointers, his respect for him grew even more. Lin Yi only watched him refine pills once and he was able to hit the nail on the head. Where else could he find such a brilliant master? Qing Danzi was ecstatic to finally discover his problem. Although this habit was hard to change, as long as he could find the root of the problem, he would be able to find a solution. After thanking Lin Yi again and again, Qing Danzi immediately went into closed-door cultivation. Looking at his crazed expression, it seemed like he would not come out until this problem was solved. Coming out from Qing Dan House, Lin Yi went to the Hong merchant house and asked Honest Chai to find someone to inform Lu Dechang to come and collect the essence cultivating pill. This scoundrel was indeed very concerned about his son's matter, appearing in front of Lin Yi in just half an incense's time. Receiving the essence cultivating pill from Lin Yi's hands, Lu Dechang was instantly overjoyed and said gratefully, "Master Lin's absolute pill is indeed worthy of your reputation. I, little Lu, am really grateful to you." "Don't mention it, Senior Lu is too courteous. Since I received your yuan-raising demon golden grass, I naturally have to give you the essence cultivating pill. It's fair and reasonable." Lin Yi shook his head with a faint smile. I, little Lu, know the rules. A mere yuan-raising demon golden grass can be exchanged for a ready-made essence cultivating pill, and it's even of high quality. I'm definitely taking advantage of you." Lu Dechang did not put on any airs in front of Lin Yi. This kind of opening realm alchemist was truly a rare prodigy. Same to you. Lin Yi's advantage was much greater than his opponent's. Lu Dechang only got one essence cultivating pill, while he had 9 left. Alright, Master Lin, are you preparing to become an alchemist? Lu Dechang suddenly asked. Yes, that's what I plan to do. Lin Yi was slightly stunned and nodded. There was nothing to deny about this. After all, anyone could guess it. That's great. Lu also wants to go on the path of a giant. When the time comes, I'll have to trouble Master Lin to take care of me. Lu Dechang said with a smile. Little Lu? Lin Yi was stunned again. Yes, Little Lu's son, isn't he Little Lu? Lu Dechang nodded repeatedly. Lin Yi was speechless for a while. The thought process of this scoundrel giant was really not something an ordinary person could understand. Seeing the other's face full of anticipation, he could only nod and say, if there's a chance, I will. Haha, thank you so much. Lu Dechang was once again deeply grateful. A dignified mountain opening stage powerhouse was actually flattering a late nascent soul stage powerhouse. In this world, perhaps only he would do such a thing. What made people speechless was that this fellow still acted as if it was a matter of course. He didn't seem forced at all. After sending Lu Dechang, this scoundrel giant, away, Lin Yi returned to the East Sea Pavilion of the Morning Star Academy. At this time, Wang Xinyan and Huang Xiaotao were looking for him everywhere. Where did you go? The 2 girls saw Lin Yi and immediately greeted him happily. I went to the Hong Chamber of Commerce to help Qing Danzi solve a small problem. Lin Yi smiled and said, Oh right, where are we going to play today? Huang Xiaotao asked. Apart from the morning and evening classes, the 3 of them would stick together and play everywhere. It had already become the main theme these days. Let's not play today. The 3 of us have important matters to attend to. Lin Yi smiled and kept them in suspense. He brought the 2 girls to his room and said, I have already refined the vitality-raising pill. There are a total of 10 pills. I gave one to Lu Dechang, so I still have 9 left. 10. Wang Xinyan and Huang Xiaotao exclaimed at the same time. They knew that there were at most 5 portions of the vitality-raising demon golden grass. Even if it was an absolute pill, it would not be so exaggerated. This was double the amount. Hehe, I can only say that my luck is not bad this time. Lin Yi smiled unconcernedly. He then said seriously, the path to becoming a magnate in 3 months, all 3 of us will be participating. So these 9 vitality-raising pills are like charcoal in snowy weather. They came at the right time. Wang Xinyan and Huang Xiaotao looked at each other. Lin Yi had already mentioned this at the auction. They believed that Lin Yi had the ability to do this, but they hadn't thought about the difficulty of it. They only knew that it would be heaven-defying. But now that there were 9 vitality-raising pills, the difficulty had dropped a lot. After all, 1 pill could directly increase one's strength by 1 level. I've calculated it. In theory, only 6 essence-nourishing pills are needed to push a master at the early stage of nascent soul to the perfected level. If we include the possibility of resistance, 7 essence-nourishing pills should be enough. After all, these are all high-quality pills. The effect shouldn't be a problem. Lin Yi analyzed to the 2 girls. Yes. The 2 nodded. Lin Yi had the most say in this matter. He was the most experienced alchemist. Even amateurs like Wang Xinyan and Huang Xiaotao had heard of the pill's effects. It was rare for there to be a resistance to the pill, which meant that the effects wouldn't drop all of a sudden, even if it was used continuously. Otherwise, people wouldn't be so obsessed with it. So as long as Xiaotao can condense her nascent soul as soon as possible, she can easily reach full-stage nascent soul with these 7 vitality-raising pills. She just needs to consolidate her strength after that. Lin Yi paused for a moment before turning to Xinyan. As for the other 2 pills, I'll give them to you, Xinyan. You look like you're on the verge of breaking through, aren't you? That's right. If I meditate, I should be able to break through in 10 days. Wang Xinyan nodded. She was now in the middle stage of nascent soul. After breaking through, she would be at the peak of nascent soul, 1 step closer to full-stage nascent soul. That's perfect. After you break through, take these 2 vitality-raising pills and you'll be able to reach the peak of nascent soul. There's still 3 months left. With your spongy body, you still have a chance of breaking through. Lin Yi couldn't help but be excited. Xinyan hesitated. Actually, Master's already prepared a special training for me, and he's prepared a bunch of resources for me. Even without these pills, I'd still have a chance of breaking through to nascent soul perfection in 3 months. Maybe you should keep it for now? Chapter 4860. Now the divine nun of the Eastern Sea was finally getting serious. Once she forced out the limits of her spongy body, it would be unimaginable. In comparison, it would be more difficult for Lin Yi to reach great perfection in such a short amount of time. After all, he was only at late nascent soul right now. If he did not rely on soul-nourishing pills, he would have to break through 2 levels, which was completely unrealistic. Hee, have you forgotten what we do in the secular world? Lin Yi's lips curled. You mean? Wang Xinyan's heart skipped a beat when she heard that. Her long eyelashes trembled, and only then did she blush slightly. You hold me and cultivate? That's right. Lin Yi nodded. His strength could increase rapidly if he cultivated with Wang Xinyan. Coupled with his already heaven-defying rate of cultivation, breaking through 2 levels in 3 months was not a dream at all. It was completely possible. All right. Wang Xinyan nodded quietly with a blushing face. She could not help but feel a little eager inside. To be honest, she rather missed the feeling of cultivating with Lin Yi. Unfortunately, she was so far away from Lin Yi that they could only meet in dreams. Now that she finally had the chance to relive it, she obviously would not turn it down. She could not even wait to feel the sweetness of it. If you and I cultivate together and we have 2 soul-nourishing pills in reserve, we have at least a 90% chance of reaching great perfection in 3 months. Let's just wait for the day when we become giants together. Lin Yi smiled confidently. It was all thanks to Wang Xinyan's presence. If it were anyone else, he wouldn't be so confident. He might even have to think of a way to get a few more qi-fostering pills. When she heard about cultivating together, Huang Xiaotao's eyes could not help but light up. It was just a pity that she did not have a spongy body like Wang Xinyan, and her strength was far too lacking compared to Lin Yi's right now, so she could only think about it. After settling Wang Xinyan down, Lin Yi turned to Huang Xiaotao and said, As for you, let's put the 7 soul-nourishing pills aside for now. I'll help you reach great perfection of golden core first. Huang Xiaotao responded subconsciously. After a while, her face suddenly turned red and she said, That means I have to take off my clothes? She had experienced this kind of thing once. When she was in the North Island, it was Lin Yi who personally raised her strength to the peak of foundation establishment, and then she could try for the perfect gold elixir. This was the 2nd time, so she was familiar with it. But Huang Xiaotao was still too shy to raise her head. She was just envious that Xinyan could train with Lin Yi, and didn't think that she'd be the one to take off her clothes first. Her face was so red that it looked like it was going to drip blood. If it wasn't for the fact that he had important matters to attend to, Lin Yi would have done the 2 girls right there and then. After all, their expressions and demeanor were too alluring, and even with Lin Yi's self-control, he couldn't handle it. Especially when Huang Xiaotao took off her clothes one by one in front of him, until she was completely naked. Lin Yi almost vomited blood when he saw that. In the end, Lin Yi spent a lot of perseverance to calm his breathing. According to his previous plan, he raised Huang Xiaotao's strength to the peak of gold elixir realm. Directly raising people's strength was still applicable to Lin Yi in the heavenly Dao realm, but he didn't want to reveal it easily, unless it was a special situation. If it was an ordinary follower, even if their strength was temporarily low, Lin Yi wouldn't directly raise their strength. After all, it was easy to become dependent on them. Even if they were in the same realm, if they really fought, they would definitely rely on themselves to break through and become stronger. At most, Lin Yi would provide them with elixirs. Huang Xiaotao and Shanghai Laner were exceptions. Back in the North Island, he raised her strength because the inter-sect competition was imminent. Not only did he have to face Su Lingchong and company, but he also had to deal with the rules of the duo challenge. Lin Yi needed Huang Xiaotao to quickly attain the perfect gold elixir realm and join forces with him to fight the enemy, so he had no other choice. As for Shanghai Laner, she was purely freeloading experience. It was basically impossible for her to cultivate by herself. It was the same now. The path to becoming a powerhouse was right in front of him. Lin Yi didn't feel at ease leaving Huang Xiaotao alone in the future. Instead of that, he might as well risk it now. At least they could take care of each other and there wouldn't be any danger to their lives. As the improvement this time wasn't huge, Lin Yi quickly raised Huang Xiaotao's strength to the limits of the perfected golden core. He didn't stop until she touched the final barrier. The whole process was naturally full of charm and temptation. Fortunately, Lin Yi's willpower was strong enough. Otherwise, he would really fail at the last step and that would be a joke. What Huang Xiaotao needed to do next was to take the nascent condensation golden elixir. Of course, Lin Yi also prepared a large basin of star ink milk for her. She had a perfect gold elixir realm. Now that she had this opportunity, she naturally wanted to follow in Lin Yi's footsteps and achieve the strongest nascent soul. Lin Yi and Wang Xinyan looked at each other and left the room. The crucial step of condensing the nascent soul could only rely on Huang Xiaotao herself. Lin Yi couldn't help much. No matter how heaven-defying his ability was, it was impossible for him to do such a thing for her. It's our turn next, Lin Yi said to the blushing Wang Xinyan. He had already given Huang Xiaotao 7 soul-nurturing pills. As long as she could condense a nascent soul successfully, she could use the pills to advance all the way to the great perfection of nascent soul. Should I tell Master? Wang Xinyan said with a blushing face. Of course. Didn't you say she's prepared special training for you? Lin Yi nodded. He could not avoid the divine nun of the East Sea for this matter, but it was rather awkward for a girl like Wang Xinyan to say it. In order to cultivate with Lin Yi, Wang Xinyan had thrown caution to the wind. She ran to the divine nun of the East Sea and stammered a bunch of things with a blushing face, but she failed to make it clear. Seeing how the divine nun of the East Sea was still confused, Lin Yi could only stand forward helplessly. He cut to the chase and said, Senior, Xinyan wants us to dual cultivate together. Dual cultivate? The divine nun of the East Sea's eyelids immediately twitched. She stared at Wang Xinyan in disbelief and was left speechless for quite a while. She had known that her 2 precious disciples had an ambiguous relationship with Lin Yi a long time ago, but she had never stopped them as their master. Instead, she seemed to be going with the flow. Otherwise, she would not have let Lin Yi stay in the East Sea Pavilion. He was already being treated like one of them. Chapter 4861. She would rather tear down 10 temples than ruin a marriage. Being together was the pursuit of all infatuated men and women in the world, as well as her best wishes for Wang Xinyan and Huang Xiaotao. But even with that being the case, the divine nun of the East Sea had never thought that Lin Yi and Wang Xinyan had already progressed to such a level. She could not help but shake her head and sigh to herself. Actually, we did that back in the secular world. Wang Xinyan dared not raise her head to look at her master. She lowered her head and poked at her fingers as she whispered like a mosquito, her face bright red. The divine nun of the East Sea was stunned for quite a while before finally accepting reality with a bitter smile. After all, she had been prepared for this a long time ago. She just never thought it would happen so quickly. Of course, she had misunderstood. Wang Xinyan was talking about cultivating together. Clearly, the divine nun of the East Sea had mistaken it for something else. Fair enough. Yin, your spongy body is indeed more suitable for dual cultivation. It's just that you never had the conditions in the past, so it's not convenient for me to say too much. This is good. The divine nun of the East Sea looked at Lin Yi and said gently, treat Yin well in the future. Don't let her down. Don't worry, senior. Lin Yi nodded firmly. Before he knew it, he had already grasped Wang Xinyan's hand. Their fingers intertwined as they looked at each other and smiled. All right then, come with me. With that, the divine nun of the East Sea immediately stood up and led the 2 of them to the door of an underground room. She turned around and said, originally this was just a special training for Yen'er alone. Although it's been changed to dual cultivation with the 2 of you now, it won't affect much. It'll only make your cultivation speed faster. The most important thing is to stabilize your minds. Don't advance recklessly because of your greed. You must remember that. Thank you for your guidance, senior. Lin Yi and Wang Xinyan looked at each other and nodded. All right. Go in. If anything happens, get Yen'er to tear open the emergency talisman. I'll come as soon as possible, the divine nun of the East Sea warned. Yes. The 2 of them sucked in a deep breath at the same time and immediately pushed open the door. Just when they were about to enter the room, the divine nun of the East Sea suddenly asked with some hesitation, Is Xiaotao with you as well? Lin Yi was stunned for a moment, but then he nodded. Although he and Xiaotao weren't dual cultivators, they had already seen each other with sincerity, so there was nothing to deny. You young people should at least observe some ancient etiquette. The divine nun of the East Sea could not help but let out another bitter smile. She glanced at Lin Yi with mixed feelings and drifted away with a sigh. Though, it sure is nice to be young. Listening to the divine nun of the Eastern Sea's last words, Lin Yi turned to Wang Xinyan and smiled. I think Senior Donghai is also a person with a story. She must have been very interesting when she was young. Only after experiencing the world of mortals can she see through it. Perhaps we've evoked her memories. I'm not sure about that. Master never mentioned anything before she became a monk. Xinyan stuck her tongue out cutely. She and Lin Yi were the only 2 left here, and she couldn't help but feel a little nervous. The secret underground room was not large, only around 30 square meters in size. It seemed ordinary without anything special about it. However, as soon as Lin Yi and Wang Xinyan took the first step in, their expressions immediately changed. An incomparably tremendous pressure came from all directions. Every second that he spent in this secret room, his body and Yuan Shen were both going through an arduous double test. There was basically no need for him to deliberately cultivate. Just staying here was already a rare form of tempering. As for the spiritual qi, it was several hundred or even 1,000 times denser than outside. It was even more exaggerated than in Lin Yi's jade pendant space. It felt so dense that it was almost tangible. Senior Donghai has really gone all out this time. Lin Yi turned around and smiled at Wang Xinyan, only to discover that her expression was extremely unnatural right now. It seemed like she was barely holding it together. If it was just the density of the spiritual qi, then so be it. Most importantly, the pressure was just too startling. At the very least, it was no weaker than the Foundation establishment giants that Lin Yi had encountered in the past. Even Lin Yi found it rather difficult, let alone Wang Xinyan, who was only at mid-soul nascent soul. Lin Yi had no idea how the divine nun of the East Sea had done it, but he was certain that not only did it take tremendous amounts of precious resources to create such a formation, but it also required the corresponding tricks and techniques. Only a Foundation establishment giant like the divine nun of the East Sea could do something like that. Are you all right? Lin Yi helped Wang Xinyan sit down in a hurry. I'm fine. I can hold on. It's no problem. Wang Xinyan smiled with difficulty. Determination filled her eyes. If she wanted to break through quickly in 3 short months, this was something she had to face. All right then. If there are any problems, tell me as soon as possible. I know you have a tough personality, but if you force yourself too much, it'll be as bad as not doing enough. Do you understand? Lin Yi warned. Apart from allowing her to absorb water like a sponge and increase her strength quickly, the sponge body also possessed the characteristics of a spring. The tighter it was pressed, the higher it would bounce. The divine nun of the East Sea had specially set up such a high-pressure environment precisely to force out Wang Xinyan's potential. Lin Yi obviously would not ruin her good intentions just because of a little heartache. Yeah, there's not much time. Let's begin. Wang Xinyan forced a smile. Apart from the strain on her face, there was also a hint of temptation, which made Lin Yi's heart heat up. He almost turned into a beast. Huang Xiaotao was in closed-door training. Lin Yi and Wang Xinyan were also in closed-door training. However, there was someone outside who was constantly thinking about them. It wasn't a friend or family but Bao Zhuoyang, their new nemesis. There hadn't been any conflict and they hadn't even met formally. But because of Wang Xinyan, he had become a thorn in the side of the young city lord of Morningstar City. The saying that the tallest tree in the forest would be destroyed by the wind wasn't false at all. Lin Yi and the others hadn't come out for a long time. It was obvious that they were in closed-door training. Bao Zhuoyang saw this and hated it. It was because Lin Yi had chosen Donghai Pavilion as the location for his closed-door training that the young city lord could only watch from afar. If it were anywhere else, he would have come knocking on their door with all kinds of schemes. What should we do? We can't go on like this, can we? We can't just let that brat have his fun, can we? Bao Zhuoyang was so anxious that his eyes were bloodshot. In comparison, he would rather see Lin Yi and the others fooling around. Although it was disgusting, it wouldn't be too excessive in broad daylight. But now Lin Yi and his sweetheart, Wang Xinyan, were both hiding in Donghai Pavilion. Who knew what they were doing? If the two of them were to have sex in their closed-door training, Bao Zhuoyang wouldn't be able to do anything. Chapter 4862. Bao Zhuoyang was unwilling, but what was the use of being unwilling? He wouldn't break into the Donghai Pavilion even if he had 10 guts. Master Bao, I think you're thinking too much. Su Kexing knew what Bao Zhuoyang was worried about, so he comforted him. Lin Yi may be holed up in the Donghai Pavilion, but with the godly nun of the Eastern Sea watching over him, he wouldn't dare do anything to Wang Xinyan. Don't worry. Lin Yi would laugh himself to death if he heard this. He wouldn't do anything to Wang Xinyan, but the godly nun of the Eastern Sea was the one who sent them there herself. Bao Zhuoyang, on the other hand, was happy with this. He nodded. You're right, but I'm still not satisfied. How dare he pester my Wang Xinyan every day? I'm going to kill him. Don't worry, Master Bao. He may have escaped from the auction last time, but we still have a chance to deal with him. Su Kexing regained his confidence. What chance? Using someone else to do his dirty work? Even that old bastard Lu Dechang was taken care of with just a few words. I don't think it's easy to borrow someone else's knife. Bao Zhuoyang frowned. There's no need to use someone else's knife. We can do it ourselves. Su Kexing smiled mysteriously. You're crazy. Bao Zhuoyang was shocked. With Lin Yi's background, even if he was Bao Farah's son, he wouldn't dare cause trouble in front of him. Of course we can't do anything in Morningstar City, but what if we leave? Su Kexing smiled. What do you mean? Bao Zhuoyang asked quickly. I wouldn't be sure before this, but since this Lin guy is trying so hard to get his hands on the spirit-raising demon golden grass, he must be trying to make the spirit-raising pill. Considering his strength as a late-stage nascent soul cultivator, his intentions are clear. This Lin guy definitely wants to become a giant. No matter how powerful his background is, it's only in Morningstar City. Once he becomes a giant, he won't be able to do anything. Su Kexing sneered. Yeah. Bao Zhuoyang patted his head excitedly, but soon found that something was wrong. He slapped Su Kexing and scolded, "Fuck off. I value you so much that you can come up with such a stupid plan. If they really want to become giants, at least he and Wang Xinyan will be at the peak of the nascent soul realm. We are only two at the peak of the nascent soul realm, and we are not as good as Wang Xinyan. How can we have the final say? Don't tell me you want to go up and get beaten up." Although he and Su Kexing were much stronger than ordinary masters of Yuanying realm, Wang Xinyan was recognized as a super genius in the academy. She was almost invincible in the same realm. Bao Zhuoyang still had this self-awareness, not to mention there was also Lin Yi who was at Yuanying realm. "Young Master Bao, you forgot that we still have a divine weapon in our hands. We can't compare to them in other places, but when we reach the path of giants, the power that this divine weapon can exert is simply unimaginable. Not to mention the great perfection of the nascent soul stage, even the great perfection of the profound ascension stage will be difficult to deal with." Su Kexing laughed. "You mean the lightning guiding banner?" Bao Zhuoyang's eyes suddenly brightened. He excitedly patted Su Kexing's shoulder and said, "That's right, I almost forgot about this. The lightning guiding banner is useless in other places, but in the path of a tycoon, it is a true divine tool. Yes, this is a treasure passed down from the ancient blacksmiths. As long as it is in a place where the heavenly thunder is dense, it can easily control the thunder. When the time comes, the path of giants will be the best battlefield for us. No matter how strong Wang Xinyan is, she can only obediently be controlled by you, young Master Bao. It will be even easier to kill Lin Yi," Su Kexing said proudly. Although the chances of triggering a lightning tribulation were much higher in the path of a giant compared to the outside world, it was not certain that they would be able to trigger it every time. To a large extent it still depended on luck. However, they were different. With the lightning guiding banner in their hands, they could trigger the lightning tribulation at any time. Once they were able to make use of the lightning tribulation, just the thought of the scene was enough to make people shudder. "You mean?" Bao Zhuoyang's eyes lit up. "Very simple, when the time comes we will use the lightning guiding banner to attract all the thunder from the surrounding people to Lin Yi's head, and then we will smash him into pieces. Hehe, if there is too much thunder, it will be useless even if he has the Shen Thunder Core, no one can withstand so much thunder at once." Su Kexing laughed coldly. "Good plan. We just need to be a little more discreet, and when the time comes we can kill Lin Yi without anyone knowing, and not even his ashes will be left, and Wang Xinyan won't suspect anything. It's perfect, haha." Bao Zhuoyang laughed proudly. 3 months passed in the blink of an eye, and in the blink of an eye, the incomparable trial of the path of giants was right in front of them. All the disciples of the Morningstar Academy who were preparing to participate were gathered in the square, and the dean, Ling Yuanqing, personally presided over the ceremony. Because the prerequisite to participate in the trial of the path of giants was to be at the great perfection of the nascent soul realm, there were not many people this time, and there were only about 30 people altogether. However, among the crowd there were 3 people who stood out: Lin Yi, Wang Xinyan and Huang Xiaotao. One had to know that these people present were already experts at the great perfection of the nascent soul realm, but these 3 people were clearly very far away from the great perfection of the nascent soul realm 3 months ago, so how did they suddenly all become great perfection of the nascent soul realm? Lin Yi was considered normal, he had the vitality pill, so it was not strange for him to advance from the late nascent soul realm to the great perfection of the nascent soul realm. Wang Xinyan could also understand, she could also get the vitality pill from Lin Yi, and it was rumored that she had a heaven-defying innate physique, so it was not strange for her to advance to the great perfection of the nascent soul realm. But what was the situation with Huang Xiaotao? 3 months ago she was clearly just an expert at the golden core stage, but now she had become a great perfection of the nascent soul realm. Had the world gone mad? Everyone thought they were seeing things, even Ling Yuanqing, a great figure at the mountain establishment stage, was no exception. Even the divine nun of the Eastern Sea, who was Huang Xiaotao's master, was shocked when she saw Huang Xiaotao, who had just come out of seclusion. Only when she learned that Huang Xiaotao had used a total of 7 vitality pills did she finally reluctantly accept the reality, and in the end she could not help but sigh, this was just too exciting. Women of pill refinement masters were indeed different. Damn it, how did even Huang Xiaotao become a great perfection of the nascent soul realm? Bao Zhuoyang was speechless. He had been holding back his desire to kill Lin Yi, but suddenly there was Huang Xiaotao. Didn't that mean that the difficulty had increased? After all, Huang Xiaotao had dual fire and wind spiritual roots, so she was also in existence invincible at the same level. Chapter 4863. Yes, that's right, let's let them see how Lin Yi dies. Bao Zhuoyang smiled coldly. Ling Yuanqing coughed lightly to attract everyone's attention, then he said in a clear voice, "Dear disciples, the path of the tyrant trial is about to begin. To be able to participate in this trial means that you are already the most outstanding disciples of my Morning Star Academy, but this is far from enough. Are you all very complacent, thinking that you are the best in the academy? Then let me tell you now, you are not even worth a fart." Everyone's expression changed at the same time, unable to hide the anger on their faces. Even if the other party was the dean, his words were too infuriating. According to the convention, the limit of the strength of a Golden Stage Academy disciple was the great perfection of the nascent soul realm. Normally, those who exceeded this level would not continue to stay, unless it was an exception like Lung Rufin. Therefore, it was not a problem to say that everyone present was the strongest disciple of the Morning Star Academy. But, if one really thought that way, it would be a bit like a frog in a well. Don't be unconvinced. The East Continent is not like the other Heaven Stage Islands. This is the world of the Magnate Realm experts. Only by stepping into the Profound Ascension stage will you be qualified to touch the barrier of the Magnate Realm. Otherwise, I'll say it again, you are not even worth a fart. Ling Yuanqing looked at everyone and said. This time, everyone was silent. The originally relaxed atmosphere, because of Ling Yuanqing's short words, suddenly became tense, as if a great battle was about to begin. Very good, this is the attitude that my Morning Star Academy disciples should have. Go work hard, strive for a few more Profound Ascension stage disciples this year. When the time comes, I will personally send you to the Profound Sea region. Ling Yuanqing encouraged. Yes. Everyone loudly responded. The process was very short. After everyone's morale was aroused, Ling Yuanqing did not continue to talk nonsense, but directly ordered everyone to board the ship and set off. Everyone's final destination this time was the Eastern Continent's Golden Sea region, the Moving Thunder Sea region. There was an independent island called the Moving Thunder Plain Island, that was the legendary path of the tyrant. If they wanted to go to the Thunderous Plains Island, they had to take the Academy's treasured ship. Although Lin Yi was not a disciple of the Morning Star Academy, his identity was special. Even Ling Yuanqing and the other big shots took care of him, so it was not a problem for him to get a spot. After 3 days and 3 nights, the treasured ship finally arrived at its destination. At this time, there were already many battleships and treasured ships docked at the Thunderous Plain Islands pier, with the insignia of the East Continent's Huang Stage Academies hanging on them. Lin Yi took a closer look and quickly found the treasured ships of the Morning Pride Academy and the Soaring Cloud Academy. He suddenly became somewhat excited. Ning Xuefei didn't have this possibility, but this time, it was very likely that she would reunite with Hui Yudi, because she was also a peak nascent soul cultivator. In the blink of an eye, a few months had passed, and Lin Yi was still very much looking forward to this unexpected but reasonable reunion. Heroes have a weakness for beauties, and this girl, Hui Yudi, was indeed very attractive. Even Lin Yi, who had many beauties, was no exception. The treasured ship slowly docked, and Lin Yi couldn't wait to get off the ship to look for her, but he was stopped by the Chancellor of the Morning Star Academy. This was an old man with white hair and a youthful face, and he was the leader of the group of disciples from the Morning Star Academy. Master Lin, you can't go down now, Chancellor Qin Xing hurriedly advised. He didn't dare to be disrespectful to Lin Yi. Not to mention that the 3 big shots of the academy treated Lin Yi differently, just the position of the chief alchemist, Qing Danzi, was higher than him. If he offended Lin Yi, he wouldn't be able to live a good life in the future. Why is this? Lin Yi couldn't help but be surprised. Beside him, Wang Xinyan and Huang Xiaotao also looked at each other. This was their first time here and they didn't know the rules here. This is a written rule. Without the permission of the organizer of the trial, no disciple of any academy is allowed to disembark. They have to stay on the ship and wait for the summons, or they will be disqualified, Chancellor Qin Xing explained. Oh, it's actually so strict? Lin Yi frowned, but after thinking about it, he understood. After all, the path of a big shot was not an ordinary place. If there were no mandatory restrictions and the disciples of the various academies were allowed to move freely, the scene would definitely be chaotic. There might even be a large-scale massacre and the situation would be out of control. Yes, this is a helpless action. There wasn't such a rule a long time ago. In the end, after a chaotic battle, all of the Academy's training disciples were annihilated, including a few highly valued super geniuses. Chancellor Qin Shing sighed. It's that serious? It wasn't just Lin Yi, even the other Morningstar disciples were shocked. Annihilation? This was too exaggerated. It's precisely because of that incident that the Golden Step Academy Alliance has learned from that painful experience. That's why they've strictly regulated the path of the giants. Although they don't forbid competition, if it's a large-scale war between academies, then they must nip it in the bud as soon as possible. Forbidding students from entering Thunderous Plains Island before the trial is one of the measures. It's to prevent enmity from forming before the trial even begins. Chancellor Morningstar explained. Everyone nodded. These genius disciples from the various academies were all proud and arrogant, and it would be strange if there were no conflicts if they were allowed to come into contact with them. If someone with ulterior motives provoked them, it could easily turn into a war between academies, and from then on, it would be out of control. Golden Step Academy Alliance? Is this the official organization of the Eastern Continent Academy? Linny asked. This was the first time he'd heard of the Golden Step Academy Alliance. After all, he hadn't been in the Eastern Continent for long, and other than his own people like Wang Xinyan, he rarely interacted with outsiders, so he didn't know much about these things. That's right. Other than the president of the Golden Step Academy Alliance, there's also an elder council made up of a number of elders. These elders are the deans of the various Golden Step Academies, and they control the final decisions of all matters in the Golden Step Sea region. They're considered the highest official organization in the Golden Step Sea region. Just like this time, the Path of a Tyrant was personally organized by the Golden Step Academy Alliance, Chancellor Qin Shing explained patiently. The other students already knew about this, but this was the first time Lin Yi heard about it. It was no wonder that although the deans and the city lord were of the same rank in name, it was obvious that the deans were ranked higher. Chapter 4864. Then who is the current president of the Professional Alliance? Is he also a dean of a certain academy? Lin Yi continued to ask. The disciples of the other academies also showed expressions of interest because they only knew about the existence of the alliance, but they didn't know the true face of the number one person in the alliance. That's not it. According to the usual practice, the president of the alliance here is sent by the Academy Alliance in the Xuanjie area. He usually doesn't show up and he has never fought in public, so no one knows his specific strength. Chancellor Qin Shing paused for a moment. Seeing that everyone was curious, he said, but one thing is for sure. The president of the alliance is definitely above the mountain opening stage. He should be a master of the earth opening stage or even the sea splitting stage. I heard that he will personally take charge of this trial. Everyone can have a good feel of his strength. Earth opening stage. Even the sea splitting stage. Everyone was really shocked. Although it was reasonable, as the president of the alliance, he should be higher than the deans of the other academies. Otherwise, how could he convince everyone? But even so, it was still shocking to suddenly hear such a powerful existence. Even Lin Yi, who had seen super existences like the 5-poison flood dragon and the giant electric eel, was no exception. After all, no matter how powerful they were already in the past. The giant electric eel was already dead, and the fate of the 5-poison flood dragon was unknown. Only the legendary president of the alliance was a living existence, and a real human cultivator, and it was very likely that they would see him soon. Only this kind of comparison could really make people excited. Because it was impossible for Lin Yi to become the next giant electric eel or the 5-poison flood dragon, but it was not wishful thinking for him to become a powerful master of the earth opening stage or even the sea splitting stage like the president of the alliance one day. Okay, everyone is clear about the rules. Before receiving my notice, don't disembark without permission, or you will have to bear the consequences. Chancellor Qin Shing warned them, and then his figure flashed off the treasure ship. He was the leader of the academy, so he had to go to the academy in advance to complete the corresponding procedures for everyone. Lin Yi shook his head in a resigned manner as he looked in the direction of Qinjiao and Soaring Cloud Academy. However, due to the distance between them and the fact that there were so many battleships and treasured ships between them, he couldn't see what was going on at all. All he could see was the fluttering flag on top of the battleship. The students of the other academies were either taking a breather or meditating. However, at this time, they certainly did not have the mood to meditate and cultivate. Adjusting their mentality was the most important thing. Everyone remained on the deck. Although they could not disembark, they could more or less experience the environment and atmosphere of the thunderous plain island in advance. At this time, Bao Zhuoyang suddenly stood up and called out to everyone, "Everyone, come here, I have a suggestion." "Young Master Bao, do you have any suggestions?" Seeing this, everyone gathered around him. After all, this fellow was the son of City Lord Bofara, so everyone had to give him some face. Bao Zhuoyang glanced at everyone and said, "Everyone has just heard that the competition on the path of a tyrant is very cruel. Even if it isn't as easy as it was before, there will definitely be some friction between the students of different academies. If we don't form a group and fight on our own, I believe I don't need to say much about the result, right?" Everyone's expression immediately changed. If the other academies also fought on their own, then it would be fine. However, if they formed a group, then they would definitely be at a disadvantage. The competition within the academies was already very cruel, let alone between the academies. Perhaps the word cruel couldn't even describe it. "Young Master Bao, do you mean that we should form a group?" Everyone couldn't help but look at each other. Everyone was a disciple of the Morning Star Academy, so forming a group wasn't unacceptable. However, the problem was, who would they listen to? It should be known that everyone present was a proud and arrogant person, and many of them had enmity with each other. Everyone disliked each other. If they didn't have a strong backbone, let alone fighting with the other academies, they would already be in a state of internal strife. That's right. In order to advance and retreat together, we must elect a leader here. He will be in charge of leading our Morning Star team, and everyone will listen to the leader's every move. Bao Zhuoyang immediately said loudly. At the same time, he deliberately straightened his back and stood in the middle of everyone. His intention was obvious. He had said so much to become the leader. Everyone fell into silence and stared at each other, not saying a word. Although Bao Zhuoyang's words were very reasonable, and the Morning Star team did indeed need a temporary leader, it didn't mean that they were willing to give up. Just as Bao Zhuoyang said, they would listen to the leader's every move. One could imagine the value of this temporary leader. Once they entered the path of a tyrant, they would unknowingly gain a great advantage. Therefore, even if Bao Zhuoyang's background made everyone afraid, it wasn't to the extent that they would bow down to him. No one wanted to give up such a great opportunity. The leader must be able to convince everyone. I think that with young Master Bao's background and strength, he's the most suitable to be the leader of our Morning Star team. Let's see who dares to oppose him. Su Kexing jumped out from the side decisively. Bao Zhuoyang couldn't just directly recommend himself. That would be too shameless, so he could only borrow his follower's mouth to say this. As soon as he said this, everyone had a strange expression on their faces. There were probably not many people who were truly convinced, but Bao Zhuoyang's background and strength couldn't be underestimated. If they wanted to jump out and oppose him in public, they would have to think it through carefully. However, even if they didn't have the confidence to compete with Bao Zhuoyang, it didn't mean that others didn't have the same. There was no lack of people who could surpass Bao Zhuoyang. At least Wang Xinyan, one of the three fairies, had the qualifications. In the world of cultivation, the strong were always respected. Although Wang Xinyan hadn't been in the academy for long, her super strength was obvious to all. She was invincible among her peers in the academy's competitions. Now that she was at the great perfection of the nascent soul realm, no one present, including Bao Zhuoyang, was her match. In terms of popularity, Wang Xinyan was more popular than Bao Zhuoyang. There was no lack of disciples who had a crush on this third fairy. The only one who could nitpick was that she was a woman. This wasn't the feminist society of West Island. In the end, it was still the men who had the final say. Even if it was third fairy Wang Xinyan who came out to command everyone, it would still make people feel a little weird. If word got out, they might be laughed at by other academies. How would they put their faces when that happened? Chapter 4865. Lu Dechang had specifically asked Lin Yi to take care of his son, but Lin Yi had just come out of his closed-door training before they set off. He didn't see him on his own along the way, so he didn't know him. He just had some guesses based on his unique appearance that was exactly the same as Lu Dechang's. Bao Zhuoyang? Hey, cover your mother's head. Lu Xiaozhong's words ignited the atmosphere. Everyone was shocked. Probably only this one-track-minded guy would dare to scold Bao Zhuoyang to his face like this. Lu Xiaozhong, what did you say? Bao Zhuoyang's face suddenly darkened. He stared at Lu Xiaozhong with an unkind expression and sandwiched him in the middle with Su Kexing. I said cover your mother's head, so what? You want to hear it a third time if you can't hear it clearly? Lu Xiaozhong was not afraid at all in the face of this posture. He had clashed with Bao Zhuoyang more than once or twice, so he had long been accustomed to it. Moreover, this time he was simply targeting Bao Zhuoyang. "You're courting death." Bao Zhuoyang gritted his teeth in anger and was about to make a move immediately. Seeing this, Su Kexing also blocked Lu Xiaozhong's retreat with an unkind expression. "Really? I'm waiting for you to make a move. It's just the right time to take revenge for what happened last time. Come on." Lu Xiaozhong took a posture fearlessly. "I wasn't afraid of you when I was only at the peak of the late nascent soul stage, let alone now that I'm at the peak of the nascent soul stage. I'm not afraid of you." Bao Zhuoyang choked and looked at Su Kexing. He had no choice but to stop. Only then did he remember that after taking the Vitality Cultivation pill, Lu Xiaozhong was also at the peak of the nascent soul stage. Otherwise, he wouldn't have appeared here. In the past, he could still suppress Lu Xiaozhong by relying on his advantage in level, but now this advantage was gone. Moreover, Lu Xiaozhong fought like a madman. Previously, when he was only at the peak of the late nascent soul stage, he was barely weaker than Bao Zhuoyang. Bao Zhuoyang needed Su Kexing's help to completely suppress him. Now that he was at the peak of the nascent soul stage, the two of them together might not be able to win. Seeing Lu Xiaozhong suddenly jumping out to disturb the situation, Lin Yi couldn't help but be stunned. Like father like son was exactly the same as his father Lu Dachong. But come to think of it, this was a good move. Otherwise, Bao Zhuoyang would take the captain's seat in the end if no one came out to fight for it. If that guy wanted to separate him from Xinyan and Huang Xiaotao, it'd be troublesome if he had to go against him. Of course, Lin Yi was not afraid of trouble. A mere Bao Zhuoyang was not worthy of his attention. However, the path of a tycoon was, after all, guarded by the higher-ups of the academy. Unless it was absolutely necessary, otherwise, Lin Yi also did not want to rashly make a mess. He came here to attack the profound Ascension realm, not to play with a fool. Lin Yi was laughing to himself when Lu Xiaozhong suddenly changed the topic. "Bao Wuliang, who only knows how to pull off women's skirts, wants to be the captain? Stop joking. I think there's only one person here who's truly qualified to be the team leader, and that's Master Lin." Everyone was stunned and their gazes instantly focused on Lin Yi. Did I have something to do with this? Lin Yi was still in a daze. He was not a disciple of the Morning Star Academy, but an outsider who came to participate in the trial. He had never thought of leading the team. Bullshit, he's not even from our academy, how can he be our captain? Bao Zhuoyang immediately jumped up. Why can't he be? Even Master Qing Danzi is Master Lin's disciple. Since Master Qing Danzi is the chief alchemist of the academy, then Master Lin is naturally a senior of the academy. You can ask everyone here, ask them if there's anyone who disagrees. Lu Xiaozhong said confidently. Bao Zhuoyang was so angry that smoke was coming out of his 7 orifices. This kind of question didn't need to be asked at all. Just by looking at the uniform movement of everyone's necks, it was clear that they were only a little afraid of him, the son of the city lord, but in the face of a freak like Lin Yi, they were completely in awe. The deterrence between the two was on a completely different level. He racked his brains to come up with this suggestion in order to create an opportunity for himself, not to let others pick the peaches, especially when the person picking the peaches was Lin Yi, who he wanted to strangle with his own hands. But Lu Xiaozhong suddenly made such a move, and Bao Zhuoyang really didn't know how to refute for a moment. Everyone was an expert at the great perfection of the nascent soul stage and in terms of strength except for Wang Xinyan and Huang Xiaotao, who were recognized as super geniuses in the academy, they were basically on par. The position of captain could only fall on Lin Yi, who had the greatest background. Bao Zhuoyang gave Su Kexing a surreptitious look, signaling him to think of a way to smooth things over. No matter what, they couldn't let Lin Yi take advantage of this situation, or they'd really go for wool and come home shorn. Su Kexing nodded knowingly, his eyes turning slightly as he stood up. All right, we'll support Master Lin as captain. Everyone couldn't help but look at each other. Bao Zhuoyang almost fainted on the spot when he heard that. Su Kexing was his most trusted follower, and he had never made a mistake before. Why did he suddenly betray him and become a traitor at this critical moment? Bao Zhuoyang was about to curse out loud when he saw Su Kexing giving him a look. He suspiciously snuck up behind him, wanting to hear what this kid was going to do. Master Bao, it doesn't matter who the captain is. Let's not cause any unnecessary trouble for now. As long as we can go in together, we'll be able to kill Lin Yi with the lightning-attracting banner. When he's finished, we'll take care of Lu Xiaozhong as well. It'll be a piece of cake. Su Kexing explained quietly. And what you said makes sense. Let's do it this way. Bao Zhuoyang thought about it and nodded. This was a choice, they had no other choice. Although it would be best if they could snatch the captain title, as Su Kexing said, even if they couldn't, it wouldn't affect the overall situation. The most important thing right now was not to separate from Lin Yi, or else it would be useless even if they had the lightning-attracting banner. This was the only way they could proceed according to their plan. Other than that, everything else had to be put aside. Lin Yi frowned slightly when he saw the two of them winking at each other. Although the two of them had carefully used their divine sense to block their voices, Lin Yi's intuition told Lin Yi that there must be a conspiracy between the two of them. They must be up to no good. At the nascent soul stage, although the divine sense couldn't even be considered a beginner, some of the most basic applications were very common, just like the little trick the two of them used to block their voices. Chapter 4866. Rather than alerting the enemy, it was better to pretend that they didn't know anything. As long as they remained vigilant, they'd see what these two were up to. Alright, since you've said so, I have no objections. Let Master Lin be the leader, Bao Zuoyang said immediately. Everyone was in an uproar. This guy clearly wanted to do it himself, but wasn't his attitude changing a little too quickly? But no matter what, the matter regarding the leader was settled. Since Lu Xiaozhong, Bao Zuoyang and Su Kexing had all unanimously approved of Lin Yi, and Wang Xinyan and Huang Xiaotao were close to Lin Yi, it could be said that all the important people present had expressed their opinions, and the opinions of others didn't matter. In reality, even if the others had opinions, they could only keep it to themselves. From today onwards, Lin Yi was the leader of the Morning Star Squad. For the next 2 days, everyone stayed on the ship peacefully. Lin Yi thought that Bao Zuoyang and Su Kexing would find a chance to cause trouble, but they didn't do anything at all. It was as if they'd accepted the fact that he was the leader. Not only did they not cause trouble, but they were also very respectful to him. What the hell are these two doing? Lin Yi couldn't help but wonder. He wasn't naive enough to think that these two had really accepted their fate. Not causing trouble now could only mean one thing: these two must have a bigger plan in the future, which was why they were so tolerant. Any possible danger had to be nipped in the bud as soon as possible. This was the operating principle of all assassins. It was a pity that Lin Yi couldn't make trouble out of nothing and attack these two rashly. He could only take it one step at a time, be careful and remain vigilant. 2 days later, the sound of a horn suddenly came from the distance of the pier. Not long after, Chancellor Qin Shing appeared in front of everyone and ordered, "All right, the path of a tycoon is about to begin. Everyone gather and disembark." Yes. Everyone was instantly excited, and they immediately followed behind Lin Yi, the leader. They spontaneously lined up in an orderly manner, and their every movement was somewhat disciplined. This situation caused Chancellor Qin Shing to be stunned. All of them were proud and arrogant geniuses. Even a high-ranking official like him could only force them to obey orders. It was almost unimaginable for them to obey the rules like this. After asking in a low voice, Chancellor Qin Shing finally understood the whole story. He couldn't help but give a thumbs up to Lin Yi. If everyone could maintain the same pace in the next trial, then no matter if it was self-protection or breakthrough, they would all benefit. Maybe there would really be a few more profound ascending stage masters in this trial. Under the guidance of the Morning Star Chancellor, Lin Yi brought everyone to the square at the pier, and sat down cross-legged in the area marked with the words Morning Star Academy, quietly waiting for the tyrant's path to begin. Not far ahead was a high platform with a row of seats arranged neatly on it. At this time, many of the higher-ups from the various academies had already taken their seats. Everyone was discussing in private about which of them was the legendary president of the alliance. However, Lin Yi's mind was not on this. From the start, he had been looking for the Morning Pride Academy's team, trying to find Hui Yudi's figure. Unfortunately, in the end, his wish was not fulfilled. There were unexpectedly many people present, especially since there were many tyrants here. Lin Yi did not dare to casually release his divine sense to sweep around. If he angered one of the tyrants, he would be seriously injured with just a slight thought. Moreover, it was the most basic rule of the cultivation world that one could not casually release one's divine sense in public. Since he could not use his divine sense, he could only rely on his naked eyes. However, perhaps because of the hostile relationship between Qin Shing and Qin Jiao, they arranged for them to be extremely far apart from each other. Unless Lin Yi walked to the high platform and chose a good angle, it would be impossible to find someone through the gaps between so many academy disciples. After a while, all the academy disciples were in position, and the higher-ups of the various academies had also taken their seats. At this time, a young man suddenly appeared in the center of the high platform, causing everyone's expression to turn solemn, not daring to speak. Everyone was sizing up this young man, and naturally, Lin Yi was no exception. Although this person looked young and his body did not release any terrifying aura, Everyone knew that there was only one person on the stage at this time, and that was the legendary Alliance president. Lin Yi, Wang Xinyan and Huang Xiaotao looked at each other, their faces filled with astonishment. They had thought that the Alliance president would be an old man with a sage-like demeanor like Ling Yuanqing, but they did not expect him to have such a young and handsome face. However, this was not too far-fetched. Once a practitioner reached sky rank, they would be able to maintain their appearance forever. As long as they wanted to, they could live for hundreds or thousands of years and maintain their appearance when they reached sky rank. However, it was very common in the world of practitioners that women still looked beautiful, and men still looked dignified. Even after reaching sky rank, most male practitioners would not deliberately stop their appearance from aging, and would instead maintain a dignified appearance of a middle-aged or old man. After all, an old monster that was hundreds of years old wanted to keep a young face that looked like a 20-year-old after all. This was something that people did not know what to say. But it was clear that this Alliance president was an exception. He was one of those few people. Almost all the disciples on the stage looked at each other, but no one dared to make the slightest sound. The person on the stage was the legendary Earth-opening stage or even sea-splitting stage. Even if he did not reveal any of his aura, just this name alone was enough to oppress everyone to the point that they could not breathe. The Alliance president slowly swept his gaze across the audience until some of the disciples could not take it anymore. Finally, he slowly opened his mouth and said, "Everyone here are the elites from the various academies, and we are here for one thing, and that is to break through to profound ascension. Although this trial does not prohibit private fights, I hope that you all can distinguish your priorities. Also, you better not have the laughable thought that if you fail this time, there will be a next time. Because based on past experience, if you fail to break through to profound ascension the first time, the second time will be 10 times harder, and the third time will be 100 times harder. Think about it carefully." When everyone heard this, they suddenly felt suffocated. In fact, among all the students present, there were indeed some who came for the second or third time. For example, there was one from the Morning Star Academy this time, and it was a taciturn middle-aged man. Chapter 4867. If the first time didn't work, there would be a second time. If the second time didn't work, there would be a third time. This was indeed the mentality that everyone had, especially those who had the Shen Thunder Core. Even if they failed this time, they would still be able to guarantee their lives. This mentality was the most obvious. However, the words of the Alliance's leader completely dispelled their fantasies. If they failed the first time, would there still be a chance of success when the second time was 10 times more difficult? Not to say that there was absolutely no chance, but it was absolutely rare. As for whether the words of the Alliance's leader were true or not, just look at the people who had been here before. The first failure had already left a shadow in their hearts. If they tried to attack the Shen Ascension realm again with such a lifeless look, how much chance of success would they have? 1 in 1,000 or 1 in 10,000? Looking at everyone's nervousness and fear, the young Alliance's leader on the stage silently smiled. If someone dared to stare at him like Linny did, they would find that his face was filled with disdain and contempt. It was completely like looking at an ant. With his strength, these perfected nascent soul cultivators were indeed insignificant ants in his eyes. Especially when these ants didn't even have the resolve to cut off all means of retreat. Apart from disdain, it was very difficult for him to have a second expression. Disdain was disdain, but as the Alliance's leader, he had to at least finish the rules patiently. After you enter the path of giants, the only thing you need to do is to find a suitable place to go into seclusion. As long as you use all your strength, you will naturally be able to attract the lightning tribulation. As for the lightning tribulation points inside, they have already been marked. The Alliance's leader said lightly. Lightning tribulation point? Linny was slightly stunned, but then he understood. Even the path of giants could not attract lightning tribulation at any place. The so-called lightning tribulation point was probably a place that was relatively easy to attract lightning tribulation. From the perspective of the secular world, to put it bluntly, it was a place that was more likely to be struck by lightning. Of course, those lightning tribulation points can't have an effect on all of them. After all, they were marked tens of thousands of years ago, and some of them have already lost their effectiveness. However, each lightning tribulation point has a protective formation. As long as you are in the formation, you can attract the lightning tribulation with peace of mind. You don't need to worry about the outside world taking advantage of the opportunity. The Alliance's leader continued. After all, everyone had a few enemies. After all, it was already very difficult to deal with the lightning tribulation. It was already very difficult to break through the Shen Ascension realm. If they had to be constantly on guard against sneak attacks, it was estimated that not many people would be able to survive. Fortunately, the Alliance's consideration was thorough. However, many people already knew about this. Needless to say, those who had participated in the Path of Giants before, and some who knew the previous batch of students would naturally inquire about these key details. Breaking through the Shen Ascension realm is your top priority. However, it's rare for you to come to the Path of Giants. If you have the leisure, you might as well take a stroll around inside. The treasures inside are famous throughout the entire Eastern continent. However, there are many dangers inside. At the same time, you have to guard against the attacks of the new Shen Ascension realm disciples. Therefore, I advise you to stop before you go too far. If you think it's about time, then hurry up and come out. Greed will only make you die faster. The Alliance's leader said casually. As for those who failed to break through to the Shen Ascension realm, he didn't say anything. Everyone knew that there was no need to care about them. Because those who failed to break through to the Shen Ascension realm, even if they barely survived, they would be half dead. These people didn't even have the ability to protect themselves, let alone deal with others. Hearing the words heavenly treasures, the group of students instinctively became excited. Wealth, companionship, method and location. For cultivators like them, wealth was the most important thing. Of course, this did not only refer to spiritual jades, but also to those heavenly treasures that could not be bought. However, anyone with a little bit of brain knew that if they wanted to search for treasures here, there was a minimum prerequisite, and that was to successfully break through to the Shen Ascension realm. Otherwise, even if they were at their peak, they might not be able to cope with the various dangers inside, especially those Shen Ascension realm masters. Even if you were lucky enough to get something good, it would be useless. As the Alliance's leader said, you would only die faster. One more thing, this trial has a time limit. The maximum time you can stay here is 3 months. Whether you succeed or not, 3 months is definitely a foregone conclusion. No matter how long you delay, it will only be a waste of time. Of course, you can also come out after 3 months, but the battleships and treasure ships of the various academies will not stay and wait for you. At that time, the entire dock will be under martial law. You can either find a way to fly back or stay here and wait for death. The Alliance's leader glanced at everyone. Everyone looked at each other indifferently. Although it sounded quite serious, it was actually not a big deal to be left here. At worst, they could just cultivate while waiting for the next trial. Who knows, they might even be able to take the opportunity to obtain some heavenly treasures. Of course, this little thought did not escape the eyes of the person on the stage. The Alliance's leader smiled, and the corner of his mouth curved into a mocking smile. If you have any ideas, you can stay. But don't blame me for not reminding you, Thunder Plain Island has a routine thunder burial every year. If you don't want to live long, you can experience it. Thunder burial? Everyone looked at each other in confusion. As the name suggests, it is to bury the entire island with the world-extinguishing thunder. Unless you can escape from the thunder burial like the native creatures, otherwise, you will not be able to wait until the next trial begins. The Alliance's leader said lightly. Everyone was shocked, and the little bit of luck that they had just had was immediately thrown to the back of their minds. This place was full of danger, and it was really not a place to play tricks. Alright, each academy will line up according to the order in which they drew lots. Let's start the teleportation. After saying this, the Alliance's leader disappeared from the high platform without a trace. Since the first thing to do in the trial was to find the Thunder Tribulation Point to break through to the Profound Ascension realm, then it would naturally lead to a situation where everyone would fight for the Thunder Tribulation Point as soon as they entered. No one knew how many Thunder Tribulation Points there were in the Path of the Giants, but just by looking at the number of people present, it was clear that the possibility of everyone having one or even having extra was really not big. In this way, who would go first and who would go last was a big problem. The academy that entered first would definitely have an advantage. If this problem could not be solved properly, then there was no need to enter the Path of the Giants. The academy disciples would probably fight here at the dock. Chapter 48-68. It all depended on luck. With the unfathomable president of the Alliance personally overseeing things, there was no one present who could cheat under his watch, unless he was the one who cheated. A group of academy disciples lined up. The Morningstar Academy's luck was not too good, but it was not too bad either. They were in the middle of the pack. The teleportation formation here was different from that of the West Islands trial. The West Islands trial could only teleport one person at a time, while the teleportation formation here could teleport dozens of people at a time. Hence the speed was very fast. In the blink of an eye, it was Lin Yi's turn. This place was guarded by full-time guards. Chancellor Qin Xing, who was at the side, handed over the name list of the disciples for the guards to check in front of everyone. The others were fine, but one name shocked Lin Yi. Jianghu. Although he was a Morning Star captain, everyone knew that it was a temporary position. Lin Yi did not pay attention to who was in the group, since he did not know them. But what was up with Jianghu? When Lin Yi first arrived at Morning Star Academy, he was concerned about Jianghu, so he asked Wang Xinyan to ask about his fiancée. In the end, he found out that she had been in seclusion recently, so he didn't pay much attention to it. Who would have thought that Jianghu would suddenly appear in the group? But according to Jianghu, shouldn't she still be in the gold core stage in 10 years? Otherwise, why would Jianghu spend so much effort to get her the Gathering Nascent Soul Golden Core? How could she become a peak Yuanying stage master now? Isn't this a bit too big? Or could it be that this Jianghu was not that Jianghu? Lin Yi was secretly surprised, but there were too many people here, so it was not appropriate for him to ask rashly. He could only suppress his curiosity and observe the situation. After all, even if it was really the same person, Jianghu's golden pill of condensing nascent soul was no longer useful. After the teleportation, the scene before them changed abruptly. Everyone who came out from the teleportation array had ugly expressions on their faces. Truth be told, they didn't think it would matter much if they were in the middle. After all, as long as they weren't in the last few batches, they would be able to snatch a lightning tribulation point. Otherwise, the Academy's alliance wouldn't have arranged for so many people to enter. But now, everyone suddenly realized that they had been too naive. How was it not a big deal? Who came first and who came last was the most important. At first glance, this was a vast open space, but just like the terraced fields of the secular world, every position was uneven and uneven. Even though the position of the teleportation array could be considered the highest point, it was still impossible to see the whole thing at a glance. This was not just a problem with the terrain, but more importantly, the visibility was very poor and there was fog everywhere. The only thing that was not too bad was that the fog here was not like the sea, which did not have much of an impact on divine sense. But the problem was that everyone was not like a freak like Lin Yi. Even the strength of the Yuanying stage master's spiritual awareness was very limited. If they had to rely on their spiritual awareness to explore the road every step of the way, then they wouldn't be able to do anything at all. It was estimated that their primordial spirit would be exhausted and they would die.